The firelight was dancing across the warrior chick's ice-cold face as she tore a path through the raging battle. Years back, our girl was born the first princess of the kingdom of Berry. She had a little sis and a little bro who was destined to become king. To live up to her precious family's expectations, and most importantly for her people, she had to go all out. Her parents, worried sick about her, wanted to keep her on the down low. Her mother said it was because they loved her to death, and her father thought the whole high society scene was for the younger kids. All our girl could do was be grateful that her fam cared so much about her. Besides all that, she had a grip of duties she handled every day with the royal butler watching her every move. Being a royal and all, she was naturally deep in the politics and diplomacy game, and she spent her downtime learning magic. Because of all this, she felt like her life was pretty sweet and packed. But everything went sideways when the war with the Shariat Empire kicked off. That's when the king and queen hit up our hero looking all beat down. Her little sister Nicole was snatched up as a hostage, and regular people were dropping like flies by the hundreds of thousands on the battlefield. Their only hope was the girl's insane magical power. Without even thinking twice, she decided that as royalty, she had to get in there and throw down. Her folks' faces lit up with joy, but her little bro standing behind them was rocking a stone-cold look. So once she hit the war zone, our girl immediately started wrecking both sides with her insane power. The allies were totally blown away, figuring that's what you get from a royal. Meanwhile, the girl kept seeing all the bodies pile up and the look in the eyes of people who'd lost everything. But as soon as she looked away, she'd see crowds of enemy soldiers getting torched by the flames she made. This battle was a pointless meat grinder, and every damn second she just wanted the madness to end. But her allies were screaming at her from behind, telling her to waste the enemy ASAP, so shoving her feelings way down deep. She decided to become a straight-up killing machine for her fam's sake. Ignoring the screams of the messed-up enemies, she just mercilessly smoked everything in her way. Still, the Shariat Empire, known for its huge-ass army, seemed like an impossible fight. At one point, the Berry Kingdom threw in the towel, but for some reason the fighting kept going. During the war, the first princess of the Berry Kingdom, named Lars, got the nickname the Bat. In the end, they got totally wrecked, and the aftermath was pure hell. Like a lot of others, she got caught and thrown into a solitary cell in some dungeon. Even though she was a princess, they wouldn't let her go back to the Berry Kingdom. Turns out that was the deal to get Princess Nicole back. She was basically Emperor Zephon's slave. In other words, her own family straight up sold Lars out to get her little sister back when she heard that the girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. It just sounded insane. She figured getting captured meant she'd have to marry someone. And if it was Nicole, she'd totally become the empress. Lars remembered what her dad said. As the big sis, she had to save their poor little sister. But the prison guards told her this just proved her own country ditched her. Screaming, she grabbed the cold iron bars. She couldn't believe a damn word of it. That's when her pride as a royal got completely stomped on. Rolling up on her, the young emperor wondered, is this for real the Berry princess who used to mop the floor with our army, deciding to make her his little toy? He tried to cut a deal with her, but all he got was a hard no, because she straight up refused to turn on her kingdom. Emperor Zephon sighed, totally bummed, thinking she was an idiot for turning him down. A while later, 3 dudes rolled into her cell, and one of them was holding a knife. They clowned on the dirty bat, saying she wasn't even worth His Majesty looking at her. From then on, and for a long-ass time after she went through all kinds of messed-up torture, her clothes just soaked in blood. When Zephon came back to her cell, he figured things weren't looking so bad. Though, he thought it'd all be way better if Lars just became his side piece. But our girl knew he was just trying to get info out of her, and that was it. Taking the bloody bandage off her eyes, the Emperor made it clear it was just a suggestion. Staring deep into her eyes, he could say with his whole chest that he was being 100% real. Still, he knew the princess had to see the truth for herself. He absolutely had to get someone with that kind of insane magic on his side. Zephon wanted to completely shut down anyone who bought into that stupid idea for good. Right after that, the Emperor out of nowhere ordered them to let the girl go. He let out a heavy sigh and just hoped she'd get where he was coming from. Because no matter what, him and Princess Lars were 2 sides of the same damn coin. So after 10 years locked up, our girl finally got back home. People on the street knew who she was, and some pissed-off dude dumped a bucket of trash on her head. Everyone thought she was the reason Berry was stuck in this war, that she was the one to blame for everything, and started chucking rotten eggs at her. People were screaming, "Why ain't this bat dead yet?" They were all yelling insults and cursing her out, calling her a traitor to the country. Her own royal family turned their backs on her too, painting our girl as the ultimate villain. Her own little brother and sister personally tossed her in the dungeon after slapping her with a death sentence. Lars had no clue what any of it meant, especially since she went to war in the first place to save Nicole. But that just made the 2 of them bust out laughing even harder. And the prince was floored by how clueless and naive she was. She was always just the fall guy, and neither he nor Nicole ever saw Lars as family. She was always just trash, and her dark hair was the dead giveaway. Before the current queen, the king had a wife who was all about magic, and our girl was that woman's niece. The prince hated both of them, and her freakish magical power was all because she was related to that woman. Shuddering at the memory of their uncle, the girl really thought that whole mess was ancient history. The prince remembered the king only took her in as a power move to snag the throne. Laughing, he and his sister figured Lars was never going to get it anyway. Long before she shipped off to war, she was calling all the shots for the kingdom in that war. The princess led the troops just to flex her magic and decided to take on Shariat. Besides, when you really think about it, did our girl ever even give a damn about the royal family? Before she left, her brother wanted to pass on one last message from their dad. A necessary evil is what it is because it's necessary. End of story. After that, he and Nicole just bounced from the dungeon, leaving the girl totally wrecked. Then the butler showed up and brought her a slice of bread and a couple of meatballs. Kneeling down, Lars heard him set the plate on the floor right in front of her. Then it hit her. Working in the palace, he must have known the whole story. Our girl still couldn't figure out what she did wrong, so she had to hear everything that went down over the years. The absolute last thing she wanted to believe was that what she'd heard earlier was for real. So not wanting to die clueless, she was ready to beg the butler to spill everything. He paused for a second, then leaned in and gave her the whole story. Soon after, a guard led our girl to the scaffold as the sky itself started crying for her, sending a downpour. Lars knew now that from the second she set foot in the castle, she'd brought all this misery on herself. And her biggest screw-up was going all in for her work and family for absolutely nothing. Right then, the royal family was staring at her with straight-up disgust, like she was scum. The image of Prince Cheryl flashed in her mind, and his words echoed in her ears. She needed to see it with her own eyes. For her people, our girl had torched and wiped out hordes of innocent lives without a second thought. And now those same people stood below, screaming their heads off, calling her a snake and demanding her head. She gave up everything for them, and all she got in return was rotten tomatoes to the face. Suddenly, the executioner grabbed her by the head and slammed her down onto the wooden block, with a massive blade hanging right over her. She saw the face of that prince from Cheryl again, the one who was dying to use someone with her kind of insane magical power. Meanwhile, the crowd was going nuts, and the king and queen were just smiling down at a broken Lars. The girl also remembered she was supposed to take out anyone who bought into this stupid idea. Feeling a wave of pure rage just explode inside her, she swore she would never forgive them. Screaming in her head for her life back, she heard the guillotine whistling down towards her neck at full speed. Opening her eyes, Lars saw her reflection in the mirror, peacefully brushing her hair. Totally bugging out, she rushed to the mirror, not believing her own eyes. She frantically looked around and realized she was back in her own room. The butler was standing nearby, and a couple of maids were tidying up in the corner. She remembered the last time she saw him, in the dungeon when he'd spilled the beans on everything. But now he looked way younger than he did even before she left for the war. Seeing how freaked out her lady was, one of the maids poured her some tea, thinking she was just wiped from Nicole's birthday party. Time was flying by so fast it was hard to believe she was already 16. Totally stunned by what she heard, she decided to ask for the date. According to the continental calendar, when she heard it was March 4th, 654, she knew she'd jumped back more than 10 years. Now she was curious about that letter that showed up from the Shariat Empire this morning. The maids, like everybody else, had no clue, but they figured it was a marriage proposal for Lady Nicole. Panicking even harder, Lars frantically tried to remember that letter. She was sure it didn't specifically name the second Princess Nicole, but Princess Barry. But later the whole thing turned out to be just an excuse that led to some seriously messed up consequences. Just thinking about it, the smell of burning and the stench of 1,000 bodies hit her like a truck. Totally thrown, she turned back to the mirror and started checking herself out again. There was no doubt about it. She was definitely younger, and the wounds all over her body were gone too. Her neck and arm spots that used to be covered in nasty scars from all the torture were now just flawless, clean skin. Feeling her legs, Lars confirmed they were totally fine too. But her head was a complete mess. She had no clue how or why she was back or what the hell had just happened. The butler and servants were completely thrown by the shell-shocked look on their mistress's face. A grim-ass dungeon with nothing but pain to spare and the random rat scurrying by. The smug faces of her brother Eric and sister Nicole, who saw her as completely worthless. The metallic shriek of the guillotine coming down, promising nothing but death in this hellhole. Whatever the deal was, our girl knew for damn sure that this was really happening. Just then, she slumped down into a chair, burying her face in her hands, which totally freaked out the maids. In a flash, the fear and pain were gone, replaced by this insane, vengeful rage. Frozen solid by the fury, the girl slowly lifted her head and peeped the mirror again. This time she saw a flashback herself with a bloody bandage over her eye. Pure evil and bitter resentment twisted together, shaking every part of Lars's soul. She let out a blood-curdling scream and shattered the glass with her fist, freaking everybody out. The hit was so hard the whole dresser came crashing down right in front of the butler, who was gasping for air and shaking like a leaf. She got dragged back into those memories again. She could still see it. 2 dudes holding her down while a third one was just dragging a knife all over her body. Another time, one dude was kicking her while the other was coming at her with this huge spiked iron club. And through all of it, she couldn't shake the looks from the royal family, their faces all twisted with disgust and contempt. Now standing there like everything was cool, she knew she wasn't the same and all that crap was still inside her. Just then, royal guards busted into her room demanding to know what all the racket was about. Her parents always acted like she was their perfect daughter, and Lars, like a total idiot, bought it hook, line, and sinker. In the end, their fake love led to betrayal, suffering, and death. From now on, the heroine ain't forgiving her so-called parents who did nothing but use her. And she sure as hell ain't forgiving that idiot Eric who hogged all the glory. And don't even get me started on forgiving that snake Nicole, who was just kicking back and enjoying the show behind everyone's backs. The girl decided she wasn't going to forgive any of these bastards, who played games with her life. Pulling herself together, she apologized for her little outburst, saying she'd just been going through a rough patch. She also decided there was no need to bother her parents with this. Wouldn't want to inconvenience them. They must already have their hands full dealing with that letter from Shariat. Hearing them agree, the heroine sincerely thanked everyone for being so understanding. She couldn't let herself get used like that again. She put up with all that crap for her family and her country, thinking it was for the best. Meanwhile, Eric and Nicole were milking their royal kid status for all it was worth, making a name for themselves in high society. And right now, Lars was seriously confused. Did they really think she was the bad guy? Suddenly, a maid busted into her room announcing the king's order for the whole family to get together. Seeing the trashed room, she just froze in the doorway, totally shocked. The heroine figured her dad wanted to make an announcement about the letter from the Shariat Empire, hence the family meeting. The maid pretty much repeated her thoughts word for word, which was almost kind of funny. Agreeing to go to their meeting, Lars wondered, what family are they even talking about? Even all the servants here probably know the truth and are just playing along. Deciding to play their little game, the heroine asked them to clean up her room in the meantime. With that settled, she hurried off to the family powwow. Any doubts about her actually traveling back in time? Pretty much gone. And if that's the case, the king's gonna announce what's in that letter from the Shariat Empire real soon. Inside, the emperor wants a princess of the Barry family to be his empress. And this country's got two princesses, Lars and Nicole. Long story short, the younger sister, our girl here, ends up becoming empress and moves to the Shariat Empire. At the time, nobody's gonna realize it's all one big freaking trap. Turns out the emperor's just taking a royal hostage to force them to surrender. Suddenly, she sees the emperor's face in her mind, knowing he thinks she'll fall for it too. Meanwhile, Lars becomes world famous, but as the Bat Princess of all things. The very people she fought to protect will see her as a traitor, a sellout to her homeland and her own damn family. They'll use her like a pawn, then toss her aside like yesterday's trash. If they were all so desperate to see her as the villain, Lars wasn't about to disappoint them anymore. Instead, she decided to give them exactly what they wanted and become the evil they were craving. Once everyone was gathered, the head of the family apologized for calling such a sudden meeting. Seeing how young her parents looked, the heroine was reminded once again that she'd really gone back in time. With a heavy heart, the king had to announce that Emperor Zaphon wanted a princess of the Barry family for his wife. Hearing this, Eric shot up from his seat, totally shocked and devastated. Frozen in horror, Nicole was completely blindsided that the rumors were actually true. Lars knew the final choice would fall on her younger sister, who had only recently come of age. Technically, they should have picked the first princess, but at that moment, the girl had zero doubts. In her past life, she was just happy for Nicole, thinking she was the perfect candidate. She just wanted to support her like a big sister should. But now, it was clear they were never going to pick a hero. Unlike the baby of the family who everyone adored, she was just a nobody. Nothing more, nothing less. Lars realized she should have seen it coming when they threw her onto the battlefield to save Nicole, who'd been taken hostage. For her family, this girl went on killing sprees without a second thought. She was constantly putting herself in danger, and in the end they dumped her like yesterday's trash. Suddenly, she overheard Eric agreeing with their dad's plan to marry off the youngest to the emperor. Her brother was convinced Nicole would be an awesome empress and to build a bridge between Barry and Shariat. Peeping him calmly, Lars figured Eric was still on that same old BS, and her youngest sister's face got darker than a storm cloud when she heard the news. Smirking, the hero couldn't believe anyone would pass up a sweet deal like that. Sorry to butt in, but there's no way in hell Nicole is marrying Zeon. Totally blindsided by that, her sister stared at her, completely shook. Meanwhile, Eric, who usually acted like the main character didn't exist, was now practically seething at her. The queen, for her part, had no clue what the hell Lars was on about. As the older sister, she had to back Nicole up. Blown away by their nerve, the main character shot up, insisting her little sister would make a great empress. But if her fiancé is that tyrant, there's no telling how messed up things will get. Zephon Barb Verbana was the emperor of Shariat, a dude notorious for being a cruel, cold-blooded monster. No wonder Nicole, who'd been babied her whole life, was absolutely terrified of him. Dad's definitely heard the rumors about this guy, and you can't even count the people he's had executed on a whim. Even if she's his wife, there's no guarantee he won't just pull his sword on her. And to top it all off, Zephon straight up murdered his own father, the last emperor, with his bare hands. The word on the street is this psycho personally takes care of anyone who gets on his nerves. Lars knew all that crazy talk was legit, and his battle tactics were all the proof she needed. His soldiers would strap explosives to themselves and swarm together like a bunch of maniacs. Then one of them would light a fuse and the whole damn suicide squad would charge straight into a crowd of enemy soldiers. In other words, the emperor didn't even see his own people as human beings. On top of all that, he also had 6 concubines who were totally obsessed with him. They say they even tried to murder each other to take out the competition. The heroine knew that was a fact too, and she could already picture who all that jealousy was going to be aimed at once the new empress showed up. Nicole was going to have to deal with all that BS in a foreign land all by herself. My parents' and brother's faces totally changed, and they couldn't argue anymore. Lars hugged her little sister, deciding that as the big sis, she couldn't just stand by and let this happen. The truth is, in her past life, after ending up in Cheryl, Nicole was looking for the first chance to bounce from that place. Not even a month after the wedding letters started flooding in, spelling out the hell she was going through every single day. She even confessed she spent her wedding night alone, even though that's seen as a huge disgrace. It was all way too much for a delicate girl like her from the get-go. And the main character was dead certain that in her case, things would go down way differently. That's why she decided to go to the Empire instead of Nicole saving her in the process. Right now, they were in no position to just blow off the Empire's demands. As for their little sister, they'd for sure find her a much better match. For her beloved sister, Lars was willing to take her place and marry a tyrant. She knew the whole time that Nicole wasn't picked to be the Emperor's wife because she was some kind of perfect fit. It was just that their parents didn't want the heroine, their adopted daughter, to become empress of a massive country. Way more than that, they were worried about the safety of their precious baby girl. While the king and queen were lost in thought, Lars caught a glimpse of Nicole. She realized she had been totally ready to throw her life away for this girl. But everything changed the second the heroine saw that smug smirk on her face. With a ton of effort and his wife's support, the king finally made the tough call. He figured it was a necessary evil, something that just had to be done. And even though it killed him to send Lars to a place like that, he respected her decision and was ready to go along with it. Thanking him for his trust, she secretly knew he was going to regret this big time. She remembered her father's last words right before her execution were exactly the same as these. Clapping her hands full of relief and joy, Nicole decided Lars would make an amazing empress. Smiling back, all she felt was pure disgust for that nasty little brat. Eric figured if that was his dad's decision, he couldn't say a damn thing. Thinking of Lars as the family's pride and joy, the queen realized she already missed her like crazy. Smiling brightly at everyone, the girl could barely keep herself from puking. This time, as messed up as it is, they're the ones getting kicked to the curb. A couple months later, the wedding day for Emperor Zephon and Princess Lars finally arrived. Walking like royalty in her wedding dress, she held her new husband's hand while the butler trailed behind them, holding up her veil. As the priest droned on with the vows, she stared at the emperor and decided this was her fresh start. The royal family was right there in the front row, all smiles watching their daughter get hitched. But at the same time, you could feel this heavy vibe of total contempt and indifference in the air. What was this weird vibe and where the hell was it coming from? She couldn't figure it out. Compared to the last 10 years, though, this was a complete joke, not even worth a second thought. After vowing to love the emperor forever, the heroine decided she was going to conquer Barry herself. Then she and Zephon turned to face each other, ready to swap rings. In a flash, she remembered seeing him in that damp, dark dungeon and his final words to her. Gently lifting her chin, the emperor leaned in to kiss his bride. Lars was sure that with this guy, she could definitely pull off her plan. The Shariat Empire was a massive, freezing-ass country, and it had been getting big by gobbling up other nations for a hot minute. Every country had its own special brand of magic passed down through the family. In our main character's homeland, that magic was all about wild flames. Now, the Shariat Empire, their magic was all about healing. On top of that, in every country, the royal family members were always the most stacked magic users. In Barry, the king and Eric were the purebloods, and Nicole took after her mom, also packing some serious heat compared to normal people. Lars had some insane magical abilities, even for her family, all thanks to her link to the second prince's blood. Her mom, who had dudes lined up around the block for her, was actually engaged to the second prince, the dude with the strongest magic in all of Barry. But she ended up marrying the crown prince, who later became king. Meanwhile, Emperor Zephon Barb Verbana of Zephon had his own drama going on too. The old emperor had 10 side pieces, so yeah, he had a boatload of kids, but out of all of them, he was born with the most ridiculous magical power. Zephon became emperor less than a year after getting named heir. And the word on the street is he iced his own pops to do it. Once he took the throne, he made the country even bigger and scooped up 6 more side chicks who live in the palace and pull some serious strings. That ain't gonna change even after the emperor gets himself a main squeeze. Nicole, who's been sheltered her whole life, just wouldn't last a second in that kind of snake pit. Once they got to the imperial palace, Zephon made it crystal clear he wasn't about to lift a finger for his new wife. Smirking, he told the heroine to just ignore the side chick's petty jealousy. After saying that, he bounced to go do his own thing, showing his wife zero respect. The only person who was for sure on our girl's side was Shinn the butler who came with her. Real talk. It would have been smarter to bring a maid, but I could only bring one person with me. In my last life, he wasn't the one who saved Lars, but we weren't exactly beefing either. While I was locked up, he's the one who gave me the rundown on everything that happened over 10 years. So as a thank you, I brought him here. I can't totally trust him, obviously, but I still figured I had to get him out of Barry. Remember, and I forgot to ask what he thought I decided to check if Shinn was salty about coming here. The answer came back ice cold and instant, and turns out he wasn't against it because it was an order. I never really thought about it before, but the more I talk to him, the more he seems like he ain't human. Shinfiners was a servant in the palace, and he was a beast at his job, but super antisocial. He did every single part of his job without question, but just couldn't vibe with the other servants. He became Lars's personal servant when the whole kingdom started throwing shade at her. While she was locked up in the dungeon, the butler kept bringing her food. Probably because of how he is, the dude always treated her right, no strings attached. Just then, he finished fixing her hair, and she gave him a real thank you for it. Our girl also noticed that none of the maids ever came to her room. Usually there's always at least 1 or 2 maids just chillin' in the Empress's room, waiting for orders. But the whole time she's been here, nobody's even popped their head in to check on her. Even if you yelled for 'em, they wouldn't even give you the time of day. Total disrespect. In her past life, Nicole bitched about this a ton in her letters. Honestly, compared to crashing in a tent on a battlefield or rotting in a dungeon, Lars was living pretty large now. But she couldn't just sit on the sidelines and let this slide anymore. On top of everything, she refused to live a life where all she did was take people's crap. Stepping into the hallway and spotting 2 maids, she barked an order for someone to get her a glass of water stat. Shinn was about to hop to it, but she suddenly stopped him with her hand, picking her first target. Lars strolled over to the maid, staring right through her, snatching her by the collar and yanking her close. She freaked both girls out, glaring hard into the scared maid's eyes. The Empress had to know. Was she deaf or something? Not waiting for an answer, she tossed the girl to the floor, still burning holes through her with that death stare, then bending her right arm. Lars whipped up a huge flame in her palm, and the maid instantly went pale as a ghost. The Empress demanded to know who ordered the servants to ghost her. And if she didn't get an answer, the girl was gonna be toast. Through blubbering pleas for mercy, the Empress heard it was all the head maid's fault. Lars was totally thrown because she figured it was the side chicks or even the Emperor himself. Snuffing out the flame and burning that maid's face into her memory, she ordered her to get the water now. A couple minutes later, the girl came back, hands shaking as she offered up a pitcher and glass on a tray. In that instant, the maid was soaked from head to toe as the Empress dumped every last drop of water on her. Lars figured since the maid kept her mouth shut, she deserved to get soaked. Bawling her eyes out and admitting she was wrong, the girl immediately started thanking her mistress for showing mercy. With that little lesson taken care of, our girl told the maid to get back to work. Scrambling away, the girl stammered out a few more apologies before taking off. Lars decided that since she was just following orders, that punishment was more than enough. The old her would have been wrecked by something that small. But now things were different. Compared to all the hell she went through in her past life, that was nothing. Right after she put the other 5 maids through the same damn training, they all spilled that the order came from the head maid, and word on the street was she wasn't all that. After chopping it up with everyone and soaking in the quiet, Lars told Shinn to go grab the head maid. But first our girl had to get ready for her grand entrance. After a minute, the butler basically dragged the head maid to her and she was like, "How dare she pull me away from my important work? Plus this dude just drags me over here without even asking." But the second she set foot in the Empress's room, she forgot all about that and was totally shook. Lars was just chilling in her chair, and behind her a table was flipped on the floor with cups busted all over the place. Our girl knew for a fact that she and the head maid had a lot to discuss. Years ago, this girl heard young Nicole screaming her lungs out from inside her room. Red as a tomato, she was bawling her eyes out, yelling that she only liked bunnies. The servants and maids tried everything to calm Her Highness down, but it was useless. And all the while, a teddy bear ripped to shreds was laying at her feet, silently taking all the heat and disrespect. Even though Lars was already grown by then, she still felt bad for the toy. After that, she saw the young prince toss important documents about the southern ports all over the floor. Thinking they were whack, he ordered a servant to scoop them up and take all the papers to his older sister. All Lars could do was just watch on the low, the servant scrambling to pick up the documents off the floor. Later, she took that teddy bear, and after patching it up, threw it a huge tea party. Plus, she happily took the documents she got from the prince's servant. All she wanted was to look out for her family, so she grinned and bore it, letting everything slide. But now, right before the head maid showed up, she straight up ripped all the curtains in her room and flipped the table for her. Being completely shattered inside was just too much to handle. Walking in totally lost, the woman couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. Chilling in her chair, our girl wanted to ask her the same thing. For some reason, nobody ever comes to clean her room. Ordering the maids around was the head maid's job. Shook by her words, the woman felt a hot mix of shame and rage. Meanwhile, Lars was still trying to figure out why no one was giving her the time of day. Did the head maid have any clue how lonely she'd been all this time? The woman was confused why she even had to listen to all this noise, but she was the one in charge of the maids. Playing dumb like she had no clue what was up the head, Maid furiously insisted that all the maids were acting on their own. Did this crazy chick really decide to trash her room on her first day here? She couldn't believe it. Smirking at the Empress, the woman wondered how our girl felt getting a taste of her power. After saying that, Lars suddenly went dead silent and stared daggers at the maid. Puffing out her chest, the woman decided to make it clear that by the Emperor's order, all the maids answered to her. What she wanted was what the Emperor wanted, and the little lady should be grateful she even got this room. And so the head maid wanted her to ditch any false hopes. After all, the girl was just a pretty decoration and empress by name only. Nothing more. Emperor Zephon already has a ton of wives, all of them way more worthy than her. You think maybe the reason the maids, to take orders from some broad, especially a princess from a dump like Barry, who's got nothing going for her besides some cheap magic tricks? The woman thought to herself with a smirk. It ain't even been a day, and Lars hasn't even bothered to get what the servants are going through. Even if the heroine's just a pretty face, the head maid could already see a grim future for her. Still trash-talking the Empress. Under her breath, the woman suddenly locked eyes with her. The girl's cold, calm stare sent a wave of pure terror through every cell in her body, backpedaling fast. She switched up and said they always did their work on point. The head maid figured maybe one day she'd actually accept the heroine as empress, sneering to herself. She figured that's when the other servants would flip their script too. But for now, the woman told the empress to clean her own damn room, cause if she couldn't handle that, she sure as hell couldn't handle anything else. Besides, as a loyal servant to His Majesty, the head maid wasn't about to take orders from some low-born chick with tainted blood. She tried to dip, but then Lars's foot flew right past her head, blocking the doorway. It was clear to the girl that this idiot hadn't gotten the memo that she was the emperor's wife now. Pale as a ghost, the maid looked into her ladyship's eyes, which were burning with pure rage. Lars didn't remember asking for her opinion, since even if it was just on paper, she was the empress. So why the hell should she take this kind of crap from any of them? She wanted the woman to give her one good reason why. But the maid was too shook to say a word. Not getting why she was so quiet, the heroine decided that talking was pointless here. Smiling, she figured this maid hadn't left her any choice. First remembering her big talk, Lars decided to ask if her little power trip was really the emperor's will. It would have been easy enough to check if that was true. The heroine wanted to see what would happen if the maid got a little scratch. Would the emperor waste his time on his concubine or his head maid either way? She was down for whatever, as long as she got to see her man. Thinking this was going to be a blast, she grabbed the pale, terrified chick's face with both hands, then snatched her up by the hair. Lars was like, what did this maid think was going to happen after pulling that kind of stunt? Snatching her hair with one hand and grabbing the scissors from Shinn with the other, she was about to give her a little trim. Screaming her head off, the chick's face went pale with fear, and she demanded to know what the hell our girl was about to do. Since it was just day one, she decided to stick to just her hair for now. Freaking out, the woman started flailing around, begging her boss to chill. She was already regretting every single stupid word that came out of her mouth. But the empress was just like, if she kept squirming like that, it wasn't just going to be her hair that got messed up. Right then the maid jerked back, and the blade sliced her cheek. She immediately let out a scream, and Lars, totally cracking up, told her to hold still, thinking about all the garbage they made her go through in her past life. Our girl couldn't believe she was tripping over a little cut. The emperor was a straight-up savage, cold enough to take out his own crew. The chick shouldn't even be sweating it. Her wish was His Majesty's command, so he'd probably just fix her up with his magic anyway. Backing away from her boss all teary-eyed, the maid fessed up and started begging for her life. She also promised she'd order the maids to get the empress's rooms cleaned up like right now. With a smirk, Lars was like, what kind of crap is this chick even saying, then raising the scissors over her again? She declared the head maid herself was going to scrub this room clean, and boom, just like that, her room was immaculate, not a thing out of place. Pretty soon, the whole palace was gossiping about how Her Majesty tossed water in some maid's face. But what really got everyone talking was the head maid's new do. You could barely recognize her. Our girl wasn't getting any more lip from the servants, and was finally just chillin' sipping her tea. The other maids were totally side-eyeing her, still shook that all this drama happened in just one day. But what else you gonna expect from the notorious Bat? Princess with the baddest rep around. Back home, she was a straight-up villain who jacked the throne from Crown Prince Eric. On top of that, she kept jacking up taxes and partying with the nobles every single day. She flipped the Berry Kingdom's laws like a dozen times, making the king bow down to her crazy, intense whims. She even messed with her country's trade routes to get their allies jumped at sea. The Berry royal family was famous for one thing, their golden hair. But not Princess Lars. Hers was jet black, the only one in the family between that and her wild antics. People started calling her the Bat Princess. The word on the street was she wasn't even the king of Berry's real kid. Like maybe she was the queen's kid from a secret hookup. So of course, word about what his new wife pulled eventually reached Emperor Zephon. But he didn't even blink. Why should he care about some random maid? Her hair's gonna grow back anyway, right? It's just a matter of time. Not long after Lars got a surprise invitation to a tea party. Shinn told her that kicking it with the high society ladies was part of her job as empress. And when you talk about high society ladies, you know the emperor's side pieces are gonna be there. Plus there's a fancy dinner with His Majesty right after. Based on Nicole's letters from her past life, she got treated like total trash in Cheryl. So it was a safe bet nobody was going to be rolling out the red carpet for our girl this time either. She asked the butler what he thought if she should go or not, and the dude just said she should do whatever she thought was best. Remembering how the emperor's other women treated her like crap back in the day, Lars decided to check who sent the invitation. Turns out it was from the emperor's fourth side chick, some chick named Eliza Annette. Back in her past life, when they showed up at the cell where our girl was locked up, she and the other chicks gave her a real sarcastic welcome. Eliza was like, no way! Was this seriously the Bat Princess everyone was talking about? Thinking she looked pathetic, the girls started clowning on Lars, saying she belonged in that dungeon. These chicks couldn't believe that instead of kissing the ground, their man walked on. This crazy chick turned down their precious lord's offer. Honestly, if she'd just admit she was a nobody now, Eliza would have even given her a glass of water herself. They figured a princess with no pride left wouldn't have a problem admitting it. Even after all that time and all the torture, the side pieces still looked at her like she was scum and made fun of her. But now that she was empress, Lars was more than happy to accept that tea invite. She also told Shinn to have the servants get her dress ready. If they messed up even one little thing, the maids would have to answer to her directly. Pretty soon it was time for the party to kick off, and the emperor's women gathered around the table. They couldn't believe the new empress would put the head maid on blast like that. She must be a real piece of work to get a nickname like the Bat, thinking. It was totally embarrassing. The ladies couldn't help but crack up all laughing together. Compared to her, their precious Lady Eliza was a total saint. Just sitting there, Lady Annette was all pure class. Someone like her was the only one who deserved Emperor Xeon. Looks like the heroine's been putting the hurt on the maids, the ones lower on the totem pole. But if she starts pulling that crap with noble ladies, there'll be hell to pay even if she is the Empress. Meanwhile, Lars glided over to the table, relieved everyone was already there. The giggling stopped cold, and suddenly the heroine was getting the stink eye from all directions. Smiling sweetly, Eliza mentioned that she and the ladies were just dying to see Her Majesty. They also sincerely hoped she'd enjoy the food which the head chef had slaved over. Lars instantly flashed back to her past life. When Lady Annette tossed a bag of food at her feet and stomped on it, then she kicked him towards the girl like he was trash, hoping she'd enjoy the meal even in that hellhole. There was one decent dude who changed my bandages every now and then. Too bad Lars didn't spot him in the crowd. Now meanwhile, Eliza decided to get the lowdown. What was it like for the Empress to live in the palace, and had she gotten used to it? She was hoping the girl would take the question the right way, since all the ladies were seriously worried about her, the Bat Princess from Barry, becoming Empress. Yeah, that's gotta be a hell of a burden. They'd already heard a juicy rumor that she'd only brought one dude along as a servant. Word on the street was Lars jacked the Empress's spot from her younger sister. And on top of that, did she really do that to the headmaid just because she wanted to play Empress? Lars didn't say squat, just chilled and enjoyed her fragrant tea. She knew that even though she wasn't locked up anymore, these ladies still looked down on her all the same. Suddenly, they remembered the head chef had shown off his skills and whipped up a special dish just for Her Majesty. Then one of the concubines piped up about how she'd heard dark hair wasn't exactly a royal family trait, so she just had to know, was the Bat also some kind of love child on the side? Seeing the look on their girl's face, she realized maybe she'd come on a little too strong. Apologizing, Eliza said she was genuinely sorry and worried about the girl. After all, His Majesty Xeon had such beautiful silvery hair. How embarrassed must Lars be standing next to him with his mousy-colored hair? All the concubines burst out laughing right along with Lady Annette and gave the girl a mocking look. This girl was already seeing that pampered Nicole wouldn't have lasted a day here. Those words didn't faze her one bit. And she wasn't about to miss this chance to play with words. Agreeing with the ladies, Lars figured she'd really have it rough if she were born out of wedlock. She also wanted to clarify if Lady Eliza got pregnant by His Majesty. Would that kid be considered illegitimate too? He'd be constantly surrounded by bogus rumors that he was a nobody, someone who knew jack about nobility plus. He'd only have half royal blood in his veins, which would make even his own father hate him. Also, Lady Annette doesn't have silver hair, and if the kid inherits hers, everyone's gonna doubt he's even Xeon's. There's no guarantee His Majesty the Emperor would even acknowledge a kid from a concubine. Pissed, Eliza immediately jumped to her feet, demanding the heroine shut her damn mouth. She and the other girls were shocked that their incomparable Lady Annette would stoop to such ignorance. Lars just gave her a sweet smile in return, deciding this was only the beginning. With that, she had to leave the ladies to themselves and head to dinner with her husband. Thanking the girls for the lovely tea, she hoped they'd invite her again sometime. After finding out what color hair their baby will have at tonight's dinner with His Majesty, she'll be sure to let them know. Turning to leave, she was met with dead silence and Eliza's furious glare. Once Lars had proudly bounced from the room, you could cut the tension with a knife. The concubines looked terrified at Lady Annette, who looked like a caged tiger jumping up and storming into the hallway. She couldn't get what baby she and His Majesty were talking about. Did that chick really think Eliza didn't know she spent her wedding night alone? Besides, there's nothing to brag about with just one dinner with the Emperor. She's had countless dinners with him. Of course, she hadn't been getting dinner with him as much as she wanted lately. Gritting her teeth, she couldn't believe that girl became the Empress. Eliza made up her mind right then and there. She had to get her booted from the palace. There's no way His Majesty actually has feelings for that little brat, right? Suddenly, she spotted a couple of servants painting the big doors and stopped dead in her tracks. On the floor next to them were 2 buckets filled to the brim with white paint. Remembering the Empress had a dinner planned with His Majesty, a wicked grin twisted Eliza's face. She decided that in that case, she should help the lady with the decorations for the reception. After a while, the head maid and Shinn helped Lars into a dark lace dress. The whole time, the woman watched her with fear, afraid to even squeak. The heroine decided Shinn would do her hair, while the maid could dip. Ever since she moved into this palace, she and the Emperor hadn't even laid eyes on each other, but seeing as they're married now, it's their duty to have regular meals together. Xeon only went through with this marriage to take someone from Barry as a hostage to stop that from happening. Our girl needed to prove her worth to him. Luckily, she had plenty of intel she could offer, and dinner was the perfect chance to do it. Later, the girl got a message supposedly from the Emperor saying he was waiting for her in the garden, but they were going to see each other soon anyway, so it made 0 sense for him to write that. It was obviously a trap. The heroine didn't give a damn, though, and happily took him up on the offer. She had plenty of time to kill, so she figured she'd give that chick a little attention. Wishing Eliza good luck with her whole plan to mess with her or whatever, Lars with Shinn in tow strolled into the garden. Nobody was around, but it didn't feel like anyone was hiding either. The girl figured they were just trying to make her wait as long as possible. Suddenly, there was a weird noise from above, and at the last second, Lars spotted paint flying right at her. She covered her face and managed to dodge a bit, but unfortunately, she couldn't save her hair, which immediately got splattered with white paint. From the window, she saw the concubines looking real smug, and Eliza cheerfully waved hello to the Honorable Empress. They all laughed at her, clueless about what was about to go down. The main character just calmly stared back at him while the butler was totally floored by what happened. The lady was bummed. Her new dress got wrecked, especially since she thought she had a date with the Emperor today. But then Lady Annette decided that on second thought this might even be better. In their opinion, Her Majesty's hair looked way better now than her usual boring dark hair. With that, the concubines strutted off looking all smug. Meanwhile, Emperor Zephon stood on one of the balconies, watching the whole thing go down. He was curious to see how his wife would react to all this. Playing it cool, she tossed her hair back and called for Shinn. She wanted to send the butler off right away to get a new dress ready for her. Bowing deeply to his mistress, the servant hurried off to do what she asked. On top of that, Lars wanted him to get her bath ready immediately. Squeezing the paint out of her hair, she decided to wash all the gunk off. After a while, it was finally time for their dinner together and the table was set right on schedule. But still, the Emperor sat alone for a long time, counting the minutes as he waited for her. He hadn't touched his food, just sat there frozen staring into space. She was ridiculously late, and some of the servants figured the lady just wasn't ready yet. But Zephon was sure she was just pissed about that stupid paint thing. They call her the Bat Princess of Berry, but it turned out she's a total wimp, probably locked in her room crying her eyes out right now. Deciding not to wait any longer, the Emperor wanted to head back to his room and started towards the door. Suddenly they swung open and Lars rushed in, offering her deepest apologies for being late. Seeing her and hearing that it just took a little longer to get ready, Zephon was stunned. Slowly gliding in an elegant dress, the heroine was shining with her golden curls. In her past life, after getting splashed with paint, Nicole decided she desperately wanted to go home. The maid tried to calm her down, but the young empress couldn't get how she could go to dinner looking like this. She was supposed to be the top dog here, but for some reason nobody would listen to her. I mean, for real. At the last tea party, Zephon's concubines were straight up humiliating and insulting her, and Nicole was thinking, why do I have to keep taking this crap all the time? A maid rushed to get her a new dress, but the empress decided she should just focus on getting ready to go back to Berry. She didn't get what went wrong. Wasn't her older sister supposed to handle all this? Nicole decided to write her dad a letter right away telling him how she was being treated here. When they find out about all this, the whole kingdom's gonna riot against Shariat. But now our girl was in her spot, and after blowing the emperor's mind with her appearance, she went to her seat. Without a word, Zephon also sat down at the table, nervously tugging at his collar. The maids and servants, who were supposed to be serving her during the meal, were also totally shocked and confused. Lars just gave her husband this genuine knowing smile, like she was seeing right through him. The dude was floored not just by how she looked, but by the sheer confidence radiating off her. He swallowed hard, feeling totally thrown for a loop for the first time ever. Barely holding back a laugh, she was like, for real, does he not recognize the Bat Princess? She remembered from her little sister's letters that Eliza used to pull the same crap on her. Right now, the girl was just stoked she managed to clean up before the main course showed up. Just like she wanted, she got all the grime and gunk out of her hair. And lucky for her, she didn't have to dye it black this time. Her dad always told her that if anyone found out about her golden hair, they'd come after her trying to steal her magic. The queen, on the other hand, was always freaked out that something awful would happen to her precious daughter if she didn't dye it. But according to Nicole, black hair suited her way better than her natural color. Believing every damn word, the girl made a mental note to keep dyeing her hair regularly. It brought back her brother's words about how she was always just a pawn and her nasty hair proved it. But right now she was stoked to finally show everyone her true self. Even after getting to Shariat Palace, she dyed her hair dark to avoid any unnecessary drama. Back in her homeland of Berry, golden hair was the ultimate symbol of the royal family. In general, gold and silver hair meant you had some crazy magical powers. Her own family pushed her to dye her hair to trash her reputation, basically. Lars is showing everybody her true worth just by rocking that gold hair. Realizing she'd been spacing out, she looked over at the Emperor. He noticed, flinched, and just stared back at her, totally lost. Seeing how shook he was, the girl asked if he had something to say. Zephon definitely wasn't expecting that and got even more thrown off. A bead of sweat trickled down his face. The hero grabbed a wine glass off the table and downed it in one gulp. Then he immediately ordered the servant to pour him some more. The servant did as he was told, surprised his master was so on edge before even touching his food. While waiting for the refill, the Emperor nervously tugged at his collar again. Just then, Lars remembered the guy who would sometimes take care of her in prison. She also thought about the few short meetings she'd had with His Majesty. Meanwhile, his glass was refilled, and Zephon started throwing it back again. He figured she must have dyed her hair, but she was quick to tell him it was her natural color. Seeing his confused look, she quickly explained that she had to hide her real hair color because of some family rules. Those rules were definitely made to help out her younger brother and sister. Lars knew the truth that she was just a scapegoat, hadn't gotten out in Shariat yet, so she had to make something up. She pretended her little sister didn't fully inherit the family's magic and didn't have pure golden hair. But the Emperor knew damn well she also had a brother, Crown Prince Eric. So the heroine claimed that even though her brother's hair was the same color as hers, his magical abilities were super weak. Zephon was thrown off because she said it like the prince's powers were a total joke compared to hers. With a sarcastic smirk, the heroine reminded him that Eric was the heir to the throne. And if the heir has less magic than the princess, he'll look weak to the public. But the hero still wasn't catching on. Usually a weak candidate gets kicked to the curb naturally. Lars didn't think so. In her past life, she was the one who got the boot. Changing the subject, she said it was an honor. That the emperor was interested in her family. She was also kind of happy they were having dinner like a normal family. Plus, her real hair color was a way better match for the emperor's 6 silver hair. Taking another sip of wine, Zephon watched his wife deep in thought. He'd never expected her to have what it takes to be an empress. He knew there were plenty of valuable women around already. But Lars shot back that she was more valuable to him than anyone else. Stunned by her arrogance, the emperor instantly went ballistic. The servants' faces fell, realizing this could end in an execution or worse. But the heroine just looked confident, staring her husband straight in the eye. Zephon didn't get what value she was talking about since he hadn't even acknowledged her as his empress yet. Up until now, he'd seen tons of women just like her. So he told her to remember that the second she left this house, she was done for. In response, the girl just laughed, which totally threw him. If he kills her, he'll never get the intel on the situation. That's about to turn this whole country upside down. Lars knew exactly how big of a loss that would be for him. Taking his seat and giving her a suspicious look, Zephon was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Then the heroine brought up the massive ship with the white sails, the one called the White Meridian. Hearing that name, the emperor and his servants froze. Their eyes were bugging out in shock and confusion. The White Meridian was the Shariat Empire's main trading ship. It sails from its home port, hits up ports in their colonies and with their trade partners, then heads back. For the Shariat Empire stuck in a freezing climate, trade was the only way to get essential resources. The White Meridian, loaded with cargo, is set to return home next month. But Barry, who's supposed to be an ally, is planning to attack that ship. Their goal is to take everything on board. If they pull it off, the whole crew will be wiped out and the Shariat Empire will lose all the resources they already paid for. Barry is fully backing their ally Capricorn on this, and they've promised Barry a huge payoff to keep the whole thing under wraps. The heroine was nearby and overheard her father talking about the plan with the ruler of Capricorn. Later, when she went to talk to him, she told him she wasn't sure it was a good idea. After all, their own Lars is the Empress of Shariat. The king, though, said there wasn't a damn thing to worry about. The kingdom of Capricorn has been their ally forever. We gotta have each other's backs. The girl knew that, but they were cool with the Shariat Empire too, right? That's when Eric jumped in saying, "Those good terms were a straight-up lie." Besides, Lars was the one who came up with this plan in the first place. So what's her problem now? But our girl never imagined they'd use her idea for something like this. Her dad put a hand on her shoulder saying nothing had changed, and thanks to her it was a win-win for both kingdoms. Shariat will never find out, and the king was super grateful and proud of his little girl. Sure, it's shady, but it's what they had to do to keep up appearances for both countries. But if Emperor Zephon finds out, he'll be all over them even if they deny everything. Just 'cause they're tight with the Capricorn kingdom. Nicole's gonna catch hell since she's their empress. Everything went smooth as hell thanks to the hero, and her old man decided he's trusting her with everything from here on out. Lars was totally stoked hearing that, and she agreed with every damn word. It's only now really hitting her how dumb she used to be. So after the attack, the Shariat Empire never managed to figure out who pulled it off. The Castle Kingdom, where the White Meridian last docked, had to take the fall and pay up. Word on the street was that Zephon eventually bounced back from the damage, but it took years of grinding, and all the credit for the cover-up went to the king and Erica, which was exactly what Lars wanted. Knowing the White Meridian is coming back next month, our girl decided she wanted to talk business. But the heroine already had intel that the ship was going to get jacked in a month anyway. On top of that, she knew the exact date, time, and location of the hit. Plus, she had other info that it'd be a huge score for the Shariat Empire and the Emperor himself. But first, the girl suggested they put her intel to the test just once. She got a fat stack of her info back when she was still Princess Barry. Plus, Shinn told her about the 10 years, and that was all going to be her ace in the hole. Zephon was itching to know more, but Lars figured she had to play it cool. She knew just how valuable this info was. She couldn't just spill the beans right away. Staring hard at his wife, the hero was seriously impressed by her play. What's more, he agreed to run her intel against all their existing attack data. If the White Meridian really gets hit and they manage to stop it, then he'll have to admit she's the real deal. This ship was the backbone of his country's supply line, and right now it's loaded with goods worth a damn fortune. If those crooks actually show up, the Emperor is ready to personally make sure they all sleep with the fishes. But if it turns out the heroine's just yanking their chain, she'll be taking a long swim with the fishes. Accepting the bet, Lars raised her wine glass ready to toast to a killer deal. Later on, Eliza's room looked like a damn tornado hit it. Furniture and dishes were flying everywhere. The concubine was in a blind rage, completely losing it over what her maid told her about the Emperor and Empress's dinner. The lady couldn't believe the heroine had the nerve to show up with golden hair. And what the hell could that little witch even be making deals with His Majesty about? The maid backed away from her mistress in fear, saying she didn't know a damn thing. Eliza was absolutely furious that the girl's dark hair turned out to be a fake. She was dead set on making that upstart regret ever messing with her. Meanwhile, Lars was just chilling in her room, totally lost in a book. Their first dinner with the Emperor was over, and the next one probably wouldn't be for at least another month. Until then, she needed to rethink her whole strategy and come up with a solid plan. Suddenly, a maid came into her room apologizing to the Empress before she even said anything. Turns out, a message had been delivered for her, but something messed up happened before she got it. The maid handed the lady a pile of shredded paper that used to be a letter. Right after that, the maid quickly swore she had nothing to do with it. She said the message showed up already torn to shreds, and there was nothing she could do. From a few words on the scraps, Lars figured out the letter was from her dad. We also see he was digging around trying to get the scoop on the situation in Shariat. Lars, not wanting to deal with the drama, just told Shinn to toss the letter immediately. She really hoped the butler wasn't into jigsaw puzzles, and lucky for her he wasn't. One less headache to deal with. And who knows, maybe she should even thank Eliza for this. Back in her past life, Nicole used to complain all the time about her letters getting torn to shreds. It's probably one of the concubines, and odds are it's the fourth one, Lady Annette. The heroine decided to ask Shinn when she could get a face-to-face with Eliza. He told her that Princess Jane is throwing a Christmas party in a few days. It's going to be a massive blowout, so all the concubines are definitely going to be there. Hyped about the news, our girl decided she absolutely had to hit up this party. I can't wait to see what kind of crap a woman who's just a concubine will try to pull this time. As for today, the main character decided to go for a walk. Meanwhile, the third concubine, Sasha Lebedia, was chilling with some tea in a bright gazebo. She was in a massive greenhouse when Lars and her butler strolled in. She was totally blown away by how beautiful it was. It was huge, like a giant indoor garden. Smiling as she checked out all the gorgeous flowers, she felt completely at peace. Hearing a rustle nearby, she carefully turned her head toward the sound. The blue-haired lady left the gazebo and sat down on the edge of a big flower bed. She just sat there lost in thought and looking down all sad, not even noticing the main character was there. Lars decided to walk over to her, and when she heard the footsteps, the lady totally freaked out. Lars strolled right up to her, stopped, and gave her a good hard look. When she realized it was the Empress, the concubine was totally floored by her golden hair. Panicking even more, she figured she'd screwed up big time, and now that Her Majesty was here, she'd be forced to get out of there. Sizing up the stranger, Lars felt like she recognized her voice from somewhere. Suddenly snapping out of it, Sasha apologized for being so rude and introduced herself to the Empress. That's when our girl realized this was the third concubine. Were the others messing with her? Her prim and proper act was probably a front, and Lars decided she wasn't buying it anymore. After going blind in her past life, she couldn't even tell who was the one messing with her. She got curious. Why was the concubine so on edge? She was picked by the Emperor too, right? Sasha, though, had a different take, believing she only became a concubine to smooth things over between her country and the Empire. So our girl figured even if she was just playing the innocent lamb, she could still learn a ton. She decided that since they'd already bumped into each other, grabbing some tea would be a solid idea. Sasha was totally thrown frozen in shock, while Lars, meanwhile, told Shinn to get a table ready for them. Pretty soon, a small table in a cozy gazebo was piled high with all kinds of sweets and a tea set. The concubine was like a kid getting hyped about every single treat. And the more time passed, the more she doubted this was all an act. Out of the blue, she said the tea's delicate aroma would be perfect with pinnock, which totally threw our girl for a loop. Seeing the Empress's confused look, Sasha quickly explained that it was a super popular sweet from Sheriat. She was surprised that Her Majesty had never even heard of the stuff. But Lars got it. She just never had the chance before. She didn't know anything about popular sweets because she hadn't made her social debut yet. Damn, our girl was blushing hard, totally embarrassed. She figured being an empress and not knowing about sweets was kinda lame, so she vowed to study up. The concubine kept apologizing, saying she wasn't trying to be a know-it-all, which actually made Lars chuckle a little. Wanting to change the subject, Lars decided to pump Sasha for info on the other concubines. Turns out, they're all basically the Empire's political connections to other countries. Most of them were gunning for the Empress title, but the Emperor wasn't feeling any of them. There were even cases where ladies straight up died trying to get with His Majesty using just their looks. He only cared about what a woman brought to the table. And before Lars came into the picture, Eliza was one of the closest to becoming Empress. But the favorite, the one with the best shot at the title, was the Emperor's sixth concubine. The sixth had the most pull out of all of them, and she was the one His Majesty considered the most talented lady. Maybe that's why she got a little more leeway than the other concubines. On top of that, the sixth was ruthless, taking out any woman who got even a little close to the Emperor. Our girl wasn't feeling how this woman was still lying low. Or maybe she's just watching how things play out. Maybe she noticed Eliza already made her move and decided to just sit back and watch. Besides that, Lars also wanted to get the dirt on the fourth consort herself. According to Sasha, Eliza's super jealous and hostile, not just toward our girl, but toward all the other consorts. She's been scheming to become the Emperor's wife. And honestly, her crew is even a step ahead of the sixths. All the consorts are at each other's throats anyway, but nobody even sees Sasha as a threat because she's too basic for their tastes. The girl hoped the Empress would watch her back because right now Eliza's got her eyes on her the most. But Lars didn't get why Sasha was even helping her out in the first place. Then the lady just replied that she's only a consort and wouldn't dare go against Her Majesty. And she was already super grateful just to be allowed to live in this palace. I mean, she wasn't even supposed to be in a place like this to begin with. So she saw it as a huge blessing. But hearing she wasn't even allowed to mention staying neutral, Lars froze. She shot up and was right next to the concubine in a flash, totally catching her off guard. Tilting her chin up, Lars realized this girl was seriously sharp. Hurrying to make it clear she wasn't gonna hurt her, our girl thanked her for the awesome info. Stunned by what just happened, Sasha looked at her mistress confused and automatically apologized. The thing was, Lars had just remembered her from her past life when she'd been crying over her messed up body. Crying and praying, the lady kept apologizing over and over for what everyone else did, believing that even with power, you can't just do stuff like that. Holding the bottle to our girl's lips, Sasha tried to give her some pain-killing wine. Lars whipped her arm around, smashing the bottle on the floor, wine spilling everywhere. She screamed at the girl, thinking that as the first princess of Berry, she couldn't take anything from an enemy, especially if it was poisoned. Apologizing, Sasha said she understood the poor girl's anger and that she wouldn't visit again. So now she just asked our girl to let her pray for her one last time. Folding her hands and closing her eyes, the concubine used healing magic, and Lars felt some real relief. Sasha said she shouldn't have been in this palace to begin with, and knew she had no right to be praying for the heroine. But still, she begged the prisoner to give her just 1 minute. She kept praying, and with each second, our girl felt the pain slowly fade away more and more. Also, even though she couldn't see, she could clearly hear Sasha's tears hitting the stone floor. After finishing her prayer, the girl stood up and bolted from the dungeon, never coming back again. Lars, realizing she'd messed up big time, dropped her head and started lapping up the wine, which turned out wasn't poisoned at all. Then it finally hit her. She understood who that one person was the one who actually showed her kindness and gave a damn. Even though Sasha didn't remember a thing herself, the heroine was hella grateful for everything she'd done. The concubine, even more shook by what she was hearing, noticed the Empress was suddenly acting brand new. Meanwhile, Lars decided that as soon as she handled everyone who pissed her off, she'd officially invite this lady for tea. Later on, the long-awaited Christmas party kicked off, hosted by the Duchess. Even before the Empress rolled up, all the guests were buzzing about the shocking news that her hair had suddenly turned golden. The fact that Princess Berry's got dark hair has been fueling a ton of gossip lately. I mean, the Berry royal family's been known for their insane magical abilities since way back. Besides, even though the Duchess is throwing tonight's party, all the concubines are going to be there, Her Majesty included. Everyone was dying to see what she'd look like. And when Lars finally made her entrance, everyone was blown away by her beauty. Her hair was for real golden, even though it had been black at the wedding just a minute ago. Nobody could believe it. Could this really be the Bat Princess? Hearing the guests hyping her up and saying she was worthy of being the Emperor's wife, Eliza and her crew were quietly fuming. Lady Annette was giving her a death stare, ready to snatch her golden hair out by the roots. Suddenly, she overheard her own friend accidentally gushing over Lars's hair. Not able to take it anymore, Eliza stormed over to the heroine, acting like they hadn't seen each other in ages. Meeting Lady Annette with a smile, Lars greeted her cheerfully. Lady Annette smirked, realizing she'd fallen for Her Majesty's trick again, expecting her to show up in public looking like a bat. She laid it on thick about how hard the Empress worked after meeting the concubines and praised her effort. The heroine was floored that someone as important as her was actually giving her a compliment. Since she wasn't the main event tonight, Lars decided to go light on the makeup for once. So she was actually grateful that this girl was digging her natural beauty. Eliza's other ladies-in-waiting and her whole crew were shook at how smoothly the Empress shut her down. Now Lars figured she'd bounce and go say hi to the princess. That's when Lady Annette's posse cooked up a slick plan to mess with Her Majesty. The second Lars turned her back on Eliza, the blonde chick stuck her foot out to trip her. Good thing Shinn was there, or she would have eaten floor. She caught herself on his arms and shot a death glare at those ladies. She realized those were the same chicks from the tea party, the ones always kissing up to the fourth concubine. She smirked, lucky to have caught exactly who stuck their foot out. Meanwhile, the Duchess rushed over, saying it was an honor to have the Empress at her party. Lars smiled back, thinking she should be the one thanking her for the invite. While they were chatting it up with the Duchess, Eliza and her crew were back to shooting death glares. After she talked with the Duchess, guests started lining up like crazy, all wanting a word with Her Majesty. Lady Annette and her posse were pissed that everyone was gassing Lars up with compliments just because of her hair color. They figured maybe they should splash some water in her face to knock her down a peg. Eliza, meanwhile, was chewing, her nails green with envy, trying to figure out how to get the spotlight back on her. Suddenly, Lars rolled up, happy to find all the ladies in one place. The concubine was curious what brought the Empress herself all the way over here. Giving a sweet smile, the heroine said she just wanted to chat a little. And another thing, she locked eyes with that blonde chick who tried to trip her. Catching the Empress's icy glare, the lady immediately tensed up and stared right back. Then the Empress slowly walked toward her, all eyes glued on her. A second later, Eliza's friend screamed in pain and terror, clutching her foot. Lady Annette was in total shock, completely rattled by what just went down. The other ladies turned pale with fear, scared to even look at the Empress. Lars clamped a hand over her mouth. She didn't want any loud screaming. The party wasn't over yet. Meanwhile, the heroine's heel was jammed right into the girl's foot, draining all the color from her face, ordering her to cut it out right now. Eliza couldn't believe what Her Majesty was doing. But the heroine decided to teach these scumbags a lesson, especially since they were acting like they didn't know anything about the trip. Lady Annette can keep collecting trash all she wants, but she's got zero chance of getting Emperor Zephon's attention. Hearing that it was because she's worthless sent Eliza into a complete rage. She grabbed a wine glass off the table and chucked it at the Empress, yelling at her to shut her damn mouth. Lars turned around at the shout and felt a shard of glass slice her cheek. The ladies immediately started trying to calm the concubine down, reminding her she can't talk to Her Majesty like that. But Eliza wasn't about to stop thinking. That bat princess ain't good enough for the Emperor. Just then, the main character spotted a table knife lying on the table right next to her. Seeing her grab it, her friends decided their mistress needed to get the hell out of there. They figured that woman was capable of anything, and Lady Annette should worry about her own safety first. Eliza smirked at the Empress, figuring she wouldn't have the guts to use the knife against Zephon's favorite. Ignoring her crazy rant, Lars calmly walked over and sliced the concubine's dress with the knife. Eliza just froze, watching her dress get ripped to shreds and exposing her body. All eyes in the room snapped to them, and Eliza's friends ran over to help her out, smirking the whole time. Our girl figured Lady Annette could only tell her own reflection to shut its damn mouth now. Eliza was in total shock, unable to believe the Empress just did that to her. Of course, the Emperor wasn't going to defend his wife or the concubine, but could Eliza even defend herself? Lars's mind flashed back to when this chick and her crew were messing with her in prison. Back then, she was on the floor, totally helpless to say or do anything to protect herself. But now the shoe was on the other foot, and our girl was happy to give Eliza a taste of her own medicine. Pointing a finger at the concubine, Lars joined the rest of the guests in clowning on her. Everyone was disgusted by the lady's trashy behavior. She'd really hit rock bottom, thinking the Empress was totally in the right. They couldn't figure out why this chick was acting like she was all that. Lars figured she'd been through way too much crap to let some side chick break her. Eliza could barely stand, and her friends rushed to her side, helping her get out of there, pale with humiliation. The lady looked at the Empress like she was a dead woman walking with tears welling up in her eyes. Smiling back, the Empress thought she could come at her whenever she wanted. But Lady Annette would be the one to regret it in the end. Meanwhile, the sixth concubine, Camilla Krinsky, was just calmly sipping her wine on the sidelines, watching the whole thing go down. Smirking, she decided the princess wasn't some scared little kitten after all, but a straight-up lioness. Just then, the quiet night outside was shattered by the sound of hooves and a carriage pulling up. A fancy ride stopped right at the entrance, totally throwing the guards for a loop. The carriage doors swung open and out stepped His Majesty the Emperor, looking all cool and proud. He'd heard his wife was going to show up at the banquet Duchess Jane was throwing. It made him wonder how the heroine would act in front of all the other side chicks. Remembering how she was at that dinner they had, he figured it was worth seeing, and decided to check it out himself. Stepping into the banquet hall, he immediately got a vibe that something was seriously off. Even though the party was in full swing, everyone was just hanging around outside for some reason. Then he spotted Eliza looking super bummed out, wrapped in a cloak and surrounded by her crew. The guests were totally thrown for a loop by the Emperor's arrival. But Zeon just wanted to know what the hell went down here. Seeing him, Lady Annette's friends immediately rushed up, begging him to punish the villainess who gave them a dirty look. The hero was pissed they had the nerve to talk to him without permission. They apologized for being so rude right away. The girls freaked out and backed off. One of the Emperor's guys rushed over to the boss, wanting to fill him in on what went down. After hearing him out, Zeon was completely blown away by what the heroine did. Hearing the carriage pull away, His Majesty knew Eliza was heading home. Totally thrown for a loop, he could barely stop himself from grinning like a fool. He took off towards Lars, his head spinning with the idea that she ripped Lady Annette's dress as payback. It all clicked the moment she first showed off that golden hair. Grinning from ear to ear, he decided she was a total psycho. The hero had seen enough girls get blinded by the idea of becoming empress. They all chickened out and bailed at the first sign of trouble. He didn't need to step in because the concubines were doing a solid job of taking each other out, especially Camilla and Eliza. But this chick was a whole different animal, and you could tell just by looking at her. Now the Emperor was dying to see how she'd react to him just popping up. Meanwhile, Lars was keeping it cool, surrounded by a bunch of freaked-out guests. Stepping up to her, Zephon gave his wife a look like she was dirt, just waiting for her to make a move. Hearing footsteps, our girl played it smooth and turned his way, fixing her hair all graceful. But when she saw His Majesty standing right there, she totally lost her cool. She was completely caught off guard because she never expected to see him there. Giving his wife the death stare, the Emperor wanted to know what the hell she was pulling. Lars thought everything was going great, and all the guests were totally hyped she was there. So Zephon was quick to let her know he'd already heard about Eliza's dress getting shredded. Seeing an icy smirk on his wife's face, the hero decided to straight up ask if she was behind it. Grinning even wider, the heroine let out a laugh she couldn't help, which totally threw him for a loop. Looking all victorious, she was totally stoked that His Majesty was already in the loop. Staring at her like she was crazy, Zephon wondered if she was actually proud of herself. He also wanted to know where she got the nerve to lay a hand on the Emperor's side piece. Eliza is the daughter of the Count who runs 70% of the trade with the Kingdom of Yulain. Originally, that country was beefing with the Empire, because Yulain's hard-headed ruler wouldn't even entertain diplomatic talks. Doing business only with the Annette family was the only deal they were willing to make. If this whole mess screws up trade with the Count, their trade, connection with the ruler of the Yulain Kingdom is going to be toast too. So the hero was hoping that Lars would finally get a clue about how messed up this situation really was. After saying she was sorry, she didn't get why they had to kiss up to Lady Annette now that she had the king. Just then, Princess Jane and her maid rushed over to help the Empress carrying a first aid kit. The cut on her cheek was still bleeding, and they wanted to at least give her some first aid. Pissed off by his wife's words, Zephon stormed over and smacked the princess's servant's hands. The first aid kit immediately slipped from his hands and crashed to the floor, scattering everything. Totally thrown, the Emperor was shocked by her nerve. He couldn't get it. Was Lars seriously just asking to be punished? How could she say something like that when she hadn't even proven herself yet? But then she cracked a smile that made Zeon instantly shut up and just stare at her confused. She gave him a wink, figuring the guy would see what was up soon enough. Then she brought her palm to her wound and ran her thumb across it to collect the blood. After that, she walked over to the Emperor and touched his lips with her bloody finger, telling him he needed to chill. In that moment, you could say Zephon's whole world got flipped upside down, and he was totally shook. Later, sitting in front of a mirror, Lars carefully checked out the clear skin on her face where the cut had been. The healing magic the Emperor's servant used on her was seriously top-notch. Now she knew for a fact that this country's rep for healing magic was the real deal. While she was checking herself out, Shinn stood nearby, polishing the tea set and just staring at her. He'd known this woman pretty much since they were kids, and after being her servant here for the last few months, he just couldn't figure her out. The butler often thought back to when someone straight up dumped paint on his mistress's head. Even then, she didn't even flinch, stayed totally cool, and actually flipped the whole situation to her advantage. And even after what went down with the Emperor, who usually makes people tremble just by looking at them, she held her ground cool as a cucumber. Suddenly, Lars noticed Shinn staring right at her, thinking he might have gotten hit by shrapnel too. She was about to order him to get healed up immediately, but the butler insisted he was fine and could handle a few scrapes himself. Hearing that, she gave him a thoughtful look, remembering something important. Speaking of wounds, it instantly made her think of that toy she brought with her. That teddy bear Nicole, hated and always used it to tear up, was looking pretty rough these days. Shinn figured he should just toss it, but she immediately ordered him to fix the toy. He got right to sewing. And right then she wondered what Eliza was up to now. After everything that went down at the party, the butler realized she wasn't really doing anything special anymore. Not even her daily tea time, which had just stopped completely. Lars sighed, bored out of her mind. Realizing she hadn't even tried, she just didn't care. Figuring out how to deal with the Emperor was way more important right now, who was seriously pissed at her. As much as she wanted to mess with the other concubines, she was stoked that she'd already managed to really get inside Eliza's head. But for now, it was smarter to lay low for a bit, just chill and do nothing. One of the weapons Lars had in her arsenal now was her memories from her past life, specifically from the last 10 years. Even if she was being used, she was still the first princess of the Berry Kingdom and knew what was going on across the continent, even though she was later completely cut off from the real world, stuck in the Shariat dungeon. But after she got home and was locked up again, Shinn filled her in on everything. She knew damn well that she was only alive right now because of him. Hearing his name mumbled under her breath, the butler gave her a confused look. He figured he should probably fix all the other toys besides the teddy bear, and she immediately agreed. The heroine decided she had enough intel on the future of the Shariat Empire. Neighboring countries were scared of it, and it was always the hottest topic of gossip, especially the current Emperor Zephon, who had a rep for being a total savage. The main reason he was juggling so many concubines was because the Empire needed to smooth things over with other nations. Tensions between Shariat and Yulain, where Eliza was from, were already high before Zeon's dad became emperor. Maybe one of the old Shariat rulers had been messing with the kingdom of Yulain too. Picking up the toy king, the heroine remembered that Zephon was the one who reached out to Yulain. Suddenly, a vision of what was going to happen to that country's king flashed in her mind. A brilliant idea was slowly forming in her head, and a smile spread across her face. She remembered that soon enough, everyone would be freaking out over the sudden death of King Yulain. By using this, she could build way stronger diplomatic ties than the ones they had because of Eliza. She ordered Shinn once he was done fixing the toys to put in a request to leave the palace. Agreeing with her, the butler stared intently at her, never stopping his work on the teddy bear. The heroine was glowing like her dream had just come true, her eyes filled with determination and confidence. Looking at her, the butler couldn't help but crack a satisfied smile. Meanwhile, the Emperor's men hurried after him down the hall, bringing news about a crash in the Kenzel Kingdom. On top of that, the Annette family was still on their case about the 6th concubine. As for ports where they could dock if supplies ran low, the Emperor decided to keep searching until the very end. Seeing the confused looks on his men's faces, the Emperor barked at them to just do it. Now after that, he went into his office, hung his cloak up and plopped down at his desk. Lately, no matter what he was doing, Lars's face kept popping into his head. Ever since that last banquet, he could still taste her blood on his lips, sending a chill down his spine. Rubbing a hand over his lip, Zephon couldn't help but let out a laugh, totally floored. A little later, His Majesty got a request from his wife asking to leave the palace, and he called for her right away. She walked into his office, greeted the Emperor, and then he just stared at her for a few seconds without a word. Honestly, the heroine never even thought he'd actually agree to see her. The request said she was heading to the kingdom of Yulain, which really threw Zeon for a loop, knowing that was Eliza's homeland. The same Eliza that Lars had beef with not too long ago. What was he supposed to think? The only thing that hit him was that there was no way this was just a coincidence. Smiling back at his intense stare, the girl was hoping to at least get some kind of response. That's when Zeon decided her crazy calm face was seriously ticking him off. Lars made it clear she was only planning on being there for 2 days tops, then heading straight back after she wrapped things up. So if she'd bugged His Majesty with this, the Empress was ready to say she was sorry. When she heard he was also planning on going with her, the heroine was totally shook, asking to make sure she found out the Emperor had decided to personally take her on this trip. Unless, of course, there was some reason his wife didn't want to travel with him. Deciding there wasn't, Lars was actually pretty hyped about it. That's when His Majesty's staff rushed in to remind him his whole day was already booked solid. He shot him a death glare, making it clear he makes his own damn schedule. His look scared the hell out of the servants, who immediately backed off and apologized. Later, as she was leaving his office, she wondered, is he for real going with me? What's with the sudden change of heart? Is the Emperor pulling something? Does he want to go himself? Whatever the reason, this news is seriously awesome. 'Cause of this trip, they can get closer and maybe fix their relationship. The news that the Emperor and Empress were going to be staying outside the palace spread like wildfire through the servants and concubines. Eliza was totally livid that Zephon decided to tag along with that little snake. Sasha was also floored that the Ice Cube decided to go on a damn honeymoon with his wife. Camilla, seething with silent rage, knew the Emperor had never even gone anywhere with the concubines before. Does His Majesty really have the hots for Empress Lars? Nobody gets it. Before long, the hero and his wife rolled up to the kingdom of Yulain and checked into some inn on the outskirts of town. The servants following them were practically falling over themselves to show him to their bedroom. When she found out, Zeon booked them just one room with a huge king-size bed. The girl was completely thrown off. Just to be sure, she had to ask if this was the Emperor's suite and not like their room together. While helping His Majesty with his cloak, the servant rushed to tell her it was definitely the suite for a married couple. Realizing she was about to be stuck in the same room as the Emperor, Lars was just straight up shook. Leaning back in his chair, the hero was like, "What's the deal? Is the wifey not happy or something?" Forcing a smile, the heroine thought, "For real, how could I possibly be unhappy about this?" So just like that, they ended up alone together in one room, and the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Feeling hella awkward, the girl couldn't figure out how things ended up like this. Not only were they stuck sharing a room, which was totally not what she expected, but they were eating dinner together too. And to top it all off, that massive bed in their room was basically screaming that tonight was going to be different. Just the thought of it made Lars blush and look away instantly, totally flustered. And was kind of thrown, like why was his wife suddenly so pressed about the time? He just laughed, because even she had no clue what flipped that switch. Aight, so now the Emperor was dead. Sure, this trip was more than it looked. At first he figured Lars was trying to pull some kind of hustle, but that theory was out the window. It was obvious she was scheming, so he had his crew shake down the hotel staff like right now. But they came up with zilch. Not a single soul from the Berry Kingdom was on the books. While they ate, Shinn just stood posted up behind his boss, waiting for the word. His Majesty couldn't help but notice she was always rolling with this dude. That's 'cause the butler was the only one who'd been down with her from day one. Zephon was bugging that his wife dragged this guy all the way from back home. Lars just smirked, wondering if the Emperor was getting salty over her right-hand man, slamming his glass on the table. Zeon decided his wife had to be wasted. Smiling right back, she knew that was a hard no. After they grubbed, the main man and his lady bounced back to their shared suite with the crew. Lars peeped the clock on the wall and knew it was go time. She immediately told Shinn to get the ride ready stat, which left the Emperor totally lost. He needed to know what the play was. And she told him she had a little side hustle to handle. Wishing the king a good night, Lars said she'd be back for him soon. But out of nowhere, before she could even dip, he snatched her hand and slammed her against the wall. With a slick smile, he remembered they hadn't even had their first night together yet. And right after that, he started slowly working on his jacket buttons, giving his wife a hard look. He figured a husband and wife are supposed to get down at night, and that's exactly what was about to happen. Lars was shook, just staring at him blankly, totally bugging out. Back in her last life around this time, the Emperor would have been chained to his desk, drowning in paperwork. All of a sudden, he'd hear his security hollering down the hall, trying to block somebody making a beeline for him. The doors would fly open and it'd be Empress Nicole, hyped that Zeon was still awake. Without even glancing up from his work, he told his boys to drag that woman out of there, but she stood her ground, swearing she had some major tea to spill. First up, she said sorry for flaking on their dinner. The real deal was some heavy stuff went down, and she was a total mess. But no matter how pathetic she looked, fishing for his attention, his eyes were straight up glued to those damn papers. Figuring this was her Hail Mary, Nicole wondered what Zephon's next move would be. Even after all the crap Eliza put her through, she was still ride or die for the Emperor, 'cause he was her husband and all that. But he straight up ghosted her words, didn't even flinch. Totally pissed, the girl decided it was time to go all in. She wanted her man to finally see her as his asterisk woman that night. Saying she felt a little weird, she started ripping her clothes off, making the help go wild. Down to just her nightie. She decided Zephon was a straight-up dog for making her fly solo on their wedding night. The hero stood up and came over reaching for her, and for a second Nicole was actually feeling it. But he totally flipped the script, snatched her by the hair, and was like, "Is this asterisk the big news you came to drop?" Looking down on her, the Emperor decided next time she rolled up uninvited she was gonna get checked. After he tossed her out, he figured she was just trash who only knew how to beg. He wanted that broke gold digger to do the walk of shame back to her room just like that. Lars straight up froze when she heard him say, a husband and wife should get down at night. She was thinking, what's this dude's deal? Why is the king who's never given me the time of day suddenly on this vibe? Glancing back at the clock, she saw how late it was getting. So Lars figured, yeah, I mean it'd be an honor to kick it with him for the night. But my whole agenda would be shot. Zephon just couldn't compute. Was she for real tripping about the time, and bringing up a schedule at a time like this was just wild. Running his hand through her hair, he had to ask, is your daily planner really more important than your man? The heroine knew damn well that trying to pencil him in later would be a total nightmare. The Emperor figured if she could just win him over now, maybe she could chill on constantly trying to prove herself, then he wouldn't even care if she was capping about her claims about the White Meridian attack. Besides, after a night like that, they might just lock down an heir to the throne. That would totally cement Lars's spot as Empress for good. Mulling over his words, the girl ran her hand across His Majesty's cheek. It made her flash back to when they met in her past life back when she was Chariot's prisoner. Back then, the hero thought he could even make her his side piece. Seeing she was going down too, he reached out to pull her up. If Lars had been with it, he was ready to put her on and help her get anything she wanted. But she was not having it, seeing herself as a princess of the Berry Kingdom and refusing to sell out her home turf. Now, though, she's definitely wondered more than once what could have been. What would have gone down if she'd hit that dude up from the jump? That prison was straight up hell where she got put through some gnarly stuff like endless messed up torture. She wondered if she'd never known all that pain. Could she have at least stretched out her time a bit longer? Would she still be this tough? Or would she have just caved and been a total pushover either way? Lars was dead set on never ever going back to being that clueless girl again. So now, locking eyes with the Emperor, she was down to give him a kid. Their kid was gonna be a total beast with magic for sure, getting the skills from both of them. But Homegirl knew she was the main prize, way more important than his whole checklist. With that, she snatched Zephon by the collar and yanked him in close, which totally blindsided him. Then she just bounced up, fixed her hair, and was like, my bad. Dipping out to the door, she left the Emperor just laying there on the bed by himself. Dude just watched her leave, not saying a thing, looking kinda bummed. Lars threw on her coat, hoping His Highness could actually catch some solid Z's. She figured that long-ass trip must have wrecked him. She also made a mental note that she'd be the one starting things when she was feeling it. Then she was out, shutting the door and leaving the guy solo. Ruffling his damp hair, the Emperor finally let out the laugh he was holding in. What his wifey said about her being the bigger deal was just stuck on a loop in his brain. A bit later, the carriage with our girl was cruising safe and sound through the deep woods. Chillin' by the window, totally zoned out, Lars was running back everything that just went down. She could still see the Emperor's built frame looming over her. Man, it took everything she had not to just go for it. This was a whole different vibe from what she dealt with in her last life. The dude's touch was crazy soft, and his intense stare cut right through the iciest parts of her messed up soul. But still, even with all that, she knew she made the right call. Lars had zero regrets about her move and was sure she hadn't screwed up. Wondering what the Emperor was really after, she sparked a little flame in her palm. At the same time, the carriage was rolling up on the river, and Shinn was guiding the horses to the bridge. All of a sudden, he saw something blocking the way, slammed on the brakes, and went to his boss, tapping on her window. He hoped it was cool if they just chilled for a minute. He told her they were almost there, but a little problem just came out of nowhere. Turns out some thugs were sticking up another carriage right by the bridge. He said they were still in the clear, and Shinn needed to know what the Empress wanted to do. From inside that other carriage, you could hear some guy totally freaking out, yelling they could take his stuff, just don't off him. The butler was torn, like should he call the cops, or just lay low till the coast was clear. But to his shock, his boss just hopped out of the carriage without a word and started walking right into the mess. With a huge grin on her face, she was totally hyped for what was about to go down. Meanwhile, the bandits had already busted the carriage door open, and one of them jumped inside. He lifted his sword about to end the two people inside who were begging for their lives. But then he heard some weird sound outside and, completely confused, he whipped around to see what was good. Next thing you know, he's lit up like a tiki torch and his crazy screams are bouncing all over the forest, totally bugging out. The robbers had no idea what the hell just happened. Then they started dropping one by one and a full-on panic broke out. Then out of nowhere, they see this chick just covered in fire. Figuring out she was the fire mage, one of the goons ducked behind her and pointed his bow at the guy. He let an arrow fly, but she just dodged it like it was nothing, which completely messed with his head. A hot second later, that same dude went up in flames, fried to a crisp. The bad guys were totally shook by this new player, but Lars was just thinking what a waste of her time this was. Compared to the war from her last life, this whole scene was kinda lame. Now she had all that battle know-how, but in a younger package. Right then she was wondering if her magic skills were still on the same level post-war. All she did was flick her finger, and a freaking wall of fire shot up around the carriage, blocking the goons. This level of power was straight up nuts compared to her first days on the battlefield. Homegirl could only throw down magic this hard like 2 months before the war wrapped up. Shinn was just standing there the whole time, totally mind-blown by his boss's skills. After she took out all the bandits, Lars strolled up to the busted-up carriage. This whole mess was supposed to be some huge tragedy that everyone would be gossiping about. In her past life, the attack was timed for when the carriage took off, and the robbers got caught right after. There was someone in that ride she was dying to meet, peeking inside. She was glad to see everything was Gucci and the couple was okay. Our girl played it off like she just heard some screaming while she was out for a stroll, and these two were feeling mad lucky, totally relieved. The dude was super grateful to the random chick who saved them. She smirked, pretending like she just realized who he was and was totally floored. For real was that King U-line right there in her face. The shady part, though, was the girl next to him wasn't his wife. Lars's grin got even bigger, thinking maybe she should just act like she didn't see a thing. The dude, he was frontin' hard denying everything, but she was like, nah, he just forgot me. The second he heard he was chatting with Barry's #1 princess, he clammed up real fast. She'd clocked him plenty of times at those sit-downs with her old man. But the king was buggin', couldn't believe he was peeping the chick everyone was talking trash about. Even though she was all classy with the manners, they still painted her as the villain, 'cause she was Barry's fall guy. He remembered that jet black hair, but now it was like he was staring at a whole different chick. Dude was trippin', had no clue what to do, but he knew for sure Lars had peeped the whole scene. Even if she was the one who saved their asses, the king knew taking her out right then and there was a no-go. He wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell against that kind of power. Unable to see a way out of this jam, the dude just hung his head, totally beat. She remembered from her past life that the king got jumped during some shady meetup and ended up getting offed with his side piece. When all that drama blew up, everyone found out he was two-timing the queen. Then it hit him she was Shariat's girl now, and he put 2 and 2 together that Lars had wifed up the Zeon Emperor. Grinning all cheerful, the girl was just thinking, what the hell am I gonna do now? 'Cause if the queen, who's totally sprung on this dude, finds out, all hell is gonna break loose. Catching a vibe that she might just maybe keep her mouth shut, the king and his side chick were straight up groveling at her feet. On top of that, he tried to remind her how tight Barry and Ula were. But tough luck for him, she repped Shariat now. And let's be real, Ulan and Shariat weren't exactly best buds, you feel me? So our girl figured, why not just cut a deal right here, right now? A little later, Emperor Zephan was chilling on his bed, going over some intel his crew brought him. Lars strolled in and was kinda shook to see His Majesty still wide awake. She was like, damn, has he been waiting up for me this whole time? He clapped back, asking if his wifey was just rolling in from some secret meetup. Smirking and shrugging off her coat, she was like, nah, just a little walk, that's it. The Emperor was even more shook that this walk was apparently a bigger deal than him. She was thinking, yeah, it probably was, and then whipped a document out of her pocket. Sliding the paper to His Majesty, she totally rocked his world. Grinning from ear to ear, she played it off like she just happened to bump into King Yulan, and they chopped it up for a bit. Even though they didn't get into all that international trade stuff, he did say he wanted to build a solid link with Shariel. And to prove it, she was ready to show him the king's own signature. After checking out the paper, Zephan had to admit, it was 100% King Yulan's handwriting. Apparently the dude wanted to host the emperor at his castle, and would be sending out invites soon. Completely floored, the hero couldn't figure out how the hell she even pulled that off. But Lars just hit him with that, like I said before, claiming it was all just one big happy accident. King Yulan had beef with them, and a couple months back, he decided to dead the whole trade deal. Lars was hoping Zephan remembered her promise about that first hug, the one she made right before she bounced, leaning right over the emperor's body. She was feeling extra good right now, so as a reward for his service, she wanted to cash in on that first kiss from him. But before all that, earlier in the day, he'd ordered his crew to tail his wife the second she stepped out of the hotel. His Majesty wanted his people to find out exactly what she was getting into. If she was spilling any intel on them, they were to snatch up everyone involved and drag them back here, no questions asked. And in that case, Zephan himself would be the one to put them down for good. But according to the report that landed in his lap, he found out our girl was meeting up with King Ulaine. Turns out the carriage the king was in got hit in a vicious ambush. But the real mind-blower was the insane level of magical power she threw down during the whole thing. And to top it all off, she basically threatened the king into signing some document. It was like she knew beforehand that he was gonna get jumped. Thinking she might be some kind of witch, the emperor ripped his shirt off, got on top of her, and they just melted into a heavy kiss. The next day, our girl was back in her room brushing her hair. Dude didn't get any chiller or anything, and the whole carriage ride was dead silent. I mean, he's got 6 side pieces, so maybe he was just trying to see what I was about. Peeping her reflection, she was like, if that's the play, it's a step up, I guess. But if that ain't it, That night flashes back and there's only one other way this could go. And that thought alone had her breaking out in a cold sweat. Just him clocking her shaky hands was enough to send Lars spiraling. But the Emperor didn't say jack about it. So what was the deal with that timing? While the Empress was zoned out, Shinn was right there looking all worried. Then boom, her mind jumps back to her old life when a crew of dudes were putting her through hell. No way she had a flashback to that while getting down with His Majesty, right? She just dropped into her chair sighing hard like, yeah, that's gotta be it. Peeking at the butler, she wondered if he'd ever even done a braid. The dude just bowed and was like, my bad, nah. Lars was like, whatever. She'd already flexed her skills by locking down that deal with King Yulan. She basically twisted his arm into a partnership between their nations. Plus, the king was all like, I'll slide you and the Emperor an invite to my crib. She was seriously praying it was legit though, cause then they could roll solo, no backup needed. Right then, some noise and a carriage rolling up from outside caught her ear. She turned to her maid like, yo, what's all that racket? Turns out they just dropped the news that the fourth side chick, Eliza, was getting bounced back to the kingdom of Ula this morning. A couple of dudes were hauling her to a carriage while homegirl was throwing a major fit, not getting the memo. Our girl decided these clowns were unforgivable. Her crew was just standing there shook watching their boss get manhandled toward the ride. Eliza was straight up livid. Like, who gave them the right to kick one of the Emperor's girls to the curb? Then some servant piped up saying it was the big man's orders. When she heard that, the lady just froze, staring at him like he'd grown a second head. Word was, the Emperor said he was done with Lady Annette, which totally blew her mind. She went white as a ghost from the shock, and decided it was all cap that he would never say something like that. Like, for real, they think they can do business with the Yulin Kingdom. Without her family's hookup, Eliza was 100% sure she was his main squeeze. Like, who could even compete? The chick started screaming to be taken to Zephon, and finally the servants, totally over her drama, just grabbed her and hauled her back to the carriage. Peeping from the window, Lars watched the whole scene go down, listening to the girl's whack breakdown, and shot her a sweet little bye-bye smile. Our girl was so glad to have crossed paths with the ex-side piece. Meanwhile, the Emperor was posted up in his office, same old, grinding on work. He was also chewing on this report he got about her for sure link up with the King of Yulain. Looks like the Empress had the inside scoop that the carriage was about to get jumped. And get this, his wife managed to smoke a whole crew of bandits with some gnarly magic. Right when they were inking the deal, she was just laying into the king with threats. No way you spin that it was totally not random. It was more like she knew the king was gonna roll through with his side piece. Right now the play is to find out if those bandits were already on the wanted list before this whole mess popped off. You got rumors about the king, a rescue op threats, and a peace treaty between two whole nations. Plus, this whole situation is messing with our diplomatic and trade game with the Shariat Empire. Thinking about how King Yulain is supposed to send that invite, Zephon just busted out laughing. If that invite actually drops, he's gonna show up with his wife faking that perfect happy couple vibe. He knew one way or another our girl was not gonna be feeling it. The dude's mind replayed that moment she touched his lips with her blood-soaked finger. Right after he remembered how sweet her lips tasted and all the soft touches from that night. The Emperor suddenly got this wild jolt like a straight shot of adrenaline to the dome. Every thought of Lars hit him right in the chest, making his blood pressure go through the roof. Clutching his chest, Zephon was bugging, barely breathing, his mind all twisted up by what was happening. Soon enough, Camilla, the sixth side piece, also got the tea that Lady Eliza finally got declawed. Later, another mystery box showed up, and Lars was hella confused. But at the same time, she had to give props, whoever was sending this stuff was really committed. Meanwhile, the servants peeping the contents and looking sick were freaked that this was the third time. Eliza bounced from the palace 3 days ago, and since then someone's been dropping off a stiff cat for the Empress every morning. No return address on the box, but inside was always the same messed up surprise. Nobody knew who the psycho was, which just made all the servants even more sketched out. The maids came up to their boss asking what she wanted to do with the package. She just calmly sipped her tea and said to handle this one just like the others. With a smile, she threw out the idea of maybe cooking it up, even though she wasn't really into eating felines. Seeing Shinn's face, Lars was quick to be like, chill, I'm just playing. Meanwhile, her crew was shook by how unbothered she was. The maids were thinking they'd be locked in their rooms if that was them. Real talk, our girl got used to seeing stiffs, people, and animals in her past life, but she would never stoop to using cats for some twisted game. Back in the day, just the sight of blood would have had her shook. But things are different now. War in any form really jacks you up. And the stuff Lars saw out there seriously messed with her head. Then in Shariat prison, she was basically swimming in dead rats. When she finally made it back home, people weren't just throwing rotten food. They were launching dead birds and animals at her too. For real, she'd been through so much garbage already. None of this could even faze her anymore. Instead, she started connecting the dots and figured the Emperor's side pieces were probably behind this shady move. The gossip that she and the Emperor spent the night out of the palace was already making the rounds. Plus, the word on the street was that His Majesty gave Eliza the boot because he listened to her. Lars was positive that once she unmasked who was sending her these gifts, the next play was going to be crystal clear. Anyway, breakfast was served and the whole spread was laid out. Deciding to just vibe and see how things played out, she grabbed her fork and dug in. She took one bite of that fruit, immediately spit it into a napkin and was like, "Get me everyone from the kitchen now." And all the other servants too. Before you know it, the whole kitchen crew, the maids and the head honcho maid, were all lined up in front of the Empress. Lars was just chilling, flashing this big friendly smile, acting all stoked they could make it. Pointing at the salad, she told all the servants they had to give it a taste. Shinn got busy dishing it out to everybody while our girl told them to really get a feel for the flavor. The cooks jumped right in and popped a piece in their mouths, but the head maid was just staring at her plate, looking all kinds of shady. Lars, already knowing the deal, ordered everyone to stop and not swallow a thing. For real, she told them to spit out whatever was in their mouths like ASAP. All of a sudden, the cooks and servants get this nasty taste on their tongues and start bugging out, realizing it was poison. The Empress knew they needed to wash their mouths out with water to kill that taste. Walking up to the head maid, who was still rocking that bald look, she was probably wondering, is this for real? Knowing that when you make a move, you gotta own it, the girl called her over with a totally clear conscience. But for real, if this chick tried to take her out, what other option did the Empress have? Frozen stiff with fear, the head maid knew she'd messed up bad, the kind of mistake that gets you a one-way ticket. But it wasn't even her idea. She was just doing what she was told. At the same time, the woman couldn't figure out how the Empress knew everything, especially since she was told that stuff was the real deal, no antidote. She figured if the main character went out like that, it'd be the ultimate payback. Meanwhile, Lars grabbed the plate of leftover salad from the butler, kinda tripped out by how much was still there. She strolled over to the head maid, thinking it was a damn shame to let good food go to waste. Getting right up in the woman's grill, the main character started forcing the salad down her throat. Next thing you know, the servants were dragging the woman away, completely knocked out from her own medicine. Meanwhile, the Empress was just blown away that someone tried to get her with such cheap, trashy poison. She could have let it slide for sure, but there's gotta be a line for this kind of crap. Hearing Shinn say he could hook her up with some better poison, she just smirked and filed that little tidbit away for later. If this stuff wasn't lethal, then someone was just trying to send a message. But seeing how that woman went down, if Lars had kept eating the poisoned food, she'd be laid up in bed right now. Ever since she was a kid, her parents made her study poisons to build up a tolerance. Come to think of it, even that was for her brother and sister, so she could be their personal poison detector. Besides, she probably got hit with poison a ton of times back when she was on the run. The chances of dropping dead instantly from this specific junk are hella low, plus she recognized the taste right off the bat. So that means someone else besides Eliza among the consorts is tight with the head maid. Then it hit Lars like a bolt of lightning. The first time she put those maids in their place, they snitched that the sixth concubine was her homegirl. Right then it all clicked. The answer to who sent the dead cats and tried to off her was staring her right in the face. That same day, word got back to the Emperor that someone had tried to take out his wife. And get this, they also figured out the head maid was the one behind the whole scheme. The Empress spit the food out right away, and by the looks of it, she was basically fine. But the head maid, the one our girl personally served, was about to completely black out. Word on the street is Her Majesty herself was the one who sniffed out the poison and the person who did it. While all this was being reported, one of the servants in the Emperor's office was bugging out, seeing the guy just chuckle. After getting the full rundown, Zephon ordered them to sweat the head maid for info immediately, and then take her off the board. Hearing him also order, "A court doctor for the Empress," the servants just stared at His Majesty jaws on the floor as he glared back at them. The hero made it clear they better not make him say it twice. They jumped to it, apologizing on the spot and scrambling to follow his orders. Later, after the checkup, the doc said everything was cool. But he told my lady she should chug more water just in case and try not to stress or worry. For 3 days, our girl was genuinely surprised the Emperor sent a doctor for her. She had a crazy high tolerance for poisons, so a doctor's visit was totally unnecessary. Even in the slammer, she never kicked the bucket from the poisons they fed her almost every single day. Thinking it over, this was probably the sixth concubine's move too, and she felt kinda bad for ever thinking Sasha was involved. Finishing the exam, the doctor also decided to hit her with some calming magic to help her chill out. Feeling the real power of that magic, the Empress was genuinely grateful to him for it. But the doctor was like, "Nah, you don't gotta thank me. Keeping the Empress healthy was his job." Lars was pretty sure he was a magic user from the royal family. Seeing her as the Empire's MVP, he also believed she was the only one who could help the Emperor run the whole show. And from now on, he said even if she just gets the sniffles, she should feel free to hit him up. Just then, the cooks and servants shaking on the floor started apologizing, totally clueless about what to do next. They knew that in this mess, they were just as guilty as the head maid. They were going to be held responsible for not catching the woman lacing the food. Since they were the Emperor's crew, nobody would even bat an eye if he decided to just wipe out their entire family tree. Flashing him a grin, our girl was like, "My bad for even dragging you guys into this." Then she told him to hit her up, which left the servants looking completely lost. Shinn just strolled on by, dropping a sack of gold on each of them, while Lars remembered they'd also downed that sketchy drink. On top of that, she had the healer check every last one of them out, which just straight up fried their circuits. Peeps couldn't believe their luck gave her some real deal thanks and bounced. Homegirl did it because she had a gut feeling they weren't actually going to throw down with her. Good cop, bad cop. That's how they roll in Royal School 101. This whole scene would have played out different if Nicole was running the show, since she basically ghosted all her classes. Just vibing in her chair, the Empress cracked a smile listening to the whining from the servants who didn't get so lucky. A checkup by the royal doc was a big enough flex, but the amount of cash they scored was straight up bonkers for regular folks. At first they were all sketched out by the Empress and blew her off, only taking orders from the headmaid. Well, that chick is finally out of the picture. So she was done listening to that noise. The other servants heard the tea and were hella jealous, thinking they should have downed some of that special juice too. If they roll with the Empress, how many more come-ups like this? Are they gonna score? Probably gonna keep coming till she gets bored of them. Hearing they for sure didn't want to be on her bad side, Lars let out a smug grin. On the flip side, consort Camilla number 6 on the list was getting prepped to throw a dinner party. She even slid an invite to the Empress, hoping she'd roll through. Later, after she got the note and peeped it, our girl was seriously trippin'. She turned to the butler with a smile, remembering he was a straight-up wizard with a needle and thread. With how things were going down, she needed to tap into his skills. A bit later, Lars pulled up to the 6th concubine's crib, and Camilla's crew was there to greet her at the door. They all lined up and gave her the whole royal welcome. A few minutes passed, and our girl was posted up at the table waiting for the hostess to show. Real talk, she never thought Camilla would be the one to hit her up first. Still, she was feeling it. The concubine saved her a whole lot of hassle. Pretty soon, the main event showed up, throwing Lars some serious side-eye. Our girl just watched on mute as the lady strolled to the table and plopped down. Camilla was actually stoked that the Empress had RSVP'd yes. She just wanted to give her a proper what's up at least once. Plus her guest could chow down because the concubine didn't lace the food with anything. Realizing that was basically a confession, our main character dead stared the girl. Then, still not saying a word, she coolly grabbed her fork and knife and started slicing up some grub. Turns out Lady Krasinski had already gotten the lowdown on the whole mess the headmaid started. She was thinking this world was jacked up, but Lars figured she lucked out that things went smooth. Feeling good about that. Camilla figured it'd be a bad look if the Empress just randomly bit the dust. Besides, everyone's throwing shade at Her Majesty because the Emperor is suddenly all about her. She kinda laughed, and remembered the concubine squad got smaller, so everybody's just bored AF now. But the whole palace knew our main character personally sent Lady Annette packin'. Lady Krinsky just couldn't figure out how the Empress played him. Like, what made the dude go along with it? But Lars herself had no clue what she was on about because she didn't have to pull any strings. That's when Camilla figured if someone was getting done dirty, she could help them handle their business. As the daughter of the Marquis of the Shariat Empire, she was mad connected with the high and mighty crowd. If the Empress ever needed someone to disappear, she could hit up Camilla, because all her enemies ended up ghosted. One of the slickest ways to clap back was to go after their family, or someone they cared about. Hearing that from Lady Krinsky, our main girl immediately caught the vibe, but that was way too basic. Lars was built different, hardened by war and all kinds of messed up stuff. And for real, she wouldn't even lose sleep over hurting her own fam. So right then, she made it crystal clear she'd cut ties with her family when she became a citizen of the Shariat Empire. Camilla just laughed, again, then got curious about the butler who was always shadowing Her Majesty. But our girl just figured he was a servant she brought along because he was a pro at what he did. With a sly grin, the lady wondered if he was so good because he was a looker, or because of his other assets. Lars just flashed a sweet smile back, thinking the concubine was just messing around, and decided her man was more than enough for her. Thrown by that comeback, Camilla's chill smile morphed into a nasty scowl for like a hot second, but she pulled it together real quick, and figured His Majesty was the type to get around with the concubines too. Still, he wasn't above sampling some exotic flavors now and then. Chewing on her words, Lars thought back to their trip to Ulin. She'd been guessing all along that what went down that night was one of the reasons the Emperor wanted to roll with her. Smiling, she thought it was weird he had a whole harem, but the dude didn't seem to be feeling any of them. Thinking maybe she had it wrong, she wanted to ask Camilla if Xeon crashed at her place much. Taking a sip of wine, she also wondered if maybe after her, the other concubines just hadn't gotten their turn yet. Her question hit a nerve, and Camilla flinched, remembering that she and the Emperor had never ever spent the night together. Every single night she's flying solo. Just posted up in bed, praying her dude would finally slide through. That's why Lady Krinsky was bugging out right then. She was all jittery. With this massive smirk, the girl goes, "So has it been a minute or has it been never? Peep this, if His Majesty ain't seen her as a woman, then this whole thing is a wrap. Plus Camilla's probably tripping about the clock ticking on her every year. She'll always be the Emperor's wifey, but a lady who can't be his main chick. The only thing she's got going for her is her age." Seeing the side chick's eyes all pissed and confused, the Empress said her bad for killing her vibe. She also remembered she'd brought a little something as a thanks for the dinner invite. When Shinn rolled in with the same box from that whole dead cat drop-off, homegirl was straight up shook. She was like, for real? Did Her Highness really roll up with that asterisk as a present? Not even peeping the vibe from this chick, our girl just needed her to pop open the damn box already. Scared to even picture what was inside, Camilla cautiously popped the lid. In it was a stuffed rat, stitched up all meticulous by the Empress's own butler. Our girl hoped she'd dig it, but the lady was just clueless. Like, what the hell is this supposed to be? Then Lars recalled someone had been sending her gifts lately, hinting she was tied up with some cat drama. So she figured why not slide Lady Camilla a doll that was her spitting image. Picturing some savage cat just wrecking a poor little mouse, the lady straight up snapped. Later on, before the Empress bounced to her ride, the side piece came out to see her off holding a bottle of wine. She was dead-ass grateful Her Majesty had blessed the spot with her presence today. But Lars thought she should be the one feeling thankful for the dope dinner. To show she appreciated the gift, Camilla decided to whip something up too. While her help uncorked the wine, the lady was quick to say she didn't lace it with anything. As proof, she was the first one to down a glass of the tasty drink. Keeping a close eye on our main character, the side chick hoped this would chill her out. Wanting to keep helping His Majesty run the show, she offered the Empress a glass and poured the wine for her personally. Right after that, she straight up flipped the bottle and dumped the whole thing right on our girl's head. Deciding the booze was too bougé for her, Camilla was like, Lars should be thankful it wasn't the red stuff, just wine. Finally, she cracked a smile and for real wished Her Majesty a solid night. Instantly snatching her hand, our main character decided that since she took a glass from her, then she better take one back. Without even trying, Lars yeeted the chick with one arm straight into the fountain next to them. Water went flying as the freaked-out servant scrambled to pull the lady out. Unlike the side piece, the Empress decided to go all out, hooking her up with a whole fountain instead of just a glass of water. Smirking and messing with her own hair, our girl said Camilla now looked like some soaked rat queen. Not getting how this just happened, and feeling totally clowned, Lady Krinsky shot daggers at the Empress. Meanwhile, Emperor Zephon got a letter from King Jerome William Lannis of the Owen Kingdom. A hot minute later, he and his wife rolled out to visit the king's palace. Of course, our girl already knew the King of Ulan would send an invite, just like he said he would. It was all just a little performance for the crowd. Lars figured she'd already proved she had the juice with just that one move. Little did she know, Zephon would actually decide to let her tag along. Then again, it was kind of a no-brainer since she's the one who built the bridge between their two countries. But she couldn't get her head around why he specifically told Shinn he had to sit this one out. Whatevs. It's not like they needed to bring him anyway. Before long, the emperor and his wife hit up the Yulan Palace and got introduced to the top dogs of the country. The king was all smiles while his wife was giving off major Ice Queen hate vibes. First things first, the top man was thankful the heroes made the long trip. He was pretty shocked to bump into Empress Lars during his recent cruise through the city. Thanks to their chat, the king clued in that Shariat was a top-tier nation, and the current Emperor Zephon was a real one. He hoped the first thing they could do was dead all the beef from the past, and now their countries could for real build a solid connection to really level up both our nations' game. The ports and cities in Ulan are going to be wide open to chariot merchants. Lars had to respect how the man practiced his lines, thinking, good thing he's not a total fool. Plus, the emperor was also grateful to him for making such a smart move. After that, they shook on it to lock in the successful talks. After chopping it up with their highnesses, the heroes were cruising down the palace halls. Every few steps, they kept bumping into servants who were gossiping about the surprise visitors. Guess you can't just brush off years of bad history, huh? They had to feel some type of way, especially since their country's been always getting hit. And no matter what, the locals probably ain't feeling the king's move about Chariot. She's used to hearing all the chatter behind her back, but she wasn't sure how Zeon was handling it. People were saying the emperor and his wife were sketchy as hell and had the nerve to even show up in the Holy Palace. The local big shots thought His Majesty had lost his damn mind inviting these clowns over. Lars kind of felt where they were coming from, but right now these dudes really needed to check themselves. But what was wild was, Zephon was playing it super cool like nothing could get to him. Was he just that used to people running their mouths about him back in the Berry Kingdom? Emperor Shariel already had a trash reputation, mostly because he took out his own pops. The old emperor wasn't some saint either. Dude was a straight-up menace to the neighbors trying to run the whole continent. That's probably why everyone and their mama started calling the new emperor the Devil's Kid. These high and mighty nobles figured that in Cheryl, where the leadership was all magic and no muscle, the people were better off broke and hungry. She wasn't having any of that noise, so she stomped right up to them, and those aristocrats clammed up real quick. In her mind, those words they dropped were enough to get them a one-way ticket to the afterlife sooner rather than later. They immediately started backpedaling, saying sorry for being out of line and admitting their jokes went way too far. Some duke steps up trying to introduce himself to the VIPs, but Lars just gave him a look that could kill. She was thinking this dude was a total tool. In the next second, the duke just combusted into a ball of fire, freaking everyone out. The emperor just stared, completely shook, thinking back to how his other side pieces handled stuff like this. Eliza never checked anyone for talking smack. She just gave him a whole, oh, you poor thing routine. Camilla figured it was better to just straight up ignore what these nobodies were saying. Another chick got all weepy apologizing because she didn't know how to shut him down. And another one just played dumb, acting like she didn't hear a thing. But here was his girl about to straight up incinerate some dude for disrespecting his name. He figured he should probably jump in and say she didn't have to go that hard just to get on his good side. But Lars was like, nah, this is just what a ride-or-die wife does. She was fully prepared to own up to whatever went down. Zeon just needed to kick back and watch the fireworks. Besides, she was way too used to carrying the weight for all the heavy-hitting stuff. That was the only reason he'd felt bad for her and gave her a hand in his last life. I mean, for real, if she was actually trying to suck up to His Majesty, she would have just snatched the guy's tongue right out of his mouth. For like the millionth time, he was totally blown away by the stuff she said. The Duke and his crew were instantly on their knees, begging for their lives and confessing how messed up they were. They all had their heads bowed to the floor, pleading for a pass on all the trash they'd just talked. The Duke tried to play it off like he was just wasted, and didn't mean a word of it. So they all swore right then they'd never even think about dissing the new alliance between their two countries ever again. Watching all this, the Emperor just busted out laughing, which probably weirded everyone out even more. He ran a hand through his hair and decided he couldn't even be bothered to be pissed at them anymore. After that, he just turned and kept it moving with his wife hustling to keep up. The news that Shariat and Yulan were allies now spread like a damn virus across the continent. The king of Ula swore he'd clean house and deal with anyone who disrespected the guests. Everybody was shook that someone actually managed to make peace with that kingdom, without the Annette family pulling any strings. The palace maids were all over the Empress trying to get her anything she wanted. The main girl never thought those sacks of gold would make such big waves. When the dead cat stopped showing up on her doorstep, she thought a dead rat might be the perfect clapback. Shin took her dead serious, and was about to go hunt a few in the kitchen, but Lars told him to chill. The White Meridian is finally supposed to pull up next week. The Emperor is 100% gonna tell the heroine to be his escort, so we gotta get our whole game plan locked down now. Meanwhile, Camilla was absolutely losing her mind over what that woman was pulling. Storming around her room, she couldn't get why making nice with Elaine was such a big deal. During her trip over there, the Empress even went and injured their local duke. That's a huge no-no, and it's wild the Emperor didn't drop the hammer on her for it. If Zephon was the same dude he used to be, he never would have let her get involved in the talks. His Majesty would have just kicked her to the curb no matter how much of an asset she was. What really got under Camilla's skin was how this chick just kept getting a free pass for who knows what. Is the Emperor actually catching feelings for her? Not even his other girls could get him to stay the night, and she snagged his heart that damn easy. Camilla decided it was time to take her out, but since her target was the Empress, she couldn't afford to leave any evidence. As she flipped through Shinn's file, it hit her. Her Majesty's personal attendant was the sixth son of Viscount Pennyworth from the Kingdom of Berry. His family was broke, so they sold him off, and Shinn ended up at the palace. The guy's got crazy skills in a bunch of stuff, but he keeps to himself. 4 years back, he became the personal attendant for the first princess of Lars. There were whispers that they were a thing, but nothing was ever confirmed. Still, Camilla was suspicious, especially since this dude was imported all the way from another country. On top of that, Shinn was young and a total smoke show. Looking at his picture with a sly grin, the concubine thought to herself, looks like Her Majesty doesn't have enough strays to take care of. Later, our girl was just vibing in her room, sipping on some bomb tea. She brought Shinn along as a thank you for feeding her info, back in her past life. He must have thought she was crazy since they'd barely ever talked. Lars wasn't holding her breath, but the dude actually turned out to be a total sweetheart. Was low-key a beast in the kitchen and with a needle. Then out of nowhere, her maid busts in bugging out, needing to tell the Empress some real bad news. Word is Master Shinn got seriously messed up. Before, the staff kept their distance, thinking the dude was getting the VIP treatment. He always looked flawless, like he ain't have a single thing wrong with him. Shinn was always straight chillin'. Never even thought about cracking a smile. But for real, even when the Empress smiled at peeps, she wasn't that different. Everyone just used her and gave nothing back. The Empress was totally stuck and getting dragged from every direction just like him. Hearing on the way that someone jumped him, Lars slammed open the infirmary door. The docs were like, yo, maybe you shouldn't see this. But she wasn't having it. Sitting up in bed looking guilty AF, the dude greeted the Empress. His face was all jacked up with deep cuts from his ears to his mouth like somebody ripped his mouth open. Looking all sad, he just wanted to bounce and make some tea for his lady. The docs were bugging, telling him he needed to worry about himself right now. The healers hit the wound with magic, which usually fixes things right up, but the cut was so deep it's gonna leave a permanent mark. Even the royal doc couldn't do a thing about it, and he was super bummed about it. Still, Shinn came to mad quick thanks to the doc's skills. First off, Lars told Shinn to dead the whole tea thing. She also had to know what the hell went down and why he was so messed up. So a little while ago, he was bringing a tea tray to his boss. Then out of nowhere, Camilla calls his name from behind, rolling deep with 2 huge goons. She was like, yo, come here a sec, and fronted like the Empress sent for him. They dragged him outside, one dude held Shinn down while the other just started going to town on him. They dropped him, and standing over him, the concubine was like, damn, kinda feel bad for messing up that pretty face. So she decided to fix him up a little, hoping Her Majesty would get the message. After Shinn finished spilling, the room went dead silent. Peeping the Empress, the docs thought she was shook, couldn't even speak. He was her right-hand man straight from her home turf, so everybody knew she was feeling it. She gently grabbed Shinn's chin and was like, you're still fine as hell. Even with that scar, he was still a looker, the best one in the whole squad. Everyone there was even more thrown by what she just said. The Empress was just hoping he'd watch his own back from now on. He just smiled, still trying to make her that damn tea. Lars was like, what's the point, since Lady Camilla would just get it delivered to her own spot anyway. Later, some servant runs up in the Emperor's office needing to drop some urgent news. When Zephon heard that Empress was rolling up on the 6th consort's palace right now, he straight up froze. Meanwhile, Camilla's just vibing, sipping tea, replaying that whole beatdown in her head. She never even thought that servant would just take it, no fight at all. He was probably just spooked about hurting his boss. And the consort figured fair play. Still, Camilla was more salty that her whole vibe was getting wrecked just thinking about it. Even when they were jacking up Shinn's face, his expression was ice cold. Dude probably knew he was just the Empress's ride or die. The thought of Lars losing it was getting the concubine hyped. Then she heard a scream outside and looked at the door all confused. Next thing you know, it blows open in a blaze of fire and the Empress walks in like she owned the place. Seeing that Camilla and her crew just froze up. Looking like she was about to go off, Lars stared down the concubine. Camilla just casually brushed her hair back, thinking the Emperor wouldn't be cool with this kind of move. Now the Empress was gonna have a tough time explaining this one to him since she just torched the door and was still smirking about it. The concubine was like, "Aw, poor Empress and her little servant." She laughed, thinking that, 'cause his boss was so clueless he was now just a broken toy. Look, Zephon could have zapped that wound shut with his magic no sweat, but the Emperor's got a rep for not using his powers on anybody else. So when Camilla clocks Lars rolling up, she hits her with a smirk, flexin' that she's some kind of pure-blood big shot. Like if Lars even touched someone the big boss cared about, she'd get bounced from the palace in a hot minute. But Camilla's whole vibe went from cocky to straight up shook. The second our girl put a hand on her dome, a blink later the chick's head lit up like a tiki torch. Lars was dragging her by the hair, just blasting her with fire, making Lady Kruinski scream her lungs out. After she'd had her fun, Lars grabbed her jaw and started to straight up melt the skin off her face. Two of the goons who helped her mess with Shinn heard the screaming and ran in. The second she saw him, Lars remembered these were the same clowns who carved her up in the dungeon in her past life. She completely lost it, unleashing a wave of fire that fried him to a crisp on the spot. Meanwhile, Camilla was just covered in black soot, barely hanging on through all that crazy pain. Lars's mind flashed back to her old life, picturing the other women in that dungeon, talking trash, calling her busted. Now this helpless, messed up girl was just staring at her eyes filled with nothing but pain and terror. Crouching down and cracking a sweet smile, Lars was checking out someone. This jacked up for the very first time. After a beat, she decided Camilla was now even uglier than a sewer rat. Shaking like a leaf, the lady couldn't process what she was seeing and couldn't even spit out a word. Peeping the scene, Lars figured it was payback time. Just as she was about to light this chick up, she heard the big boss man, the Emperor, just rolled in. He clocked the side chick and the whole mess, probably wondering what the hell his Empress was even on. Lars just brushed her hair back with a smirk, not even breaking a sweat, figuring it was just a little hissy fit from his ride or die. Meanwhile, Camilla's over there whimpering, praying the Emperor would finally drop this new girl. Lars grabbed a handful of her hair, yanked her head back, grinning the whole time while she gave her a permanent fiery makeover. After she tossed the girl aside, she was like, "This broke nobody ain't even got the right to look at the king." Zephon was totally floored, then he just busted out laughing. Camilla saw him coming and started crawling his way, but Zeon just breezed right past that girl, making a beeline for his wife, who was smiling right at him. Lars was low-key, hoping she looked cute while being a total savage. He smirked back like, "Girl, you already know." Word about this whole thing blew up with the staff, and the Empress's street cred went sky high. Mad people started trying to get on her good side, even some royal crews she could totally use to get ahead, and she got a new head maid too, the one who took the last one's spot. After apologizing for the late intro, the maid said she was ready to handle business. With the Empress's right-hand man on the sidelines, she wanted to serve her lady for real, no shady stuff. Lars just smiled, totally vibing with her, and gave her the green light. Meanwhile, the third consort was bugging that Her Majesty actually went to bat for her servant. When Sasha heard the sixth consort's goons couldn't even touch Lars, she was blown away by her power. The word on the street was the Empress's personal servant got messed up pretty bad, and now he's all laid up inside. Sasha felt mad guilty for not giving Lars a better heads up about Camilla, so she decided to check on the dude slipping in quiet-like with a basket of flowers. The third consort kinda shyly said what's up to Shinn. His jaw was all bandaged up and he was like, "Sorry, I look a mess." But she felt like she should be the one saying sorry for not telling him how psycho Camilla was. Thinking back, Shinn knew he'd gotten plenty of warnings from the sixth consort. Plus, he'd just heard from the Empress herself that things went south for Lady Krinsky big time. The dude felt kinda bad that it was all his fault. Sasha was wondering what Shinn was gonna do now. I mean, he'd been through hell and was scarred for life. So you'd think he'd want to bounce right. But nah, Shinn was like, if they'll have me, I still want to work for the Empress. The third consort was floored by how ride or die he was. For his boss. Shinn knew that with a scar like this, he couldn't keep serving the royals, cause Lady Lars was gonna be an Empress on the same level as the king. Shinn figured if she thought he was holding her back, she'd cut him loose from his post, no question. Sasha wasn't buying it though, especially since the lady was cool with people like her. Besides, she had a rep now for being down for her people, and she even went to bat for him, so there's no way she'd ditch him over a scar. Mulling over what the third consort said, Shinn felt some mad respect for Lars. She used to be crazy busy just getting her footing back in the palace. As the first princess, she made it all happen on her own hustle. Dude wanted to stay by her side, so he looked down all bummed out. For a hot second, Sasha thought he was checking out his boss like more than just a boss. Shinn sighed, knowing he was forever in the servant zone. Right then, the door flew open and in walked the Empress. She'd hit up the garden first, hoping to catch the third concubine, so seeing her there with Shinn totally threw her. Sasha jumped up, all shook, and gave Her Majesty a proper greeting. She said she'd heard the gossip about Lord Shinn, and that's why she came to see what was up. Figuring she was crashing their party, she started to dip, but Lars told her to hang back. sitting down on the bed. Lars wanted the lowdown on his condition from the doc first. Turns out, thanks to the royal doc, Shinn was cleared to bounce from the palace tomorrow. The only bummer was the scar, which was a permanent souvenir. Smiling at her main dude, Lars said she hoped he could get back on the grind soon. Plus, she heard he could eat real food now, no problem. Figuring it was the perfect time to grub, Lars told him to take off the bandages. She pulled some food from the basket and started carefully feeding him. Sasha was totally cringing when she peeped that nasty scar on his face. Lars knew the Emperor's magic could wipe that thing clean, but he probably couldn't be bothered. Scar or not, she still thought the dude was a straight-up snack, though. Maybe because she's used to seeing dudes with battle scars all the time. Could be her taste in men is a little messed up because of it. Then all of a sudden, Sasha piped up. Yo, was the Empress planning on hitting up the festival in town tomorrow? It's this holiday for spring, basically a 3-day rager. Okay, so it ain't bougie enough for the royals to roll through, but it's a huge deal for the locals. Smiling to herself, she realized this would be her first time at something like this. Plus, if Shinn's back on the clock tomorrow, he could roll with her and keep her from being bored. This whole spring festival thing was kind of getting to her for some reason, then something clicked for Lars. Seeing her zoned out, the third concubine wasn't about to force it if she wasn't into it. Lars knew it was way safer for palace peeps to just stay put, but making a move now was the better play for the long run. Meanwhile, the Emperor just got an earful from the Krasinski fam about Camilla, the sixth concubine. They're teaming up with some other high and mighty types to drag the Empress for how she's been playing the lady. They're basically saying if Her Majesty doesn't face the music, these families are ready to dip out for good. It was super obvious the Krinsky clan was twisting everyone's arm. Zeon wasn't even breaking a sweat, though. They'd see how it all shakes out in 5 days. For now, prepping for the trip was numero uno. Thinking back on what Lars said about his sweet possessive wife, the Emperor got all warm and fuzzy inside. But then he heard that the beatdown on Camilla was just payback for messing with the Empress's right-hand man. Thinking about Shinn and how much our girl was riding for him, Zephon felt a little salty and thrown off. Over on the other side, King Barry was straight up tweaking because he still hadn't gotten a peep from our girl. The prince figured all her lines to the outside world were probably tapped. Plus, Lars's life could be so jacked up, she couldn't even sneak out a single note. Switching gears, Nicole decided to bug her folks about that dress she'd been fiending for. The king and queen needed the scoop on Emperor Shariat, but our girl was coming up empty as usual. The princess remembered hearing whispers about some concubine getting booted back home, and thought they could pull that on Lars. The only move with the heroine is to play her just like we did before. I mean, what other choice does she have? The prince was betting she was holed up in her room at that very moment, ugly crying her eyes out. Meanwhile, Lars was just vibing in her room, sipping on some fire tea Shinn whipped up. The other servants had seen Her Majesty's big heart before, but they were still shook that she'd bring on someone with a scar like that again. The festival's about to pop off? Time to get ready to show up and show out. When they heard Shinn was rolling to the festival too, the maids were just standing there, completely floored. Our girl knew his scar would be a magnet for drama. Deciding to get ahead of it, she wanted her guy to rock a scarf and cover his face. Just then, the Emperor was passing his servant the Empress's festival ticket. He was low-key bugging that she was bouncing on him again for that servant, especially since she went out of her way to bring him back. Fast forward, and our girl and her dude are right in the thick of a crazy-packed festival street. Lars was hyped the Emperor actually let her go for real, but she honestly didn't think he'd greenlight it. Right now, though, all she could focus on was copying some of those foreign sweets she spotted nearby. Some vendor at a stall totally clocked her and Shinn as a couple and tried to sell him something to get the sparks flying. With a little smirk, our girl was just glad her dude didn't look like some total weirdo at least. According to this dude, nothing gets you in the mood like a fire plate of shish kebab. When he found out Shinn was just her employee, the vendor was like, "My bad," and gave him one on the house. Then out of nowhere, Lars saw this little kid who was also jonesing for some meat, but his mom was yanking him away. It made her flash back to her past life watching Nicole and Eric hit the festival from her window. The main chick herself was always swamped with work. You know, stuff that didn't stop just 'cause it was a holiday. But that's all old news, and now she's gotta learn to live in the moment. Peeping the scene, she saw a bunch of fine girls everywhere carrying flowers. Turns out it's a spring festival thing where chicks buy flowers and give them to the guy they're feeling. Lars, totally stuffed on shish kebab, tried to pass the last skewer to Shinn, but he was trying to keep his scar on the low. So smooth as hell, she just handed the meat to one of the soldiers the Emperor had on her security detail. Now she had to figure out what to smash for dessert. I mean, this was the festival she'd been waiting for, so she had to go all out and grub on all the best food she could find. Inspired by what the Empress said, the soldiers were totally on board. She copped one of those cookies Sasha was hyping up, the kind that goes perfect with black tea. Apparently, back in her old life, she barely ever left the palace, never mind hitting up a festival. And for the first time, Lars was actually thankful for where she came from. All that built-up poison immunity meant she could eat and drink whatever she wanted, and she was taking full advantage, until she finally hit a food coma. Like, what else was there to even try? Then it clicked, something from her past life, something that was supposed to happen during this very spring festival. Plus, there had been a whole lot of dogs showing up lately. And something sketchy was going on at the pet shop, too. One of the dudes there tried to sell her on a guard dog. Said it'd be a ride or die protector. I can handle myself easy. But someone might try to run up on my personal attendant again. So she figured having a couple of those mean-mugging snout-nosed dogs watching his back at all times couldn't hurt. Besides, dogs made Lars think about the old days. Those little dudes were even clutch on the battlefield. All of a sudden, the dog seller's angry voice just erupted. Somebody had let the dogs out. Turns out it was two straight-up vicious fighting breeds growling and snapping at anyone who got close. The seller swore he'd locked their cages himself and even muzzled them. There was no way to get a handle on them. But popping them wasn't an option because these pooches were worth some serious bank. Our girl clocked that these gnarly mutts looked just like the hounds that had her back during the war in her past life. She put two and two together and realized they already knew commands. Word was they were supposed to be guard dogs for some rich folks, but the bougie crowd sent them back because they were too rowdy. And now, the military was about to scoop them up to haul gear. Lars was shook that these dogs were making such a scene. Picturing them caged up, she couldn't help but think about her own time locked in a dungeon. Feeling like she was on a roll, she just waltzed out to greet her fans. The king's crew tried to give her a heads up, but homegirl was like, I got this. When the sellers heard she was dropping double the cash for them, they were straight up stunned. After that, Lars rolled up on the jacked up hounds who immediately started getting loud and looking ready to throw down. She sparked up a little flame in her palm, all casual like, what's good, fellas? The second they saw that fire blowing up in her hand, the dogs went dead quiet. Lars knew the drill. She'd seen plenty of action and watched dogs just like these get schooled on the battlefield. Even with their tails tucked, the long-nosed pups held their ground, but you could tell. They were totally bugging. Flashing him a chill smile, Lars was basically telling him who was boss now. The floppy-eared goons kept growling, but were slowly backing up. Then out of nowhere, one of the dogs went for it trying to get a piece of her, but she just sidestepped it smooth as hell and cranked up the flame. She was just trying to vibe and say what's up. Seeing that fire just keep getting bigger, the dogs couldn't even front, they were terrified. She gave them the signal to sit, and you could see them slowly, reluctantly dropping their butts to the pavement. They finally caved. Heads down accepting their new pack leader. Lars snuffed the flame. She turned to the vendor, hoping he was cool with the sale. Once the deal was done, the long-nosed crew got muzzled and sent straight to the palace. The seller couldn't believe his eyes. He thought all the talk about her fire magic was just hype. Meanwhile, Lars went back to vibing at the festival with the crowd. Pretty soon she was racking her brain trying to figure out a gift for Sasha. Remembering how her girl loves chillin' in the garden? She was torn between getting her some sweets or some flowers. At the same time, some rando was hella pissed his dogs got shut down so fast. If they'd caused a bigger scene, he could have snuck in more of that boom-boom powder. But whatever it was, a wash now. The festival was packed, and the damage was going to be massive regardless. He went for his little party starter, and that's when Lars caught him in the act. She knew he was about to light up the back alleys, and she was like, nah, that's way too savage. Dude froze, lit match in hand, completely clueless how she found him out. Stomping out the match, our girl was thinking that was the least of his problems. See, in her past life, this whole mess was the massive tragedy that even hit the headlines in the Berry Kingdom. The blaze on Main Street during the Spring Festival parade was a nightmare, and everyone knew it was a planned hit. A whole lot of people got trapped in the flames. It was bad, real bad. The knight slammed the perp to the ground, and he just started screaming thinking our girl was rolling with that whack-ass emperor. He couldn't get how anyone could back a dude who'd make a woman like her the empress of the whole Shariat Empire. Like it wasn't bad enough he was collecting foreign women as his side pieces. Now he's gotta go and wife up someone from Berry too. Turns out this dude was a super patriot convinced that Camilla, a pure-blooded Shariel, was the only one who should be on the throne. Which was straight up dumb because the Empire always picked empresses from other spots. It wasn't even a big deal. The old emperor did the same thing, picking his wife based on her magic skills and if she was a dime. Totally losing it, the dude decided getting caught was just a sacrifice for his so-called revolution to take down the emperor. Sparking a flame in her own hand, Lars was like, you really want to mess with fire, bro? Seeing her magic and finally clocking who he was dealing with, the guy's rage just flipped to pure terror. Lars knew this whole stunt wouldn't do a damn thing. And if a fire did pop off, nobody would even hear his revolutionary BS. So she decided to give him the fire he wanted and blasted a stream right at the dude's face. After that, they dragged the shook maniac off to get patched up, and the Empress bounced back to her ride with her security detail. Everyone was breathing easy that they dodged a bullet, but they were also scratching their heads wondering why Her Highness was even creeping down that alley. After getting the rundown for the night, Zephon was tripping about the dogs and the whole planned attack. He was blown away that this woman had made waves again and handled all that drama. On top of that, he found out she had zero connection to the bomber, so it was a total mystery how she was even in the know. The perp's laid up in the hospital now with his face all torched, and once he's healed up, he's looking at some serious consequences. Besides the report, the guards also handed the Emperor a basket of flowers, a little something from his wife. Later on, when he was solo, he glanced out the window and caught a surprise glimpse of her with Shinn. Back in her own rooms with her attendant, the maids were already hyping her up for a solid day out. The pups got a little dirty, so they were stuck in the garden for the time being. And since these were straight-up savage battle-ready hounds, Lars figured she had to start training them ASAP. She hit up Shinn to drop one bouquet off for the Emperor and the other for Sasha. The Empress herself did a quick change after their stroll and bounced out to the garden to check on the pups just in case. The staff had whipped up some chow for them laced with something to make them chill. After giving them props, Lars was like, "Open the cage," which totally freaked everyone out. The second that gate swung open, the dogs crept out, eyes locked on their owner the whole time. Our girl was hella relieved they still knew who was the real boss. After giving him some head scratches, her game plan was to train these pups and then have him be Shinn's personal security detail. She was low-key, hoping Shinn was cool with it all. The dude just sighed, thinking these dogs were about to take his spot. She just laughed, cause that was a wild thought. Nah, she was just looking out for her main dude. But first things first, they needed some names for these guys. Shinn threw out Zusha and Pushia, but Lars wanted to vibe on it a little longer. Turns out both of the floppy-eared fellas were dudes, and Shinn got tight with him real quick. Still just to be on the safe side. Our girl sparked a little flame from her hand, then decided it was on him to take their muzzles off. Turns out he didn't even need the heat. The dogs were straight up looking at him with total ride-or-die eyes. A bit later, the big man himself summoned Lars and Shinn for a meeting. Our girl figured the Emperor just wanted the tea on what happened at the festival. But nah, Zeon hits her with an order to straight up drop the contract with her servant. He was down to cover the costs, or even hook Shinn up with a sweet gig so he could stick around the castle. The Emperor's angle was that he was protecting her spot as Empress. Lars was hoping he'd at least spill on why he was making this call. According to Zeon, though, Shinn's scar just wasn't the right look for the Empress's right-hand man. Even the ice-cold Emperor had a hard time looking at the guy. Her servant knew his boss could have completely fixed. That wound, no scar, no nothing. He figured she'd demand he get healed, but instead she straight up told the Emperor, no. Shinn was brought to her to be her asterisk dude. And the sixth consort was the one who did that to him. So why is he getting the heat for it? Like, if the Emperor got a scratch, wouldn't he just cover it up? So she slapped a dog muzzle on the guy, and was like, yeah, this'll work for now. It hid the scar perfectly and totally matched her bad girl vibe. And if this look wasn't good enough for the Empress's personal servant, Lars was ready to just call him her pet. I mean, she already got some pets for real. But Shinn had way more skills than them. Thinking this was all kinds of crazy, Zeon just lost it and started laughing his head off. He smiled at his wife thinking, is she always this much of a riot? She gracefully raised her hand and was like, nah, just for you, your majesty. Later when they saw Shinn's new fit, the other staff members were totally thrown. On one hand, it beat staring at the scar, but a muzzle was a weird flex. Lars knew that mask was meant for dogs, and the dude probably wasn't feeling it. That's why she got the go-ahead and ordered a custom one. He just had to chill for a minute. Shinn was mad grateful. Just thinking about how she had his back with the Emperor made him smile. So she named the dogs T and Sachi, and the Empress finally got down to business training him. The staff was tripping, so they called in a pro. But when he saw how she was killing it, he knew he wasn't needed. Figuring the dogs were sharp, Lars got real good at running them on the battlefield. It'd be dope to train them, to go off only when they spot certain concubines. But for now, she was way more hung up on that last meeting with the Emperor. Like, why was he so pressed about her personal servant anyway? It was giving jealousy, but she knew that was a hard no. The next day she got word the ship prep was all good. Chances are the info on their route hadn't gotten out either. So she probably just gave him the location. But by saying no to that, Lars wanted the ship moving on her command and her command only. That's why she told him to put in a request, for her to get on board and to slide it to the Emperor herself. For sure, the Shariat army probably wasn't going to lose, but they had zero solid intel on what kind of heat the enemy was packing. So, our girl decided to jump in herself to make sure they secured the W. It wasn't long before Zeon found out she wanted on the ship and was keeping the location info on lock. He was shook by this, and His Majesty couldn't figure out her play this time. Peeping out the window, he saw T bolting from his owner at top speed. Looked like training day kicked off in the next-door garden. The dog took off like a rocket after the stick Lars yeeted way too far, so the pup ended up dashing right into the zone under the Emperor's office window, which was a total no-go zone for him. After watching the whole scene play out, the Emperor decided that from now on, all training had to go down right under his window. The servant was bugging because before not even the crew could walk there just to keep the window view pristine. As he was about to pass the message to the Empress, he overheard the craziest thing: His Majesty was going to be on that warship too. Dipping from the office, our girl had no clue what was up with the Emperor's sudden change of heart. A little while later, the warship was all set to bounce, creeping on the White Meridian's tail. The Emperor was hyped, finally getting to see for himself if the Empress was keeping it real. Lars figured Zeon would just chill and wait for word from the docks, never thought he'd actually roll out on the water too. The Emperor knew that Rust Bucket was basically toast, and was sending it on a one-way trip. Plus, if this whole thing was a bust, he'd be front row popcorn ready to watch Lars go down with the ship. He was giving his wife the death stare, and she just hit him with a cocky little smirk. I'd bet. They were about to get all the tea today. Lately, she couldn't read his vibe at all. It seemed like the Emperor was low-key getting a kick out of this whole mess. When he shut down the dog training at the park a few days ago, she thought she'd messed up big time. But she never dreamed he'd let him train in a spot this dope. Then again, telling him to train right under his window. That was a dead giveaway. He was trying to watch her every move. Either way, Lars was just grateful he was even letting her train the dogs for real. Sometimes she felt like my dude was trying to put her on a leash. Her whole worth was supposed to be as some pawn from Barry, even though Lars had already shown she was a straight-up queen. Today's the day we squash this whole beef for good. Meanwhile, the White Meridian was just doing its thing smooth sailing. The crew was just vibing another day, another dollar. Then out of nowhere, bam! The whole ship lurched, nearly sent 'em flying. They look over the side all confused, and it's like, oh hell no, a pirate ship with a whole squad of 'em just mean-mugging 'em. The pirates hooked onto the White Meridian, and the boss yelled the command, grab every last sailor alive. And you know they were about to jack everything that wasn't nailed down. The crew was losing their minds. Like, are these fools really trying to start beef with Shariat? Then the next order dropped. Anyone fights back, you drop 'em. The pirate captain looks over at Officer Capricola, looking to split the score like they planned. The commander couldn't even guess how much the cargo was worth, just knew it was enough bank to fund the whole kingdom of Caprica. He wanted to drag Emperor Shariat, who was losing his juice fast, straight to the bottom and put Capricorn on the map. This route keeps us off everyone's radar, and if we sink this ship with no mess, ain't no one gonna find a thing. All of a sudden, cannons start blasting and everyone whips around to see what's poppin'. The pirates were shook when a Shariat Empire warship just ghosted in on them. The officer snatched his binoculars, bugging out at what he was seeing. When he clocked the Emperor and Empress on deck, his blood ran cold. He was completely thrown, 'cause the pirates figured they wouldn't dare fire on the Royal's ride. When Zephon got the news that a Capricorn officer was rolling with the enemy, his whole mood went dark. Our girl, though, was hyped that these clowns got caught in the act. The knights were floored that another kingdom was mixed up with pirates. But the wildest part? Everything went down exactly how the Empress said it would. Right down to the ship's exact coordinates. The Emperor was tripping, wondering how in the hell she knew all that. The pirates were panicking hard, and decided to just start blasting at the military ship. Meanwhile, the Empire's soldiers were just waiting for the signal to light him up. All of a sudden, Lars realized she still had to show the big boss what she was really made of. So she whipped off her cloak, ready to put on a show for him right here, right now. Our girl really wanted him to see this go down in person. She hopped in a small boat and headed straight for the pirates, leaving the Empire's knights totally speechless. The Emperor just shrugged it off, figuring dead bodies don't talk. When Shinn heard this meant he wouldn't have to toss her overboard, he got super sketched out. Even the Emperor's right-hand man was confused, 'cause Her Majesty was spitting facts. There was no reason to off her, even if they only made her Empress to use her as a bargaining chip to invade Barry later. So if she bites it now, it's just gonna cause a whole lot of drama. But still, Zephon looked like he was absolutely living for this chaos. The second the pirates saw a woman on deck, they swarmed her blades out. But compared to the Shariat Empire's army Lars faced, this crew was a bunch of chumps. Surrounded by fire, she sent the goons into a full-blown panic. They realized it was Barry magic and lost it, scared she was gonna burn the White Meridian to a crisp. But when they saw the flames only cooked the bad guys, and didn't even singe the ship or her people, they were even more terrified, thinking no way the pirates got swallowed by the inferno unleashed by the Empress of Shariat. The enemy had never seen magic on this level, and they were totally powerless against it. Lars knew saving the White Meridian had to be job one. She knew what the Emperor expected, and for the crew to be useful pawns for him to play. Meanwhile, the pirate captain and Officer Capricorn were backing up from the fire, completely freaked. As she started to crank up her power, Lars realized this power surge wasn't just a fluke. The more she threw down, the more juiced up her magic got. And now, all that world-breaking power was hers to control. Knowing they were completely outmatched, the pirates who were still standing made a break for their own ship. The officer was screaming at them to get back there like right now. They were still moving the hardware. Lars crept up on this dude's saber ready and straight up unzipped him from his throat to his junk. Then she just torched the pirate ship's sails, so they weren't going nowhere. Once the pirates were off the White Meridian, she told the sailors to get to Shariat's warship, flipped her hair back like a boss. She had their backs for real. Besides, she had mad respect for the crew, hanging tough till the very end. The rescued sailors were looking at her like she was some kind of savior. Lars wasn't feeling any need to play nice with the clowns who jumped him anymore. Hopping on the launch, she knew those pirates were about to be sleeping with the fishes. She glanced at the enemy ship and suddenly saw they were gearing up to hit the White Meridian and the warship. She couldn't believe their nerve, so she started climbing right at them. The pirates peeped her on the stern, and right then one of them just went up in smoke like a human torch. That's when the goons started spraying with their autos and hurling rocks at her. Out of nowhere, a slug tore right into Lars's stomach, almost knocking her off her feet. Ain't no way she was giving up, just cussed herself out for wasting time being pissed. Meanwhile, on the warship, Shariat's crew saw the Empress was hit bad. Still, she kept climbing. That rope cooking every fool who got in her way. The pirate captain grabbed a heavy piece and decided to end it for good. But right then, the fire was taking over the ship and getting real close to the gunpowder. When that thing blew, it was massive. Even the warship got rocked by the shockwave. The Emperor looked up and saw his wife literally flying at him. Totally floored by the huge boom, the knights scrambled to go save her. While everyone else was running around like headless chickens, the Emperor just stood on the deck completely wrecked. Turns out the White Meridian was somehow still floating, so the soldiers hustled to get the lifeboats out and save the crew. Shinn, just like His Highness, was a total mess inside, racking his brain over what the hell happened to his lady. Meanwhile, that pirate ship was taking a dive, sinking straight to the bottom, hanging onto a piece of wood. Our girl was just floating on the water. A hot second before the big bang, she threw up a firewall that just ate the whole blast. She knew she could swim, no doubt, so hitting the water was no biggie. Even with a hole in her gut, she was hyped to see that enemy ship go down. The officer at the wheel was just another body now. This was her hoping she'd finally proved she wasn't a joke. She closed her eyes and thought about all the fake thank yous from the Barry royal family. They really acted like she was the kingdom's golden girl, even giving Nicole whatever she wanted. The whole fam was sure they'd never find a better person to take the fall. The knights searching by boat finally stumbled on the Empress's body, already out cold. After they pulled her on board, the doc saw she was still breathing, but she looked like death. Besides that nasty wound she had, hypothermia from being in the freezing water that long. Even with that explosion, she didn't have a single burn, and the docs were bugging out that she used magic to block the blast. The wound just wouldn't stop bleeding, and the docs were swapping out bandages like crazy. Their healing magic wasn't doing squat, and they were pretty much ready to call it. Then all of a sudden, the Emperor shoved him out of their way and went to his wife himself. He flashed back to seeing her almost torch the Duke of Ula right in his face and remembered how she wiped her blood all over his mouth. Without even thinking, he reached for her. A few seconds later, Lars's eyes flickered open, and she saw all the knights standing around looking shook. Everyone there was tripping because His Majesty had just used his healing magic on somebody else for the first time ever. And from the look on the Emperor's face, he was just as surprised as they were. Not long after Capricorn hit up King Barry with a request for help to sweep their attack under the rug. The king got the message and had no clue how to play against Shariat's next move. He was counting on Eric for help, but the prince figured his dad could just dump the paperwork on somebody else. The king knew they had to make Sherry think they were clean, that they had nothing to do with Capricorn. Sucks for them they still hadn't found a replacement for Lars. So the king was stuck doing a ton of stuff himself. Everyone was blown away by the mountain of unfinished work the heroine left behind when she dipped. Unlike his pops, the prince didn't think it was a big deal, just said they needed a new hire ASAP. Right then, Nicole waltzes in, showing off her new party dress to everybody. The king, completely over it, wanted them to bounce and quit bothering him while he was trying to work. By this point, Lars's wound was all healed up, but she still had to stick with the treatments. Yesterday, the crew ID'd the body of Officer Capricola. Ever since that throwdown with the pirates, our girl hadn't even seen the Emperor. Back then, she never would have guessed she'd get messed up that bad. The problem was she totally slept on their weapons. And Lars filed that away for next time. All of a sudden, the Emperor's dude walked in asking how she was doing. The guy was psyched to hear she was good and said he had to pass on a message from the Emperor. A little later, the third side piece decided to swing by bringing a basket of flowers or whatever. On her way, she ran into like 4 servants who were supposedly just checking on the Empress. They all hooked Lars up with a gift from the Emperor, so many fire bouquets that her room looked like a straight-up botanical garden. Peeping this whole scene go down, Sasha was bugging out over how hard His Majesty was simping for his wife, but Lars was just like, nah, it's just a pity visit, and didn't let herself get her hopes up. Plus, the third concubine dropped by to spill that an order came through that morning to ship Camilla back to her duchy. Right then, the doors fly open and in storms the sixth concubine, looking absolutely heated. She was all like, what kind of voodoo did she pull to get the Emperor to waste his magic on her? For real, does Lars actually think she's gonna be safe making an enemy out of the whole Krinsky duchy? Our girl just sat there cool as hell while T and Sachi were completely done with Camilla's drama. They shot daggers at Camilla, totally spooking her as the servants hauled her off to the carriage. Even the dog was going at it, clawing and tearing at her dress. Still scrapping, the now ex-sixth concubine was throwing some serious shade at the Empress. Lars, though, she was just stoked to finally have that chick out of her hair. Meanwhile, Duke Kruinski gets the news that his daughter's a total wreck, body and soul. So what does he do? He tells Duke Bazarov to take out the Empress and snap His Majesty back to reality. The very next day, Lars got the lowdown on that Duke's turf, the whole Krinsky family, and how they're tied up with the royals. She knew that name Bazarov had popped up somewhere in her past life. Our girl remembered that Nicole had scored an invite to a party at his spot, and some stuff went down. Time flies, and then bam, the Empress gets a surprise invite. Bazarov sent it way sooner than she thought, probably because Camilla was running her mouth. Just like last time, the Duke's throwing a party, but this time it's a massive masquerade ball. She hit him back with a yes, and told Shinn to get the paperwork sorted so she could bounce from the city. This Donald Bazarov dude ran the biggest hospital in the whole Shariat Empire. He's low-key in high society, but he's a heavy hitter in the medical world. They also dug up dirt that he used to be a royal doc. Digging through his files, the Empress hit on some real juicy intel. Flashbacks from her past life hit, and she knew it was time to clean house here too. Meanwhile, the Emperor's just posted up in his office, completely zoned out. It finally hit him that his body went rogue and healed our girl on its own, which was wild. He couldn't even recall a single time he'd ever saved anyone before. Plus, that image of his wife looking like a total badass in that firestorm was living rent-free in his head. Magic that powerful. You only get that when your talent's been through some serious ish. He flashed back to his pops, making him use healing magic on repeat when he was just a kid. How many times he'd bounced only for Puruth to bite the dust again. Over time, slinging magic became a straight-up nightmare for Zeon. Now it all clicked. Lars probably went through the same hell. When he saw her magic, the Emperor felt like he could catch that vibe, and now he was dead-ass curious about what kind of life she was living before she rolled up on him. Whatever was going on, Zeon couldn't lie. He was feeling this woman, and the thought of her dying actually spooked him. So he ended up hitting her up for another dinner. Just the two of them. Lars was like, "What's the play here? Instead of getting chewed out, she's just having dinner with the guy." Was this basically him telling her to zip it about him using his magic on her? He hooked her up with a boatload of flowers, and the dinner was way too bougie to be just a casual meal. Then out of nowhere, he gets curious. How'd she even get the heads up about the attack in the first place? Once they found the officer's body, the Kingdom of Capricorn was toast. No way they were dodging the Shariat Empire's payback. They pinned the whole thing on that one officer, but still had to cough up reparations and a third of their land to the Empire. But through all that mess, all the cargo on the White Meridian stayed 100% safe. So our girl totally came through and proved her worth just like she said she would. But Zeon knew something was up. 'Cause there was no way in hell anyone could have just predicted something like that. Feeling the heat, Lars fessed up that she saw a request in the paperwork from Capricorn to Barry. After the hit went down, the allies were supposed to help him sweep it under the rug. The Emperor put two and two together, and figured our girl was one of the masterminds behind the hit. That was Cap though, 'cause even though Barry got the request, she had no clue how her old man responded. That meant Barry could be mixed up in this whole mess, and if it came down to it, they could hash it out in court. But right now, Lars saw herself as a full-on Shariat. I mean, before all this drama, she was the MVP back in Barry. The vibe was thick. Zephon was hitting her with this killer stare while playing it cool, sipping his wine. Every few minutes, she'd whip out her watch, peeping the time and mapping out her next move. He clocked that. She was sitting on a mountain of secrets she wasn't about to spill to her hubby. Zephon was just staring at his wife, totally zoned out. He couldn't wrap his head around why Barry's crew gave her the boot. They were straight up calling her a freak and treating her like some animal 'cause she was wild. But she played along, hiding her true hair color and that crazy powerful magic just for them. Turns out they had no choice but to ghost her. Lars was always the family's fall guy, taking the heat for every shady thing the royals pulled. She caught on way late and thought the whole setup was messed up. The Emperor was hip to the fact that her family dissed her 'cause of her magic, a power they were dying to use for themselves. This chick had been through the same damn struggle he faced back in the day. So Zephon was like, "Aight, for what you did today, you get a blank check, ask for whatever you want." Hearing the big boss drop a line like that for the first time, his crew was totally shook. Zephon's mind was racing, picturing her trying to bounce all his side pieces, or even jack his crown. But deep down, he knew that just wasn't her style. Nah, Lars was thinking bigger. She wanted the whole damn world. She was planning to run the entire continent with her man side by side. She'd be his ride or die as Emperor and Empress and put everything on the line for him. And on top of that, she wanted to make sure no one on this rock would even dream of messing with him. She was going to be His Majesty's firestarter, the one who'd torch anything that got in their path. The deal was the Emperor had to recognize her as his one and only Empress and blast that news to the whole world. Zephon just smirked, raised his glass, and made it clear that he was already on it. Before you knew it, the news about the one true Empress handpicked by the king himself was blowing up everywhere. The Emperor even rolled with her personally to the sit-down about payback and land deals with the Capricorn Kingdom. Then the night of Duke Bazarov's masquerade party finally hit. The Emperor looked like he scored an invite himself. But bummer, he knew Donald was tight with the Kruinski family, so Lars had to roll solo. They both knew a setup was pretty much a given. Still, Zephon had zero doubt his wife would make it back in one piece, safe and on the down low. Sucks, but His Majesty is tied up. This Capricorn mess is dragging on longer than we thought. So he had to ask, for real, is Shinn gonna be her +1? When he heard the hero was gonna link up with her and the squad, the Emperor decided to have one of his own guys watch her back. But at the same time, he figured she could probably handle herself just fine. She just gave her husband a smile, deciding not to sweat him about it. Later that night, the Empress strolled into the Bazarov Estates party, and damn, she was a total knockout. The whole place was buzzing, people whispering about how the king finally put a ring on it for real. Donald slid up to her, thinking he should go say what's up to the stunning Cheryl Flower himself. Lars knew this was the dude who sent the invite. First thing he did was thank her for pulling up to his shindig. But in her mind, this clown had crossed a line you just don't uncross. In her last life, Shinn clued her in that Barry's crew had torched a village in the east of the Shariat Empire. She also heard that on paper, the so-called Bat Princess was the one calling the shots. When she heard the date it all went down, she remembered she was clear across the map way out west. And just then she took a sip of wine, tasted the poison, and played like she was knocked out. The Duke caught her all surprised she was a lightweight. This was the same snake who filed that fake report in her last life, right before that whole village got ghosted. Donald scooped her up, saying he'd take her somewhere to crash. He hauled her down to some hidden basement where a bunch of starved prisoners were crying for help from inside cages, and strapped her into some gnarly torture chair. He told her to enjoy her stay. It's not like the Empress was getting up on her own 2 feet tonight anyway. He had to jet back to the party, but told her when he got back he was gonna carve Barry up piece by piece. The second Lars figured out his real game, she shot up and gave him a death stare, blasting a fireball right out of her hand. She sarcastically thanked the Duke for inviting her to the real party. Donald was bugging out, his eyes wide with fear, like he couldn't believe what was happening. He was 100% sure he'd laced her drink with some heavy-duty poison. Even if she had the antidote, she should have been out for half a day, and without it, she'd be totally paralyzed for a whole day. He started laughing like a psycho, demanding to know how she caught on. Lars just licked her lips and said the poison barely had a taste. Thing is, poisons don't work on her, and she was just playing possum to see what was up. Our girl knew something was shady for sure, but she had no idea it was this deep. Back in her past life, she peeped from Nicole's letters that the Empress got an invite to Bazarov's bash. But right after the party, her maid just vanished into thin air. Nicole didn't have a ride or anyone with her, so she had to bounce by herself. They never found the maid, so the clueless girl just asked for a new one in her letter. Nicole just thought the maid bailed because she couldn't handle the high life. But that wasn't the story. That poor woman was actually snatched and messed up by that sicko Duke. All those people who went missing from that East Village in Shariat, probably his victims too. Most of Bazarov's recent research has been all about anatomy. He's way into how mana and the human body link up. If he carves up Barry, who was born with mana, he'll totally lose it and start using his own people as guinea pigs. Then out of the blue, Donald drops that the Kruinsky family hooks him up with fresh bodies. He tried to play it off like they were all criminals on death row, but the prisoners knew that was a load of crap and were sure they'd been snatched against their will. Lars had a hunch they were refugees from some other country. But that didn't change Jack. She was pissed about being snatched, but the Duke just blew it off, thinking she just wanted to talk shop about his twisted research. The Empress was like, "How does me drinking poison even connect to this mess?" In her head, the game was over the second she outed Bizarro for the snake he was. The Duke couldn't hide how salty he was, that he wouldn't get to slice up Barry's long-awaited sample. Rolling up to the cages, Lars started melting the bars like a blowtorch. The Duke tried to shut her down, but he couldn't even get near her with all that heat. Lars figured the gig was up and shot Donald a smirk as his test subjects made a break for it. Bazarov was straight up trippin' watching her magic. It was next-level stuff he couldn't even dream up. Now our girl was ready to hear him out and find out who ordered the hit on her. Smirking again, the Duke brought up what the prisoners said about getting snatched by the Krasinski crew. Seeing the prisoners couldn't bust open the main door, the Empress got a bad vibe from how chill Donald was. Once he clocked that his SOS never went out, he knew there was no way he could sweet-talk his way out of this jam, so he sprayed some nasty chemicals everywhere and snapped the keys to the exit. He decided they were all gonna check out together in this place. The heroine realized that stuck in this death trap, they could get taken out by carbon dioxide or the chemical fumes. The Duke knew the front door was a whole foot thick, and they weren't gonna melt that thing like some flimsy bars. So, he wanted the Empress to give him a final front-row seat to her power. Deciding Bazarov had to pay for running his mouth, she blasted a fireball straight at his ugly mug. The psycho was lit up from head to toe. But the dude just kept on cackling. Our girl had learned earlier that even this scumbag was a heavy hitter in Cheryl's medical scene. Without this cat, Donald, medical science hits a brick wall and the Empire's rep is gonna tank. After putting out the fire, she figured she'd get the dirt on the Kruinsky family from him later. Still laughing his head off like a psycho, the Duke just passed out and hit the deck. The clock was ticking, but thankfully Lars was totally A-okay. As she headed upstairs, she knew the real deal with medicine was about to blow humanity's freaking mind. And not even the Empress could do a damn thing to stop it. Right then, Shinn was staring holes in his watch waiting for the deadline. He had his orders from the boss lady that if she didn't show by then, he was supposed to roll out and find her. The knights stormed the banquet hall, scrambling around and yelling for Her Majesty. Suddenly a crew of grimy-looking folks in rags busted out of a doorway. They rushed the soldiers, crying and begging for them to save their asses. When the knights heard that Bazarov and Kruinsky had jacked them, they were shook. They only got out 'cause of some blonde girl who was still trapped inside. After getting the intel, the soldiers made a beeline for the door that led to the basement. Suddenly, the Empress strolled out cool as a cucumber, stoked her backup showed up right on schedule. She pointed him to the secret room where Donald was laying low. He was on the hook for trying to take out the Empress plus the illegal human experiments and abuse. He probably wasn't working alone, so job one is to lock this whole estate down. Also, the knights need to play it cool 'cause all the bigwigs are here. But first, she wanted to finally crash the party now that the host was out of the picture. Figuring she'd check out the scene, the heroine waded into the crowd of dancers. She peeped that not a single one was trying to bounce from this joint. Suddenly, some guy rolled up on her, hoping Her Majesty would give him a spin. He'd never seen hair that fly and was hyped to meet her. Flashing a polite smile, Lars played it off like she had somewhere to be. Ducking over to the other side of the room, she was getting hit up for a dance from every direction, but she curved all of them. If she knew it'd be like this, she would have dyed her hair black. Suddenly, someone snatched her arm and pulled her in. She turned and boom, it was His Majesty the Emperor. Xeon had rolled up to the party a minute ago, trying to find his wife. Suddenly, he caught some guests gossiping that the Empress was just spotted with Duke Bazarov. A hot second later, he saw knights flood the hall and book it into the manor. Peeping the scene that followed, he saw his girl walk out the door. Looking at her, he was just wondering what kind of mess she'd gotten into this time. Seeing all the dudes lining up to dance with her, the Emperor wasn't about to just watch. Lars was totally floored to see him show up there. Zephon just knew she'd found trouble again. Our girl remembered him saying he was too swamped to hit up the masquerade. Judging by the way her crew was acting, he already knew something was off. Smiling back, Lars knew he only came because he was worried about her. Shady chop shop action in the basement, snagging people from the Krasinski family on the down low, and to top it all off, an attempted hit. Looks like Donald was dying to carve up someone from the Barry family. A bit later, yo, the Knights dragged the main dude behind this whole shady operation out of the basement. The second she saw the Emperor's face, our girl Lars jumped in, letting him know the guy was still breathing. Zephon turned to her straight up, asking how she cracked the case. Her answer was pretty much that she's just that good and knows everything. She was actually hyped that the Emperor would get all the credit for her moves. His Majesty became the hero who blew the lid off the twisted stuff they were doing to people and gave a hand to the forgotten ones. A rep like that is gold for keeping the people on his side. But he cut her off mid-sentence, leaning in and gently kissing his wife, pulling her in tight. Lars was so shook it took her a sec to even process what was happening. For Zephon, though, all that mattered in that moment was that she was safe. See, back in his old life, he'd been the one to order that hostage sent back home. When his right-hand man found out he was talking about Princess Barry, the dude was straight up floored by the order. By that point, the Emperor knew that even locking her away wouldn't break her spirit. He was kinda bummed she never agreed to be his side piece. Lars had assumed back then he was just trying to squeeze info out of her, and that there was no other reason to keep her locked down. When word got to him about how messed up she got in that cell, the Emperor was genuinely shocked. His offer to team up had been 100% legit. It don't matter how sick a mage's skills are, you can't throw down with healing magic. But our girl's fire, that could save the whole Shariat Empire's throne. That blackmail material Barry had on him was straight up useless. Same deal with Nicole, she had next to no magic. In that moment, Zephon wasn't tripping over Barry or what she could offer. All he wanted was that flame to turn his enemies to dust. He decided Lars needed to look him dead in the eye and get it. Her own fam played her for her power, thinking she was some kind of fool the whole time. The Emperor thought she'd understand him because they were cut from the same cloth. But nah, he was dead wrong. So now hearing him say her being safe was all that mattered. Lars just froze up, totally stunned. All of a sudden, a bunch of yelling kicked off at the door, because the rich folks were being told they couldn't bounce. The guards were trying to tell him that everybody had to chill until they figured out who was in on Duke Bazarov's crew. As Zephon walked the Empress to the exit, he was basically like, "This ain't our problem." Smiling, our girl took his hand and just went with it. The staff just stood there, shook, watching the royal power couple dip from the mansion. Later, everyone was losing their minds reading the headlines that Bazarov and Krasinski got busted. The news also said the Emperor himself saved the people those clowns had snatched up. But what really got everyone fired up was the part where they tried to take out the Emperor's one and only. And boom, just like that, Donald's whole fake persona was toast. Lars never got the deets on what went down with the ex-duke. But hey, at least Camilla's family was officially cancelled. But the thing that was really messing with her head was that kiss from the Emperor. Plus, she couldn't wrap her brain around why he was so damn happy she was okay. Meanwhile, Shinn was thinking he got overpaid when she handed him the bread for the gig. He was like, "I ain't even do much, just dug up some info." But Lars was not having it, and made sure he got his reward. Thinking back on her past life, she knew she wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for Shinn. And in this life, he got seriously jacked up on her account, so she wanted to make sure he was set. She started wondering what he was even gonna blow all that cash on. When he admitted he had no idea, she was like, "Aight, let's take a walk." Once they hit downtown, Lars felt this nice breeze that totally boosted her mood. She told Shinn to scope the place out and pick whatever he wanted. But my dude was like, "Nah, I'm good, nothing I really want or care about." So the Empress decided to get him some new threads. But then she remembered Shinn was always getting fresh gear back at the palace. Lars was pretty much ready to give up. She was fresh out of ideas. Then she turned to Shinn and caught him looking over at the pet shop. His mask was custom, so she was like, "For real, you digging a dog muzzle more?" Turns out he just wanted to cop some new collars for Sachi and T. Lars was confused, because their collars were already brand new, but there was a catch. He wanted the dog's collar colors to match the Emperor and Empress. Our girl figured if it was for Sachi and T, it wasn't really a gift for him. But whatever, the dude copped the collars anyway just cause he wanted to. He'd never been a dog person, but somehow these two little fuzzballs had worked their way into his heart. When she saw in his eyes that he was genuinely happy about it, Lars just let it go with a shrug. Meanwhile, the Emperor decided to ditch work for a minute and take a walk through the garden. The staff was bugging, cause they'd never seen him step out for air in the middle of the workday. Maybe it was cause the whole Bazarov and Krasinski situation was a bigger headache than expected. But for real, it was obvious that the Empress was living rent-free in his head. Didn't matter if he was chilling or grinding, he just kept replaying that masquerade party in his mind. The thoughts just wouldn't quit, and they were making his tired heart do backflips. At the same time, Camilla was completely clueless about what was going down and why her family was suddenly in deep. The Duke's fam and all the nobles, on their side, were ghosting everyone. She was pissed about how everything went down, and just wanted one shot to see the Emperor and tell him what was really up. The ex-side piece knew that even if she managed to slip into the castle, there was no way in hell she was getting near him. A little while later, the Emperor's personal doctor got a surprise summons for a meeting with one of the Emperor's main dudes. Hopping in the carriage and seeing Camilla, he let out a huge sigh looking at her like she'd lost her mind. Yeah, when you're on the run claiming you're tight with the Emperor, ain't the move. Plus, he couldn't do jack for her, but she was demanding he get her a sit-down with the Emperor. But first, she was all like, fix my face and do it now. She'd been on his case about it even before she got kicked out. But for whatever reason, the doc always curved her. Hearing her act all clueless about what she did wrong, our guy flashed back to when Shinn's body was dragged in, barely hanging on. So he decided to jog her memory, telling her she was the reason for a whole mess of patients who were beyond help. Then she pulls a piece on him. And Camilla demanded he set up that meeting with the Emperor like ASAP. The court doc had the juice to pull it off. Besides, she insisted he better recognize she was the only one worthy of his majesty. Camilla started spamming letters to the entire imperial fam, the doc included. Turns out she hit up every last one of the Emperor's siblings, even the ones way out in the boonies. And get this, the court doc was actually his majesty's little bro. She basically told him if he didn't want to end up 6 feet under, he'd better do what she says stat. Right then, the guards rolled up, surrounded the carriage, and told Camilla to drop the heat. Hearing they were about to light her up, homegirl got shook and did what they said. While the knights were hauling this lunatic off to the slammer, the doc was stressing about the drama her letters were going to stir up. Later, he gave the Emperor the full rundown himself. He was tripping that she really sent that mass mailing to everybody and their mama. The Krinsky family was mad connected to the royals, so they had the addresses for all the siblings. Good news is most of them will probably just ghost these messages. But if the letters are saying the same wild stuff, the doc said Lady Layla is definitely going to get dragged into this mess. Just then, Zephon's right-hand man pops up to say the Empress wants a word. It turns out she got a letter from Her Highness Layla Hayden Albert. This chick wanted to swing by the Shariat Empire soon, but for some weird reason she gave our girl the heads up first. Illa was the Emperor's big sis who got hitched into the Scorpion Empire for some political power play. But her hubby just bit the dust, which made her the HBIC over there. Shariat and Scorpion only. Did business cause she straight up couldn't stand her brother. Lars remembered from her past life that the Berry Kingdom had a trade deal with the Scorpion Empire, but she'd never chopped it up with the Empress one-on-one. Had no clue what her vibe was. Still no use tripping about it now. Our girl decided she had to roll out the red carpet right. After a minute, the Scorpion Empress's ride pulled up to Chariot Castle. Layla Hayden Albert was the oldest of the Imperial fam's whole squad of kids. She was the daughter of a side chick and Emperor Zephon's half-sister. This was the first time our girl was gonna meet her. And from the look on His Majesty's face, this was about to be a whole mess. A second later, Illa steps out of the carriage, rocking a smug smile, asking if our girl really decided to show up and greet her properly. Letting out a big sigh, she reminded her that she specifically sent the letter to her brother's wifey, not him. Lars knew she was just starting stuff looking for an excuse. Smiling right back at her, our girl gave the Empress a real cheerful what's up. And just like that, she got soaked from head to toe. Illa was like, hope Her Majesty digs the Scorpion Empire's magic, you know, teleporting stuff across space. Too bad you can't zap living things with it, but she still thought it was pretty clutch. Lars just hit her with a sweet smile, realizing her opponent wasn't just Zephon's sister, but the actual Empress. She was low-key impressed that her older sister could rock not just chariot healing magic, but the Scorpion space-bending magic too. That was only possible because Layla's crew was juicing her up with their power. The woman was not feeling our girl calling her older sis, and told her she needed to go switch up her fit. Later, chillin' in this living room, she decided to ask why her brother made it official and crowned our girl Empress. Illa had gotten a letter from the Krinsky family, saying his chosen one was basically trash. Plus, the woman knew what went down at Bazarov's party, and she wanted to know if Lars was just some kid with some messed up hobbies. Laughing, our girl figured she could put her to the test, maybe with a little swordplay. Layla just smirked while Zephon was coolly sipping his tea, knowing this was a total wash. Later, when they were sparring, Lars got her butt handed to her straight up. Even though she won, the Scorpion Empress gave her props for her skills. She knew nobody else in the castle could handle a sword like that. And if our girl had busted out her fire magic, things would have gone way different. Lars took the L like a champ, not expecting Layla to be such a beast with the blade. All of a sudden, flashbacks from her past life hit her about the revolution in the Scorpion Empire. Smiling like a maniac, she decided she was going to start calling her Auntie. She wasn't allowed to call her Big Sis, but she still wanted to hit her with a familiar name. Zephon was trying to hide his face, but he was straight up cracking up. Illa, totally thrown, and hella mad, was like, fine, just call me older sis then. So later, while she's chilling in the tub, Lars is thinking she's actually got some serious sword skills. There's no way the Scorpion Empress was going all out, unless she was just playing games with her head. So our girl had never even crossed paths with this chick in her first life, and she was constantly trying to get a read on her whole vibe. But she was holding a major trump card, some serious intel that was about to change the game. Later, just kicking it with his sis in the living room, the Emperor was trying to figure out what she really wanted. He knew her sudden interest in his Empress was just a front. Illa was kinda impressed he saw right through her and decided to cut the crap. Right now, a whole revolution was popping off in the Scorpion Empire. and their leader was so low-key that even the chancellor couldn't get to him. They decided to set up free hospitals to win the people back, which is exactly why Illa crashed Bizarro's party. She wasn't even trying to see her brother. But then she peeped some wild stuff go down at the banquet. With Donald locked up, she wants to snatch Shariat's royal physician Ilya straight from Zeon, and if the Emperor ain't down with it, then he better hand over Shariat's whole army to shut down the rebellion. Zephon thought she was buggin', but Illa told him to watch his mouth considering his position. His so-called barren land provides a third of the Empire's resources, all the good stuff. Scorpion handles the other two-thirds, shipping their oil over to Shariat. So yeah, Zephon was kinda stuck. And if he played ball, she'd even officially recognize that little girl as Empress. Standing in the room, taking in their whole convo, the Emperor's right-hand man knew it was the same old story. If Illa finds even the smallest excuse, she makes these insane demands. Like it's the most normal thing ever. But with oil on the line, even His Majesty couldn't just tell her to kick rocks. All of a sudden, Leia's crew burst into the living room with some breaking news. The Scorpion Rebellion had officially popped off. Apparently the Imperial Army went and torched the village church, and that's what lit the fuse for the whole damn riot. Chancellor Albert already caved and surrendered to the rebels. And now he's just waiting for Her Highness to haul ass back. Leia knew that church-burning story was straight-up cap, because she never gave the order for her army to do anything. Getting up, she gave her brother a dead calm look. And Zephon decided she needed to get back to Scorpion like yesterday. Glaring right back at him, the woman knew that if she did, they'd string her up the second she got there. The hero knew it too. But he wasn't about to argue with someone who was on the verge of losing her Empress title. He'd be facing some major heat if he hit his sister and lost that Scorpion oil hookup. But if Zeon linked up with the rebels and just handed her over, he'd have a way better shot at keeping those trade deals alive. Whipping out her blade, Leia was totally shook by the betrayal. The Emperor knew, though, that without his magic, she wouldn't even see him as a person. Besides, she'd already tried to take him out a couple of times years ago. Standing out front of the Shariat Imperial Palace, Lars heard the clash of steel and sounds of a brawl inside, realizing the family drama was already in full swing. Zephon had a messed up shoulder, and his knights were desperately trying to handle a wild and out Illa. After she wrecked them, the woman was basically like she could just die of boredom. She was salty at her brother for his magic, and was convinced she should be the one running Shariat. And if he was really gonna trade her away now, Illa was ready to take his head and snatch the throne back. Then bam, a wall of fire just explodes in front of Zephon and his crew, cutting them off from his sister. Apologizing for being late, Lars was worried about how unhinged her aunt had gotten. The second she saw the blood on the Emperor's shoulder, she flew into a rage and unleashed hellfire on her opponent. Dodging the flames, the woman just wanted that brat to stay out of it. But in that split second, her sword straight up shattered from the insane heat. Still blasting fire at her, the Empress couldn't believe she even dared to wave her sword in His Majesty's face. Illa was shook by the raw power she was up against, and there was nothing she could do. Watching his sister now, seeing the pure fear in her eyes, Zephon remembered his own terror when she pointed a sword at him. Realizing he and his wife had totally swapped places, he couldn't help but crack a smile. In the end, Illa wound up locked down in Sherry's dungeon. She finally got that the rumors about the Empress's power were way understated, and her brother had basically gotten his hands on a nuke. Meanwhile, Zephon gave the order to ship his sister back to the Scorpion Empire once everything was sorted. Our heroine realized she'd never met this woman in her past life, because Barry's trade deals with Scorpion only kicked off asterisk after asterisk the revolution. The Emperor was hella pissed when he found out Illa's crew couldn't use space magic to send her back. Lars remembered that in her past life after the revolution, the oil trade got a total shakeup and was put up for auction. Barry and Shariat both tried to get a piece of it, but no dice, so they shelved the whole plan till winter. This whole mess led to the Empire running out of fuel, and a ton of people literally froze to death. The creeping cold was always Shariat's biggest weakness, so Lars decided to ask the hero what his take was on Lady Layla. Turns out he had zero thoughts. He didn't give a damn if she lived or died. Hearing that, the heroine felt this massive wave of relief, which just left the Emperor even more confused. She had a plan and some game-changing intel, so she needed Zephon to just trust her on this one. Later, the woman was still sitting in the dungeon, leaning against the bars with her eyes shut. Lars walked right up and gave her a light kick in the ribs with her heel. Startled, Illa jumped up like, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" The main character was actually glad to see that fiery personality was still there. She was like, "Auntie is heading back to the Scorpion Empire. Might as well put her to work for my little bro, right?" Meanwhile, back in Scorpion, the whole vibe was tense AF because of what just went down. The church got torched, totally leveled, and the orphans and nuns poof vanished. Everyone was flaming the Imperial Army dudes who looked like they were living it up during the chaos. Then out of nowhere one night, the Empress's whip just rolls up on the block with her whole knight squad as backup. The whole town was shook because instead of Her Highness, some rando girl with golden hair was the one riding the horse. Then they peeped the prison wagon trailing behind with the Empress locked inside and figured she was tapping out to the rebels. So our girl decides it's time for her grand entrance, playing it like she dropped everything to come help when she heard about the uprising. The people went absolutely nuts thinking Sherry was with them and started making a path for her. Easy peasy. At the same time, the rebel boss is hiding out in some secret spot bugging about all the noise. Chancellor Albert, who's chilling with him, just assumes it's Empress Illa making her comeback. They were both hyped, so the leader decides to roll out and say what's up. He creeps up to this hidden hatch on the roof, and bam, it flies open and she's there giving him this wicked grin. Lars hits the Revolutionary Army's top dog with a super cheerful, "Hey!" The crowd that saw it all lost their minds, realizing they'd just stumbled on the rebel hideout. Still grinning, she's like, "So what's the tea down there?" She tells her knights to drag him out of the hole, all while acting like they're Team Revolution. To top it off, Lars offers to serve up the Empress, the one they think burned down the church, on a silver platter. Next thing you know, the knights yank Albert out of the secret room and put him on blast for everyone. The crowd was bugging out like, "Hold up, why is the Empress's right-hand man hanging with the rebel leader?" Our girl turns to the crowd all smug because they're finally seeing the real deal. Down in the secret spot, they also found the church's emblem. All the donation money, and get this, the Imperial Army's flag. The rebel leader starts capping, trying to spin it like the Imperials were setting them up. But right then, the knights start pulling the snatched nuns and orphans out of the room, who immediately point the finger at the Chancellor and the rebel boss. The women start screaming their heads off, positive these dudes were about to traffic them. Then they heard that the rebel army was the one who torched the church, and the whole town was just speechless. Lars knew a guy like the Chancellor could have buried a scandal that big, no sweat. It was finally clicking for everyone that they'd been dragging the Imperial Army for no reason. Just then, the rebel leader yanks a sword from a guard and goes full psycho, lunging at our girl. Ela jumps in between them, smacks the sword right out of his hand, probably thinking, "Bro, what's your endgame here?" The bad guys looked like they saw a ghost when they realized it was the Empress. Lars was hyped her aunt pulled up, but was low-key like, "I got this." Ila was just thinking she had to handle this personally, or it'd haunt her forever. And just like that, she dropped every single enemy, including their main man. She points her sword at the Chancellor, not even tripping that the nobles would actually team up with the rebels. She could still hear what he said about how he'd handle the revolutionaries. But now that she thought about it, that whole investigation was going nowhere fast. With a quick slice, she nicks his shoulder, deciding he wasn't getting off light. She drills him with a kick right to the gut, thinking his head was going to be on the chopping block, not hers. Then out of nowhere, the rebel boss grabs a sword off the ground and rushes Illa, ready to throw down. Lars saw it coming, snapped her fingers, and boom, flames shoot up from under the dude's feet. But the Empress tells her to stand down and just unleashes a flurry of attacks on the guy herself. Smiling while Albert got lit up, our girl decided not to steal her aunt's thunder. 'Cause everyone knows revenge is a dish you gotta serve yourself. Everyone there was shook by what she said, and Illa couldn't even argue with it. Later on, the freed nuns and orphans spilled all the tea on the Scorpion Empire's so-called revolutionaries. Turns out the rebel army's whole game was to pocket the church's cash and traffic the people they snatched. Back in her old life, Barry was actually pretty tight with the Scorpion Chancellor. That's how she got the real scoop on the revolution, but she was powerless against a massive oil empire. In the end, Laya got taken out and it became a dog-eat-dog world in the empire. After the crowd cleared out, the Empress asked Lars how she knew the Chancellor was scheming with the rebels. In response, our girl just smirked and put a finger to her lips. That little secret was for His Majesty Zephon's ears only, and she wasn't about to spill, not even to her man's sister. Besides, she hit her with a reminder that Auntie wasn't just Shirolka anymore. She was back to being the Empress of the Scorpion Empire. The locals and the people she freed were beyond grateful to their ruler for coming through. They got all emotional, remembering how after the Emperor died, she single-handedly built the Scorpion Empire back up. Real talk, Lars had no skin in this game with the revolution, but now she was glad she could help someone else beat a bogus rap. Once Albert's ties to the rebels were put on blast, the Imperial Army got its act together and cleaned up its messy rep. That whole revolution just kinda died out, and everyone who was in on it, even the Chancellor, got taken out. Illa held it down and defended the Scorpion throne, locking in her spot as the Empress. But our girl, she still had some business to handle. A bit later, she gets this paper from her aunt saying that a whole third of Scorpion's oil fields were being handed over to Shariat to make things right. But Lars was gunning for at least half, so she was not feeling this deal at all. Illa was shook that she was actually mad about getting a solid third of the fields which belonged to the Empire straight up. Plus that land was Shariat's territory now, and since our girl was the Empress, it was all hers anyway. Lars was totally floored that Illa actually called her Empress. The old lady was hoping the girl would get the hint that you don't play games with the Krinsky family or Duke Bazarov. Fixing her hair with a smile, she figured she'd been letting herself go for way too long. And for real, if she'd just thrown her aunt to the revolutionaries, she could have scored half an oil field. Illa knew the whole deal, and she was still bugging that Lars even helped her out. Now it all made sense why Zephon was so into her, and wanted to ghost that witch for good. She was low-key, hoping she could actually vibe with His Majesty's big sister down the line. But homegirl just wasn't ready to accept her as her little bro's wife. Hearing that, it clicked for Lars that she still saw the Emperor as her fam. Illa figured their beef wasn't going anywhere, but he was and still is the top dog in Shariat. If they want to use her, they gotta at least act like their family. Anyway, the lady was thankful to our girl for saving her neck. On top of that, she was gonna walk her all the way to the carriage herself. She thought about her recent beef with Zephon and hoped they could still be cool later on. That's why Illa was betting it all on Lars. Our girl was feeling those words, but then the old lady just soaks her with water again. Telling her not to catch a cold on the way out, Lars had to fight not to lose it and just thanked the old hag. As the carriage rolled out, Illa smirked, thinking Zephon really got himself tangled up with one hell of a woman. back at the crib. Our girl slammed the paperwork for the Shariat oil fields right on the Emperor's desk. She was kinda salty she only copped a third instead of half. The Emperor just couldn't get his head around the Lars he knew just giving up a whole third. That was the cost of getting the Imperial Army's rep back and squashing the rebellion. When he heard his sister actually wanted to be cool, Zephon was totally shook. He needed the tea on what his wife did to get on that greedy chick's good side. Lars didn't see it that way, though. She just figured it was payback for helping out. All of a sudden, Zephon spots this little cut on his wife's finger. She was just waiting for him to sign the papers, but then out of nowhere, my dude just grabs her hand. Our girl totally freaked out. She'd used her powers to dry off, so her hands were kinda chapped. Zephon just stared at the cut and started healing it, no questions asked. When he heard his wife all confused, he dropped her hand and just froze up. It was like his body was on autopilot again. He covered his face totally red and said he was sorry. After he sent her to go chill, he suddenly felt this crazy heat. Lars was confused, and he totally got why, 'cause a little thing like that should be no big deal. And yeah, it stung a bit, but the Emperor wasn't even tripping. The news about Scorpion giving the Empress that oil field blew up everywhere. Even though it was only a third, we're talking a stupid amount of money. Camilla was reading the news completely bugging out. And just like that, the Empress patched up Shariat's one and only weak spot. Everyone was hyping up the Imperial family, saying they were legit rulers. Meanwhile, the Emperor's number 2 side piece, Nina Alinsky, thought our girl was way too much for some rando berry princess. After she heard Eliza and Camilla basically ghosted, she figured it was time to meet the new girl on the block. The news about Lars's big move even hit Barry, and her family was tripping trying to figure out how it all went down. Eric was sure it was all a mix-up. Like, why would that stone-cold Emperor even be into his sister Mom's theory? Was that His Majesty was just using our girl because she's a total workhorse? Nicole had no clue why her parents were so pressed about her. For one, without Lars, they were totally swamped with work. And on top of that, the Scorpion Empire out of nowhere accused the Berry Kingdom of being tight with the Revolutionary Army. Eric started bugging out, thinking they might know he was chopping it up with the Chancellor. So, Dad figured it was time to find a replacement for our girl. The prince was hyped to say he'd already found a solid lead. He got some good tea from his boo Gina, the third princess from the Verso Kingdom. Meanwhile, Lars rolls up to a tea party with some bougie ladies. Ever since she got the official Empress title, the invites to these high-class gigs have been flooding in. All the invites seemed chill, except for this one from Nina Alinsky. She called herself the number 2 concubine, and real talk. The invite looked legit, but after that whole thing with Camilla, our girl was keeping her guard way up. She wanted to start getting the scoop, so she asked the ladies if they knew this Nina chick. Apparently the second concubine threw parties 24/7, and she wondered if any of them had ever gotten an invite. All of a sudden, the girls start looking at each other all sketchy, saying they were just happy to be there. The whole vibe at the table got super weird, and Lars was totally blindsided. Nah said she could slide through whenever, so our girl decided to just vibe and see what happens. Then out of nowhere, one of the ladies piped up about her brother catching some gossip about the second Princess Barry at some party a few days back. When Lars realized they were talking about Nicole, she was bugging. The tea is Nicole let it slip that they scooped up a new secretary. Word is, yo, she's some chick from out of town. A little shaky, but she's down for whatever. Our crew is bugging cause her little sis still runs her mouth. Like, how you gonna spill the tea on royalty? Secretary who ain't even clocked in for her first day. Lars knew the vibe was off cause you'd think they'd be stoked to have a pro on the team. Then it clicked, that new hire from the Kingdom of Verso. The one Shinn put her onto back when she was doing time in her past life. Meanwhile, Donald was in his cell deep in his research and humming a happy little jam. Zeon thought he looked damn good for a dude behind bars. Smirkin' the Duke basically said the Emperor's gig was a total snooze fest. Our boy was thinking about how to just smoke him, but Bazarov was playing it like that was too harsh since they were technically living together. So Zephon decided to drop a reminder that the only reason he was still kicking was for research purposes. The Duke was shook that His Majesty still had no social skills whatsoever. It took him back to his days as the old Emperor's court doctor. The old Emperor ordered him to try and cure Zeon's hate for everybody, but Donald always thought that raw emotion was his best look, and it seems like the dude is still on that same energy. What the hell was this dude even talking about? The Emperor and his boys weren't catching his drift. So the Duke laid it out plain and simple. Empress Lars had already snatched the whole empire from him. She's something else entirely, and Bazarov was daydreaming about linking up with her again. No cap. Insane magical energy and a queenly presence all wrapped up in one girl. That's exactly why Donald thought it was a total waste for her to just be the Emperor's little pawn. He knew he messed up. He should have made her his girl that first day, not his guinea pig. Brushing off the taunts, Zephon decided he wouldn't end him, but to just make him a lab rat for life. At the same time, our main girl was chilling in the garden, stressing about the secretary. In her past life, the secretary got the job after Lars bounced for the war. But this go-around, it happened way faster, which means they were already hunting for a replacement. But on the day she got axed, she didn't see anyone who looked the part. That meant this new girl was being used on the down low just like she was. Lars was so done with the Barry family, but she hated seeing somebody else get played the same way she did. Across from her, Sasha was getting anxious looking at Her Majesty's serious face. Snapping out of it, our girl hoped the third concubine would hook her up with another fire food recommendation. Later on, the Emperor stormed out of the dungeon mad as hell. Bazarov was getting on his last nerve. He didn't even want to look at the guy. Just being in the same room made Zeon tense up all cause of some bad memories. On his way, he suddenly bumped into our heroine. In the hallway. She was just heading back from the garden. Lars was shook. She'd never seen her husband looking so beat down before. When he heard she was going back to her room, the dude just locked up. Next thing you know, he's breaking out in a cold sweat, and our girl runs over to dab his face with a cloth. The real deal is she was happy he pulled up and wanted to hit him with a question. A bit later, chilling across from him in her room, Lars was mulling over how the Verso Kingdom cranks out some next-level talent. If the berries catch wind of that, they're gonna check if that person is useful to them, right? So that got her thinking. What would go down if they could snatch up a talent like that before the berries could? After a sec, the Emperor figured he wasn't even gonna question what his wife was saying. He knew she'd scored an invite to that Verso Kingdom bash, and he wanted to send some security with her. He'd already shut down the whole party idea this morning, so our girl was bummed. Zephon also said she could bring her little lapdog Shinn along for the ride. Lars was actually touched that he trusted her and swore she wouldn't let him down. All of a sudden, the Emperor stepped to her and looked her dead in the eyes. Then he gently grabbed her hand and put it against his cheek. Seeing him get all red in the face completely blew the servants' minds. Later, our crew pulled up to the Verso Kingdom just like they planned. From that day forward, the Emperor never slid through to see our girl again. She still couldn't make sense of why he'd pressed her hands against his face like that. And now, sitting across from him in the carriage, my man just kept staring right at her. Then he remembered she'd said this whole thing was going to be a drag. Smiling back, Lars wasn't on that vibe anymore. Besides, she was really feeling the kingdom's unique architecture, something completely different from what she was used to. So Zephon decided to go for a walk with his wife, which totally blindsided her. When their ride stopped, the Emperor shut down the idea of heading to the capital and decided to just look around. The servants were shook because His Majesty only ever traveled for official business. Our girl couldn't believe they were actually about to go on a regular-ass walk with the Emperor. When she realized this was low-key a date, she got a little shy. Holding her man's hand while they walked past all those fancy buildings, she felt mad out of place. Then right in the thick of it, there was a pastry shop, and straight across from it was a blacksmith's forge. Lars was blown away that every building had its own dedicated purpose. All the people they passed kept stopping to stare, admiring how fly the two of them looked together. Getting her focus back, she decided to start the hunt for the secretary at the local bookstore. After grilling the bookstore owner for the scoop, she found out the girl's name is Chloe. He says the poor kid got the boot from the royal palace, and the word on the street was she'd skipped town. Somebody pulled some major strings to make that happen, and now she's out here grinding for cash on the wrong side of the tracks. Stepping out the shop, Lars was seriously feeling Zephon for helping her dig up all that info. Then straight out of the blue, my man takes her to a jewelry spot. He was thinking back to when she gave him those flowers a while back. It was this whole spring festival thing where girls cop flowers for the dude they're into. So the Emperor had to know for real, was she clued in on that tradition or what? Turns out our girl only got the memo about it right there at the festival from her assistant. He just nodded, then decided he was gonna hook her up with a little something too. The guy picked out a dope bracelet, and the shopkeeper starts running his mouth about it, but Zephon wasn't hearing any of that noise. Lars was shook by how easy he threw down the money, thinking, yeah, this dude's a legit emperor. With the bracelet bought, he rolled up on her and was like, gimme your hand. She was totally lost, just watching him gently slide the gift onto her wrist, then caress her cheek. Zephon was really hoping she'd keep that thing on forever. Later on, they grabbed some food, and Lars planned on hitting the nightlife district. She was already bugging about them eating together, let alone the fact they had to crash in the same room. She was kinda hoping the Emperor would let her roll with her crew. But then all of a sudden he decides he wants to tag along, and she was like, that's a hard pass. Zeon scrunched his face, not getting why she was shutting him down. She figured with a face like his, he'd be a total spotlight in that part of town, and someone would for sure try to holler at him. But he kept pressing the issue, and Lars started thinking he was onto her. With a slick smile, she just had to ask, for real, what kind of wife takes her man on a field trip to the block? In the end, he caved and was like, Aight, fine. But the Emperor made it crystal clear, don't take off the bracelet. She figured the bling was probably laced with some kind of tracking spell. Once they got to the location, they crept around the corner and saw Chloe pleading with her John for even a small advance. Eric was looking at her like she was trash, thinking she had a lot of nerve to even ask. Then the girl starts begging to go to Barry's stat so her brother could get help ASAP. But the prince hit her with the I'm swamped excuse and said he'd send for her in 3 days, then just dipped. Our girl waited for that dude to bounce, then stepped out from the shadows. Chloe jumped at first, then tried to make a business proposition for the night to get cash for her brother. Lars accepted with a smile, thinking one night wasn't going to be enough. Later, Chloe spilled the beans about how she and her brother got tossed from the palace and lost everything. After a few doctor visits, the girl had burned through all her cash. Turns out she used to be a secretary for the Verso Kingdom. Then this new general started getting thirsty, coming on way too strong. Chloe shut him down, and all she got back was his fury and a whole lot of fake charges. Next thing you know, she's kicked out of the castle and hit with a crazy huge fine. Barry promised he'd help her out and get her brother fixed up if she'd be his secretary. But she knew her brother was just the bait, and he probably wouldn't get any real help, so she decided she was breaking both of them out right then and there. Even better, She was gonna get them way better care than Barry could ever offer. Chloe was just staring at her completely lost, like, who the hell even is this lady? Lars snapped her fingers, and Shinn dropped the bomb. She was the Empress of Cheryl. The second Chloe heard that name, she remembered they had the best medical game in the world. Before she could even wrap her head around it, our girl decided they needed to take this conversation somewhere more private. Meanwhile, the Emperor was cooped up in his hotel room, just pacing around and trying to chill. He was actually stressing, which was a whole new vibe for him. He couldn't figure out why he was so spun out, why he couldn't stop thinking about this woman. Right then, he got the news that the Empress and her crew were back at the hotel, all good. Chloe, seeing this was the most baller hotel she'd ever seen, felt like this was all way too much for her. Lars was surprised she was so humble, and wanted her to just relax and know she was covered. Shinn walked the girl to her room, which had its own private bathroom, and hooked her up with some clean clothes. Chloe still couldn't process how someone like her was getting this VIP treatment. Xian, though, was totally thrown for a loop that his wife just rolled up with some random girl and all her stuff. But our girl didn't have time to mess around. See, by the time they found her, Chloe had already copped an invitation from Prince Barry himself. He'd promised to get her little brother healthy, so Lars dragged her straight over here. The Emperor was confused, like, why didn't Prince Barry just hire the best doctor and pay for it? Our girl figured he was probably just in a rush to get to a date or some rager. Plus, she had a special deal she wanted to run by His Majesty. After they talked, the two of them hit the bedroom to crash for the night. Lars was totally amped, wondering if tonight was going to be a repeat of their first hookup. But nah, they just passed out, and she was like, damn, His Majesty's been acting all sus lately. Then out of nowhere, he flipped over, giving his wife this dead serious look. Then he threw his arms around her, yanked her in tight, and just buried his face in her hair. While he was out like a light, Lars was totally bugging, barely processing what was even going down. The next day, they rolled up to the Verso Kingdom's founding day bash at the royal palace. Servants met him at the door, all hyped to see them and waving them on in. When they heard another person was tagging along, they got even more stoked. But when they peeped the girl hopping out of the carriage and heading their way, they were straight up floored. As they kept moving, Lars could feel Chloe was a total mess. The girl never in a million years thought she'd be walking down this hall again. After that whole mess with the general, she had zero plans to ever come back. And now she was thinking, for real, am I even supposed to be at this party? The guests were buzzing to see Emperor and Empress Shariat, who'd been the hot gossip lately. Chloe was completely blindsided when a crowd swarmed them out of nowhere. Then some dude slid up behind her asking if she was good, my lady. She spun around to face him, and the general recognized her, losing his mind, that she was actually alive. He screamed for the guards, telling them to get this bum out of the hall. That's when Chloe clocked him across the face, calling him out for setting her up, saying he got her canned with no heads up. And the whole reason for all this drama was because she wouldn't let him get handsy, pushing him off. The dude played dumb, like, what is this chick even on about? Lars grabbed Chloe by the shoulders, totally heated, and demanded to know what the general's beef with her was. The ex-secretary of the Verso Kingdom was hired by the Shariat Empire on her own terms, which means Shariat now had all the kingdom's classified dirt. Walking up to them, the Emperor backed up every single word his wife just said. Not getting what this whole circus was about, Eric ran up trying to claim this woman was his. Giving him an ice-cold glare, the Empress was glad he finally decided to show his face. Her brother was shook that she'd switched her hair back and had no clue why she was even messing with Chloe. Pissed off by his attitude, Zephon demanded to know who the hell he thought he was talking to. Just then, Eric saw Lars smoothly tucking her hair behind her ear. He was spooked by the Emperor's death stare, who made it clear they were the ones who brought the girl on board. Zephon basically said he could keep that energy if he wanted to make an enemy out of Shariat. A little later, King Barry completely lost it when he found out they weren't getting a secretary. Nicole knew her little bro snagged her first, so she felt like the Empress was being super shady. The king and the prince are going to be sorry they ever tried to play Barry. The real problem, though, is that now they're beefing with Shariat. Eric couldn't figure out how they even knew about Chloe since his own girlfriend kept it on the down low from him. Nicole thought Lars might be in on it, but her brother didn't think his own sister could pull a fast one behind the Emperor's back. The princess figured it was still worth a shot to hit her up and see what she knew. But deep down, they all knew they couldn't risk it. Eric was cringing, remembering how he punked out and bounced from the banquet hall with Zephon's killer glare burning a hole in his back. Since they were counting on the secretary, nothing was getting done, and the work was just piling up. Right then, a servant burst in with some urgent news. The king, completely over it, decided the prince could damn well handle it himself. The monarch saw this as a prime opportunity for his son to finally step up and prove he could be the next ruler. It was also payback for Eric losing his secretary. Any screw-ups and it's all on him. He was officially grounded until the job was done. No leaving the castle. The parents decided to dip and hit the party, and Nicole scrambled after them to help with the prep. Meanwhile, Chloe and her brother made it to Shariat all good. Lars was hoping the Emperor would give her the green light to take the girl and show her the ropes. Once she got the okay, she remembered that for real nothing had happened that night. Lying in the same bed, he just held her close the whole night and slept. The Empress could feel that he had mad respect for her. Seeing her boss's face get all red, Chloe asked if she was feeling okay. Lars just brushed her hair back. trying to play it cool like it was no big deal, and just said she wanted to head inside. Later, chilling in this ridiculously lavish room, she couldn't believe she was actually going to live here with her brother. Turns out, back when she was just a secretary at the palace, they had to live off the castle grounds. If it was just her, they might have let it slide. But she couldn't just roll up with her fam in tow. She was totally floored by how sweet and pure her little sister really was. Chloe was ready to do anything for her bro and was about to get on her grind to level up. After leading her to the lounge, the Empress was ready to intro her to her new partner in crime. Lars had already shot the lady an invite. Now all they had to do was wait for her to show up. Not long before, after getting the invite from Her Majesty, Sasha just froze. The girl and her brother were in total disbelief when the Emperor's third side piece strolled into the room. "My bad for hitting you up out of the blue," she said. Lars started making the intros, and Chloe was relieved her new co-worker seemed pretty chill. After getting the full story, Sasha learned this girl was going to be her right-hand woman. The Empress was also hyped to hear the concubine's residence had a room ready for them. Sasha was blown away by Chloe's backstory, not getting why someone so dope would be working under her. But Lars was straight up chill knowing the third concubine had this lady's back. As for her little bro, our girl was like, "Nah, I got this." Sasha gave Chloe a handshake and a smile, feeling like she was out of the loop and hoping her new partner could fill her in. Real quick after that, the Emperor gets this trade report dropped on him by the third concubine. The report was all about these spices the ETI Empire was bringing in. Prices were blowing up, so it was the perfect time to flip some of that stuff to other countries for a profit. Xion clocked it right away. This had to be the new secretary's move. The whole plan was fire, and if they jumped on it now, it'd be smooth sailing. He was kind of shook, though, when he heard that Lars had basically handed Chloe over to the third concubine. See, Sasha wasn't like the others, always trying to get up in his business. Plus, she was royalty from Etwall back in the day. The Emperor figured, hey, if this whole thing pops off, he'd make sure they got paid big time. A little later, the court doc Ilya rolls up on our girl, needing to get the lowdown on Lucas, Chloe's brother. He'd been keeping an eye on the kid with the other docs for a few days. But for real, even at the Shariat Medical Center, fixing what he's got is basically a no-go. Best they can hope for is his gut and lungs working. But anything more than that is a long shot. The doc was asking the Empress how he's even supposed to drop this bomb on the king. After she gave him the rundown on the kid, Zephon was completely blindsided. This sickness was supposed to be a wrap, no cure, and even magic couldn't touch it. That meant even the Emperor himself couldn't do jack. He was scowling, thinking, like one kid shouldn't even be on his radar. But seeing his wife all torn up about it was messing with his head. He knew the secretary was going to be clutch later, so he decided to bend the rules just this once. Leading Lars, he dipped down the stairs heading to the castle's basement. Way down at the bottom was a dungeon, and our girl's heart dropped when she saw who was locked up inside. Duke Bazarov greeted his guests with a smile, but he was hella confused why the Emperor himself was making a house call. And damn, he was hyped to see the Empress again. He'd been missing her like crazy. For real, he never thought he'd lay eyes on her again, so her stopping by was a big deal to him. Lars clearly missed the memo about his execution, but she still couldn't wrap her head around Donald just chilling down here this whole time. Turns out my dude copped a plea. They hook him up with some perks and keep him breathing in exchange for his research. Since he was a big shot in the medical game, the king pulled some strings for him. Bazarov landed the court physician gig based on pure skill, no magic involved, and honestly, there's probably nobody on the whole continent who's on his level in that department. Zephon knew if this guy couldn't fix the kid, then it was game over. Our girl was absolutely floored that he'd brought her here and spilled all this tea just to help Lucas pull through. Donald was tripping, never guessing he'd link up with the Empress like this again. He shot her a warm smile, want to ask what she'd been getting into since they last saw each other. All this time, all he wanted was another look at her face. And now he was so damn happy he was speechless. Ever since her wild-ass flame basically torched his heart, he didn't just lose his body. He lost his whole soul. Looked like the king was only grudgingly down with our girl before. But now the whole vibe's different. And she's gotta be something else to make that happen. The Duke and Xion go way back, too, but he could never pull that off. The Emperor, tired of all the yapping, was just like, "Yo, Donald, you gonna fix him or not?" With a whole dramatic bow, Donald figured he couldn't really say no. But first he needed to scope out the patient, then they could chop it up about the details. A few minutes later, Shinn himself brings the kid over. After he was done checking him out, Bazarov was low-key salty. He didn't get his hands on such a perfect subject sooner. Standing there, Lars figured he was probably talking about the burn scars. The Duke played it off as a joke, saying she was still the ultimate research project. She just smirked, taking it as a compliment. Donald grabs an empty syringe off his desk and decides to ask what kind of payday he's looking at if he pulls this off. He points the syringe right at the Empress, saying he wanted at least a drop of her fluids. Then he walks up, grabs her hand, and says blood would be even better. Lars was about to light his ass up, but out of nowhere, Zephon steps in and snatches the creep by his head. Donald was shook by the jealousy and was like, "I'd payment after the treatment." The Duke got all weird, remembering how good the hero tasted as a kid, because he was always holding back. The Emperor wasn't trying to hear that noise and just wanted a straight answer. Can the kid be fixed or not? Bazarov just smirked back like, "Y'all already know the answer. See you in the last life. King Barry and his crew found out Lucas was a lost cause. The docs gave him 6 months to live max. Then Eric remembered they'd kept their word and got him into the best hospital around. But nobody ever promised he'd be 100%. The parents were cool with it, especially since the brother and sister weren't ever going to see each other again anyway. So the prince was like, bet we can just tell the girl her little bro was battling his sickness in the hospital forever? But now, after just 1 month of Donald's work, a super happy Chloe was bugging out. She couldn't believe it. Lucas's sickness was fading and fast. Now the kid was moving around like it was nothing. Bazarov was quick to jump in, though, saying the treatment wasn't done. He'd just handled the root of the problem. Yo, if the kid stays on the meds I hooked him up with, he'll be A-okay in about 6 months. Lars was side-eyeing the Duke, trying to get her hands on that prescription list. Donald just let out a heavy sigh. Feeling it, but he was still kind of shook they didn't trust his judgment. The girl was straight up bawling with relief because every other hospital basically said it was a lost cause. The Duke just chalked it up to them being a bunch of quack doctors. Our girl knew he had skills, but she never dreamed he was on this level. We're talking less than a month from the diagnosis to the OR, and the results were undeniable. So asterisk? That's asterisk why the Emperor let him off the hook. Chloe was genuinely grateful to the Empress and swore she'd never forget this move. On top of all that, Lars made them pinky swear not to spill a word about Bazarov. Donald's mind was blown, realizing this was a goldmine for his research. He stuck out his hand, ready to get what was his. He was expecting some of Lars's blood, but instead she just plucked a single hair from her head and gave him that. Stepping out of the dungeon, she hit the Emperor with a, "My bad for making you wait." He tagged along to every single meeting with Bazarov, but never actually went inside the cell. She was giving props to His Majesty because thanks to him they scored a top-tier secretary. In return, Zephon made her promise to never go down to the dungeon without his green light. Sasha was practically floating when she heard Lucas was all right. Chloe was just as stoked and swore she'd work her butt off to pay them back. The last time she got the go-ahead from His Majesty, so now stuff from the White Meridian is set to drop in Shariat next month. Right now, Barry's been going hard on foreign trade, so the timing is pretty clutch. Remembering this kingdom was Lady Lars's old stomping grounds, the girl bowed her head and apologized. But our girl wasn't even sweating it. She's the Empress of Shariat now, you know. But she couldn't just forgive them for what they pulled on Chloe. And from here on out, she's only riding for the Empire. Meanwhile, the number 2 consort Nina Alinsky was busy scribbling another letter to Her Majesty. Lars got it and saw the second consort was throwing a party to get to know her better. This whole thing could be chill, or it could be a total setup. Our girl knew the deal, which is why she'd been leaving her on red this whole time. But she figured it was time to show up, so she hit her back about the party invite. The other ladies there were completely floored by how drop-dead gorgeous she was. Lars clocked it immediately. This was a total girls' night. All of a sudden, the second concubine comes gliding down super hyped to greet Her Majesty. Our girl was thankful to Na for the invite. Turns out she only invited her inner circle today, so the Empress could just kick back and vibe. The concubine sent Sasha an invite too, but for some reason she was a no-show. Na was bummed that the third concubine almost never rolls through to her parties, so she was hoping that next time our girl could manage to bring Sasha with her. Lars was surprised by that, cause from what she'd seen the concubines did not mess with each other. Na sat down right next to her, wanting to get the tea on what the Empress's deal was with the third concubine. Her whole cutesy act was giving Major Nicole vibes, but Lars couldn't remember this concubine ever doing her dirty in the past. Either way, if things get weird, she'd have to draw a line in fast. Then out of nowhere, Na wanted the Empress to be her bestie too. I mean, if the Empress is cool with Sasha, it must mean she doesn't have beef with all the concubines. Plus, the girl also thought Her Majesty's butler was a total snack. The concubine was hoping the Empress would be down to wear matching fits to the party and take some selfies together. She was obsessed with the main character's black hair from the wedding, but the gold was a whole vibe too. All the girls in her crew were gassing Na up, co-signing everything she said. Meanwhile, dinner was served. Time to get this show on the road. Lars was getting seriously irritated by how high-pitched and loud that concubine's voice was. She still wasn't 100% sure, but maybe Nina wasn't all that bad. Then out of nowhere, one of the girls accidentally knocked a wine glass off the table. While the maid started to clean it up, the concubine walked over with a smile, and the lady instantly went pale as a ghost. After dinner, everyone walked the Empress to her carriage and waved a super cheerful goodbye. The second that carriage was out of sight, Nina ordered the girl who messed up to be taken to the house like now. She personally started laying into the girl who dared to break a wine glass, at a party where the Empress herself was a guest. Afterward, the concubine ripped the flowers out of the vase, fuming that tonight was supposed to be perfect. So she decided to make the girl who messed up drink all the gross, dirty flower water. Later, when the Emperor found out Lars had been at Nina Alinsky's party, he was totally thrown for a loop. Turns out the second concubine had been hitting Her Majesty up with invites for a hot minute. Now they're hanging out on the regular, and it seems like they're getting pretty tight. Na's from the kingdom of Pluto, which is known for its oil and weapons. Still, if our girl really wants to get in with this woman, she better think long and hard before it's too late. Thanks to a long time with no wars, Shariat was more than stocked up on weapons. They weren't hurting for oil either, especially since Scorpion handed over a third of their supply. Meanwhile, Nina started showing up at the Empress's place all the time, spending day after day with her. Lars was kinda letting it slide, cause she was just coming over to chill and have a good time. But T and Sachi were not feeling this new guest not one bit. Always grilling her with dirty looks. On top of that, the side chick kept bugging Shinn to drop the mask, but the real L was our girl just couldn't link up with Sasha. The deal was she was shook of the other chicks. Na seemed to be pushing for them to be friends, but the vibe was way off. She was really hoping to hear him say they were besties now, but Lars wasn't buying it. That was making Na go crazy cause she's the daughter of Prime Minister Pluto and being tight. With her as a major come-up for anyone. Our girl knew that thanks to side chick number 2's family chariot could lock down Pluto's military muscle. Na was extra as hell for sure. But her pops controlled a piece of the sea that was about to be worth bank. In other words, she was way more of a power player than Eliza and Camilla, and you gotta keep someone like that in your crew. Later on, Lars gets the tea straight from the Emperor that he was planning on ghosting the second chick. Turns out her whole thing was getting off on messing with people she ain't vibe with. Everyone wants to get on her good side for the perks, but plenty of people know what's up and stay the hell away. Zephon figured it'd be safer to just ship her back home before she started some real drama. She was straight up shook he'd make a move before anything even popped off. For now, everything was chill, and Lars had no clue what Nina's deal was in her past life, so she was hoping that if ish hit the fan, she could hit up the Emperor for backup. He just stared at her all confused. Like, did he even need these side pieces? She raised her glass, trying to see if she meant more to him than the whole damn empire, waiting for him to say something. She was floored when he just chugged his drink without a word. Late that night, Sasha was shaking in her room hearing Na's psycho screams from outside. The second chick was posted up at her front door yelling for her to come out and play. The next day, she asks Lady Lars if she wants to roll with her for a walk. Na knew this dope spot to eat and wanted to hit it up with the Empress. Our girl said nah, which totally set the other chick off. She was like, she's always the one trying to hang out anyway. More than anything, she just wanted to kick it with Lars every day and get tight with her. Our girl never had a squad in her old life, so she wasn't sure if this clingy vibe was normal. To lock in that bestie status with the Empress, Nah set up a whole secret hang for today. The chick even handled the chaperones and was praying Lars wouldn't flake. After she got the bet, she bounced outside to wait for Her Majesty to get ready. Our girl really wanted to swing by the greenhouse and finally link with Sasha, but that plan was dead. Pretty soon they rolled up to the spot she was talking about. Na's favorite spot looked kinda sketchy, but the place was huge. The second chick was on some mysterious ish for real, so Lars just decided to roll with it. Once they were inside, they grabbed a seat in this low-key room, and next thing you know, their table was stacked with some fire food. Lars was tripping over how good the meat tasted, which had Nina all hyped up. The chick felt a huge weight off her shoulders. Since she only ordered her go-to dishes today, she figured the more exclusive the ingredients, the bigger the flex it is to serve them. When the table was about half cleared, Nina decided it was time for the main event. The curtain goes up, and dead center on the stage is Sasha tied to a chair, the main course the chick was dying to try. Meanwhile, the Emperor gets word from Chloe that the third chick is still MIA. The whole staff was bugging out. Nobody knew what the hell was up. She straight up vanished after Nina Alinsky chick number 2 scooped her up last night. The king's right-hand man remembered the Empress hit up some restaurant today, cause Nina put her onto it. Zeon, mad as hell, ordered his soldiers to get on the hunt like right now. He told them not to come back without Lars. Our boy was beating himself up for not making a move sooner. Back at the spot, our girl demanded the side chick spill the tea on what was going down. Nah, with this creepy smile, decides to drop that she was planning on having a third chick over for her little party. If it was cool, she'd love for the Empress to be there for the main event. She was still debating whether to carve her up or roast her whole drooling just thinking about how Sasha was gonna taste. This chick had been fiending for that kind of action for ages. She couldn't get why. Lars was looking so salty. Like, aren't we supposed to be homies? Realizing this psycho was playing her the whole time, Lars lit up with some fire streams. Nah, really truly believed that she and the Empress were ride or dies. For our girl's sake, her pops and the whole kingdom of Pluto would have Shariat's back. And since the queen bee is Lars, all the other chicks would fall in line and support her. All cause our girl was the only one Emperor Zephon ever gave a damn about. As for chick number 2, she just wanted to be the queen's number 1, and Sasha had to get bounced for that to happen. Right then, some goon starts walking up to the tied-up girl with a hatchet in his hands. Nah, really thought that if our girl got a taste of the third chick with her, they'd be bonded for life. And the second chick was totally down to take care of Sasha's whole squad with nothing but love. She couldn't see why anyone would even compare that lame chick to a boss like herself. So she was thinking even the Empress would be better off being her buddy. Hearing that, Lars's mind shot back to Nina's voice in Shariat prison back when Na peeped her with no eyes. So the second consort tried to cut a deal saying she'd help our girl out if they could be besties. I mean, linking up with her was the smart play, unless she wanted to get seriously messed up too. But Lars clapped back, yelling that she was the princess of the Berry Kingdom and wasn't about to roll with some Shariat trash. After that comeback, Nina whipped out her blade and told the guards to pop open the cell. She decided if they weren't going to be friends, she might as well have some fun and run a few experiments. After that, the consort dropped by every single day to play and just straight up torture the heroine. Lars finally figured out why that chick's voice was so damn grating. Rolling up on Sasha, the concubine just laughed and swung her blade. Igniting in a blaze of glory, our hero rushed in to save the third concubine. The second Nina saw that fire, she froze up, totally shook. Laughing all nervously, she begged Lady Lars to chill and not be so extra. She just didn't get why the Empress was so heated in the first place. Seeing the flames barreling her way, she pressed the blade to Sasha's throat, threatening to take her out. The concubine was trippin', not understanding why Her Majesty was on this warpath. She'd be a way better asset than this girl anyway. While she was busy trying to freak Sasha out, Lars decided she was so over the idea of being friends with this psycho. Pissed off by those words, Nina felt like her lady just broke her damn heart. She ripped the blindfold off the third consort, wanting to hear Sasha tell the Empress to kick rocks. Instead, Sasha started apologizing to our main character for dragging her into this hot mess. Feeling dissed, the second consort jammed her blade into the girl's shoulder. Lars knew if she made one wrong move, it was game over. Nina, getting all up in Sasha's space and pulling out a knife, knew they were too close for Lars to pull anything. After nicking the third consort's ear, she decided to just off them both and become Master Zephon's #1 chick herself. Holding the knife out to the Empress, Nina said she had to slice her own ear to save her friend. Sasha started screaming, telling Lars to just bounce and get the hell out. That's when the second consort decided to start with her and put the knife right to her ear. Our main character yelled for her to stop, but that just meant she had to make her own move and fast. Lars had a plan. She'd fake taking the hit and wait for Nina to drop her guard. She'd give her a little blood, pretend to black out. Then the second Nina lunges, she'd snatch Sasha out of the way. Suddenly, all hell broke loose outside with screams, and in order to bust the door open, now Nina was shook, having no clue how the Emperor's crew even found them. Shinn made a beeline for the door, desperate to get it open. Taking her eyes off the third concubine, the second one yelled at the servants to stop the butler. Seizing the moment, Sasha rocked the chair hard and sent it crashing to the floor, shoving the concubine out of the way. In that same instant, our girl unleashed a massive fireball straight at Nina. Busting in the night saw the second concubine writhing on the floor, completely engulfed in flames. Lars dialed back the heat, deciding to make her suffer slow instead of a quick checkout. The burning psycho started begging for mercy, and that's when our girl pinned her hand to the floor with a dagger. After giving the crying Sasha a hug, she told her they were good now. The soldiers rounded up all the servants and said they'd handle the rest. Meanwhile, as Nina was still feeling the burn, our hero remembered she had a whole list of people to get payback on. Later back at the palace, she went to link up with the Emperor. He figured she'd been spending way too much one-on-one time with the second concubine. Lars felt bad it all went down like that, but was damn grateful he sent in the troops. She was wondering what His Majesty was gonna do about Lady Alinsky now. Our hero had been saying from the jump to just ship her back home. His wife, though, would have loved to serve that revenge herself. She thought he'd just send her to her room after that, but Zeon suddenly got focused on her wound. Yeah, we're talking about the cut on her ear, the one with the bloody cotton ball on it. She was planning to see the royal dock later, but then the Emperor got all up in her personal space out of nowhere. He put his fingers on the little wound and started healing it with his magic. Like a few seconds later, her ear was good as new, and Lars hit him with the confused, thanks. After that, he told her she could dip from his office. That same day, our girl met up with Sasha, who felt awful for making her worry. Plus, the third concubine was super grateful for the court physician she sent, meaning no ugly scars. Lars said she'd do anything for her ride or die. For Sasha, those words were both a huge honor and totally mind-blowing. She also wanted to give a shout-out to Chloe, who hit up His Majesty in the nick of time. Seeing how freaked the Emperor was, the secretary realized just how down bad he was for his wife. The fact that he sent soldiers immediately was a huge deal. He'd never ever done that for anyone before. And let's not even get started on the bracelet Zeon gave Lars and Verso. That was a serious wifey move. Apparently, if a dude gives a woman a bracelet with stones the color of his eyes, he's basically saying she's his property. After that, the Emperor started hitting up Lars for dinner all the time. He saw the total confusion in her eyes and knew she had no clue what was up. Looking at her, he just decided he missed her, plain and simple. If she was so about her business, maybe she could drop him some more useful intel. Raising her glass with a smile, Lars hoped he'd find her tips on new money-making schemes useful. It had been a minute since she rolled into Chariot, and now fall was in the air. That night at dinner, the Emperor was giving off a whole different vibe. She also knew the kingdom of Pluto wasn't just the second consort's old stomping grounds. It was a gold mine where prices were about to blow up. But right then, it was all on the down low, and the port was way off the grid. That made business a pain, but they were still raking in tons of top-shelf pearls every year. For now, nobody was hip to it, which was Shariat's shot to corner the whole market. Zephon was tripping again. If nobody knows, how the hell does his wife have all the tea? But hey, if her intel was solid, he was cool with just letting it slide and not getting all up in her business. Lars knew those pearls were fire. Even Barry was trying to score some back in the day. Eric promised all his girls jewelry made from him and was hustling to cop some. Nicole was even writing letters whining about Nina flexing on everyone. Since Pluto did the Empress so dirty, Zephon was ready to just roll up on them. But our girl was like, nah, that's not the move. All they really needed were the sea lanes, and they could snag those for cheap. No need to call in the cavalry. If we put the pressure on, they'll be scrambling to sweep this under the rug themselves. On the flip side, if a war pops off, Shariel's gonna take some L's big or small. No time to overthink it either. Word on the pearls could drop any second. And if other nations saw Shariel making a play for the sea lanes and starting beef, they'd know right away something was up. That's why our girl wanted to run point on the negotiations herself, and basically told His Majesty to chill, she got this. She was gonna play both the Empress and the victim card to handle business smoothly. The Emperor was like, "Aight, if that's your play, run it." The servants were shook that the so-called tyrant actually listened to her and pumped the brakes on starting a war. Lars was about to dip, but then Zephon hit her with a hold-up. Thinking about last night, he got a little awkward scratching his head and decided to walk his wife back to her room. The servants were even more bugging out seeing His Majesty just casually strolling with his wife, arm in arm, down the palace halls like it was nothing. When they got to her room, our girl said her goodbyes again and was about to bounce inside. Then all of a sudden the dude gets curious. Like, what are you even supposed to say in a moment like this? Lars just messing with him was like, "You're supposed to say sweet dreams." So the Emperor leans in, gets real close to her ear, and just softly whispers it. After that, for the rest of the day, our girl was living rent-free in her own head over it. That night before hitting the hay, she carefully slipped the bracelet off her wrist and hung it where she could peep it. The Emperor was on some whole new ish. It was wild eating with him all the time, and him sending troops to save her was a trip. Plus, he'd even started hitting her with healing magic, something he never used on anybody else. And it all led up to this bracelet, which was supposed to have some deep-down meaning. Lars was sold. He knew he could trust her no cap. His whole vibe felt like love, but she was like, can this dude even catch feelings? Whatever was going on, that so-called tyrant was giving her some real deal respect. So our girl decided she couldn't afford to fumble his trust, no way, no how. She was planning on running the whole show with him by her side. But if she was his, then whose was he? She picked up the bracelet, brought it to her lips, and let out a dreamy sigh thinking about him. Meanwhile, Zephon was all restless, couldn't sleep, just breathing all hard. More than anything, he was just fiending to have his wife next to him right then. The next morning, Shinn was helping her get her hair braided. Right then, the knights snatched up Nina and dragged her kicking and screaming to the carriage to ship her back home. The girl had been doing some serious thinking and was convinced the Empress should give her another shot. Lars came outside and just coolly watched the soldiers manhandle her into the wagon. When Nina spotted her, she started fighting back even harder, yelling for her boss lady with this crazy wide grin. She was dead serious about wanting to make things right with our girl. She'd been overthinking everything she did, and now she was sure they could totally be besties. She couldn't fight off the knights for long and ended up in the carriage even wanting to say sorry to Sasha. She was screaming her head off, begging her boss to forgive her and take her back. Lars just watched the carriage dip with a stone-cold look like, yeah, have a nice life, to the old second concubine. Now that that drama was handled, they had to get ready for their own trip. They were planning on hitting the coast, but our girl figured it was still too early to break out a swimsuit. At this point, nobody was clued in that there were pearls just chilling in Pluto's waters. That's why Lars wanted to keep their visit on the super down low. If they made a big scene, other countries would be all over it in a second. That's why they had to be damn sure the tea on the pearls didn't spill until they had the port on lock. The day before, they bounced our girl and Shinn were running the dogs through some drills. Looking at that goofy mutt's happy face, they were totally ready to have a killer time. Plus, these furry little legends were going to be tagging along for the ride. Meanwhile, the Emperor was just posted up by the window, coolly watching the training in the garden. When Lars spotted him, she broke into a grin and gave him a friendly wave. But His Majesty's straight-up poker face didn't budge even after a few minutes. Usually he would have looked away by now, so she stuck there waving with this awkward smile like, how long am I supposed to do this? Our girl just couldn't get with the program. Nicole would have straight-up winked, but the Emperor probably wouldn't dig that vibe from his Empress. So Lars decided to quit tripping over useless junk and get back to whipping those goons into shape. He had to be 100% ready for whatever tomorrow was going to throw at him. Meanwhile, Zephon gets this random message out of nowhere. Then out of nowhere, his butler spots the flowers the Empress gave him just chilling on the table. They'd been there so long they were straight up dead, so the butler figured he'd just toss them. 'Cause they were some special type of flower. They'd stuck around way longer than you'd expect. Then out of the blue, the Emperor decides he wants to keep them and starts hitting the flowers with his magic. Seeing that, the butler was totally shook and couldn't even get a word out. Zephon, though, he decided he was going to look after his wife's gift for a bit longer. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Pluto, Nina's pops was absolutely going ballistic. He couldn't believe they were shipping his daughter back from the Empire, and on top of that, a notice shows up saying she came at Empress Lars. After a minute, our girl rolls up in the kingdom of Pluto and heads straight for the castle. Meanwhile, the dogs were just chillin' passed out on their rug. The king and queen were totally blindsided by the Empress's surprise visit. Sitting across from her with the prime minister, they just hung their heads looking all beat. Lars was like, my bad for just dropping in unannounced. The king figured it was no big deal, especially after how out of line Lady Alinsky acted toward her. Hearing that, our girl remembered Na's whole plot to off her and the threats against the queen. Not to mention snatching up, roughing up, and trying to ice the Princess of Estval. So Lars is like, are they deadass trying to call this just bad manners? If this is the Pluto Kingdom's official position, then that's how they all feel about the Shariat Empire. The king, thinking it was all a big misunderstanding, wanted to chill things out. But our girl remembered exactly how pissed Zept was, and that he was ready to send in the troops for the Shariat Empire. This was the perfect excuse to start an all-out war. The king knew Pluto didn't have the muscle to take on a whole empire. Then all of a sudden, he hears the Empress put a stop to her husband's plans. At least for now, and the rest was going to depend on how the king played his cards. Which means Lars, as the one caught up in it, can only lay the blame on the Alinsky family. The king was ready to drop whatever punishment on them, even stripping them of their whole status. But our girl had a thought: giving Shariat a piece of the Pluto kingdom should be enough to square things up. The king, looking scared stiff, was completely in the dark about what territory she meant. Lars wanted a small port and the waters around it. I mean, if it dodges a war, isn't that a price worth paying later after she got the deed to the land? Our girl thanked AM for their call. If it had been their main port, Pluto's business would have taken a major hit. But good thing it was just some random backwater town. Na's dad knew that worst case. They could have been totally cut off from the Shariat Empire. He ran up on Her Majesty by the carriage, hoping she could spare a minute. The Prime Minister wanted to apologize to her himself, and he felt straight up awful about what his daughter did. Still, he claimed Nina always had a special knack for making friends. He said his daughter was dead serious about wanting to be cool with the Empress. Lars figured from his whole spiel that he'd been coddling that ex-concubine since they were kids. Na had sent her dad tons of letters going on and on about how much she wanted to be pals with Her Majesty. After peeping the documents, she saw the handwriting was for real, the girls, and the seal was legit. Apparently, Na's now crying herself to sleep every night, thinking the Empress totally hates her guts. The girl's heart is crushed, which is why she bailed on the meeting today. Lars had to agree for a hot minute. They actually were kind of tight. Lady Alinsky's whole vibe was a lot like Nicole's, who used to play nice too. Nina turned out this way because her dad and brothers spoiled her rotten growing up, so she doesn't get personal space or know right from wrong. It sounded a lot like how the Barry royal family raised our girl's younger sister. Seeing the dude begging at her feet, she figured maybe she could forgive his daughter just on his account. But as she straight up torched him, she decided he deserved some heat for raising his kid so wrong. Then, cool as anything, she hopped in her ride while the servants started hosing down the Prime Minister, who was literally on fire.